It kicks off on this scorching-ass summer day inside a bus so hot it might as well be a damn sauna on wheels. Everyone's half melting, minding their own business, when suddenly the route just glitches like someone hit pause on reality for a sec, and boom, something literally spawns out of thin air right in front of them. At first, folks are like, yo, this has to be a prank or some movie shoot, but nah, that theory dies real quick. The thing standing there is way too real. A straight-up goblin. What was supposed to be a normal, sweaty commute instantly turns into full-on chaos. More of those nasty creatures start crawling in, turning the bus into a slaughterhouse. People drop left and right, no screams long enough to finish, no chance to run. Even the ones reaching for their phones to call the cops get sliced before they can hit a single button. The air fills with panic, and those gut-wrenching screams, echoing off the metal walls. The protagonist's heartbeat's going insane, breathing heavy like every second could be his last. Within minutes, the entire bus becomes a blood-soaked nightmare. Men, women, kids, no one gets out alive. And that's only the damn beginning. Outside, the city's already gone to hell, with more than 80% of the population wiped out. The protagonist's thoughts spiral hard, wondering if there's even a point trying to survive when the world's clearly game over. But reality hits cruel and fast. He's just some ordinary player, zero talent, no powers, no hacks. Just a scared dude stuck on nightmare mode with death closing in from every direction. In Jongno-gu, Seoul, 2028 life was just cruising like any other day. People doing their thing, minding their business, chasing deadlines, eating street food, the usual. Two dudes were clowning around about how hard they tanked their exams, laughing but also low-key panicking that if they flunked again, they'd be stuck repeating the damn year. Somewhere in that sea of normalcy was Kim Hyuk-jin, our protagonist, a 30-year-old dude still grinding for the civil service exam after wasting 7 straight years trying to pass it. Once upon a time, he dreamed of being a player, one of those super-powered hunters, but that dream died the moment he realized he had zero talent for it. A decade ago, portals had ripped open across Seoul, bringing chaos and monsters but also creating players, people who awakened powers and turned into humanity's frontline fighters. But Hyuk-jin, he stayed painfully average. No powers, no miracles, just textbooks and caffeine-fueled nights. During lunch, he overheard people hyping up Gwak Taeun, the legend everyone called God Taeun. This guy was built different, a monster among players. People joked that even 1% of his power could flip their entire lives. Meanwhile, normies like Hyuk-jin were just stuck grinding for that stable government job. And then came the real kick-in-the-gut gossip about him. Everyone remembered how he'd once taken the player's aptitude test and flopped so hard that he got branded dead genius. Apparently, he'd had multiple sealed talents but never awakened them in time. Most players awakened in their early 20 seconds, but Hyuk-jin, he was still chasing that spark in his 30 seconds. 7 years back, he'd taken what was supposed to be his final shot. The result? A single, trash-tier talent so useless he wished he'd gotten nothing at all. That test was government-run, meant to spot hidden power and create new players. But for him, it just slammed the door shut on that dream. The head of the freaking Players Association had even shown up personally to hand him the result, which made zero sense. The guy had no clout, no fame, just a regular school record and an ordinary life. He'd even tried applying to be a civil hunter's assistant, basically the bottom-tier job in the player world, and still couldn't make the cut. Players lived like celebrities, TV interviews, fan clubs, sponsors, dungeon loot, worth millions. While normal folks like Hyuk-jin weren't even on the radar, the difference between players and people like him was night and day, heaven and hell. So Hyuk-jin stopped wasting time being bitter. He buried his disappointment and kept studying like a machine. His life felt dull, gray, and painfully hopeless, but he didn't quit. Maybe one day he'd finally pass that damn exam. After the cataclysm on April 27th, 2018, shit just kept hitting the fan. Tons of horrifying events unfolded since then. It always kicked off with this primordial mist and soul, which straight up killed 145,000 out of 150,000 participants. By the end, Jongno-gu was basically wiped off the map. The chaos was so insane that even the reporters covering it couldn't even process what was happening. Hyuk-jin also remembers this player, Ma Sang-yeon, who had been a huge deal since that cataclysm 10 years ago and had now blown up as a renowned player, doing regular interviews. In one of them, Sang-yeon flexed that after all those years grinding, he had the experience to say, with 100% confidence, that effort beats talent every time. He told everyone to keep their eyes on him because he was planning to get even stronger. Hyuk-jin was left wondering if effort alone could really take someone that far, and whether his own grind was just not enough. The protagonist sighed, thinking he shouldn't waste energy on impossible thoughts. There was no point obsessing over what he couldn't change now. Hyuk-jin mused that, if he had even a tiny bit of talent, Maybe he could have awakened as a real player, maybe even been picked by a guardian to make his own fortune. Hyukjin was kinda shocked that even after all these years, he still clung to a sliver of hope. But deep down, he knew it was his fault. Everything went to chaos. His mother died from her own illness, his sister had to grind at a semiconductor factory to escape poverty, and then she got leukemia. And honestly, so much of the rest was on him too. Hyukjin reflected that, even if he managed to succeed for his family, he was still basically broke, talentless, and had nothing of real value. He failed the civil service exams multiple times, and no one ever knew why or what he was doing wrong. Eventually, he ended up famous just for being utterly incompetent, and he kept asking himself when exactly life started going off the rails. Hin always told himself he gave it his all, but in reality, that wasn't true. He wondered if things could have changed if he had tried harder, but now, looking at the rest of his life stretching out, he didn't even know what to do anymore. Hyukjin felt mad lonely thinking about all of this. With those heavy thoughts, he finally crashed on his bed that night. The next morning, Hyukjin woke up completely clueless about the time. Then it hit him midterm evaluation day. Even though he'd actually gone to bed early, somehow he still managed to oversleep. He decided a shower was mandatory before heading out and wondered what time the exam even started. Shrugging it off, he set out like normal, but immediately, something felt off, like seriously off. He couldn't exactly put his finger on it, but the vibe was totally weird. At the station, the bus rolled in, and that uneasy feeling stuck around. Everything seemed kinda out of whack that day, even if he couldn't explain why. Hoping it was just his brain overthinking, he hopped on and decided to review his notes for the exam during the ride. Classic Hyukjin studying mid-bus like he did a decade ago in Jongno-gu. Yeah, that was the start of the cataclysm. People around him chattered about random stuff, weather, trending idols, whatever. Hyukjin kept flipping through info on the killer fall when the shift hit. Out of nowhere, the bus filled with this insane, thick fog spreading crazy fast. Everyone was staring, confused because visibility was zero, and there had been zero weather warnings. On top of that, a gnarly, awful smell started creeping through the air. Then Hyukjin saw it, an emergency SMS flashing about a major disaster. Jongno-gu was being hit by deep fog. The 27th of April 2018, everyone was warned to drive safe while chaos ruled. And bam, he got it. That gnawing unease wasn't random. He had literally woken up 10 years in the past. His instincts screamed because he'd lived this day already. The cataclysm was unfolding exactly the same way. Everything clicked. Jongno-gu, Gwanghwamun, all of it was screwed. The fog, the horrors, it would swallow everything. If this was real, even the bus he was on heading there was a death trap. Almost 100% of people in Jongno-gu had died back then. Hyukjin now fully understood. He wasn't just back in the past. He knew exactly what was about to go down. Right up to the present, he remembered. Then, out of nowhere, a game system window popped in front of him, shouting, "Prepare player," totally confusing him. The screen said the tutorial was starting. 10 years ago, this same tutorial triggered when monsters burst out of dungeons all over the world. And not just any monsters, they massacred humans without mercy. That week of the cataclysm, later called the beta or tutorial, saw nearly 150,000 deaths in Jongno-gu alone. Survival rate? A measly 3%. Worst day in human history, but that disaster birthed the players. They crushed monsters fast. The catastrophic dungeons in Jongno-gu slowly got cleared by their hands. Every dungeon invasion sparked huge battles among players and became recorded for virtual dungeon creation. Slowly, the world started to reorganize after the Great Disaster. Back then, Hyukjin memorized every single dungeon recording, watching them all obsessively. He ran those virtual dungeons hundreds of times, hooked by the thrill and the dream of becoming a player. Honestly, no one knew more about those events than him. Even though he never became a real player, he memorized every raid, played through all of them countless times, and that's where he proved his potential, essentially the best player in the virtual world. Now, in the present, the tutorial was about to drop again. The system window warned all players to prep themselves. Hyukjin knew those alerts would appear during the cataclysm. He'd only ever studied them theoretically, but seeing them live? Whole different level of intense. Out of nowhere, the bus smashes into something, and everyone inside gets shook. Nobody can even see outside, so panic starts creeping in, thinking shit might be serious. Hyukjin's trying to keep his cool, knowing this was all predicted and had happened before, but then he realizes the others didn't get the tutorial alert, meaning he's basically solo in this game. His only shot at survival? Use every trick he knows and analyze before doing anything dumb. The system warns him to watch his moves, cause the nameless observer is peeping at him now. Hyukjin guesses this observer was like a guardian back in the day. Weirdly, the observer wants to give him a beta opening bonus, something only for top-tier rankers. That messes with his head. Guardians hovered above players, deciding fates with bonuses and favors, and they always use nicknames, not real names. The system announces that Hyukjin gets the serene eye of the observer. He feels oddly calm, like someone's watching him from a third-person perspective, making him feel almost detached from the chaos. Then the system says the tutorial quest drops in 10 seconds, and the countdown starts. The bus driver freaks, saying the fog's too thick to drive, so they'll need another way to reach their destination. Chaos hits way faster than expected, and passengers start whining about being late. Most think they should just run, but Hyukjin yells at them not to leave, knowing that's how they survive. The system double confirms the nameless observer is eyeballing him. Suddenly, a massive light pops up, and a being emerges, a portable portal opening, named by the system as an intermediate administrator. The admin, Sinia, greets everyone, and says they're inside her tutorial now. The quest? Survive in the field for 7 days, with no escape. Difficulty depends on how many make it through. Normal people are straight up confused, asking if this is some movie set and demanding answers. Sinia shuts that down, saying they need to grow strong to survive. Then, a corpse crashes in front of the bus, blood everywhere on the windows, shocking everyone. Hyukjin knows scaring civilians with deaths is part of the strategy. The system alerts that screams and movement are detected, as goblin troops start coming out of this new world. The first goblin attacks, and more swarm in, heading for Jongno-gu. Passengers see shadows creeping, weird silhouettes climbing over everything, and panic spikes. They think about escaping, but Hyukjin yells, "Don't open the doors, it would be worse." Goblins would massacre outside, so staying inside is their only shot. Though judging by how panicked everyone is, Hyukjin doubts survival odds are high. 10 years into the goblin raids, humanity had kind of figured out some survival hacks. The ultimate move? Facing those monsters head-on, basically signing your own death sentence. Knowing it was one thing, actually doing it? Whole different level. Hyukjin knew straight up he wasn't strong enough to take those guys on in the tutorial. Goblins were beasts, physically crushing humans like bugs, and it was only a matter of time before they smashed the bus and got inside. The passengers were screaming, panic mode maxed, running around like idiots, but Hyukjin yelled at everyone to crouch and stay put. Yeah, good luck convincing them while their brains were fried from fear. But he didn't care. They had two options: follow him or die. Time wasn't waiting for anyone. Nobody really got what he was saying, just wanted to know if they were supposed to stay put while chaos unfolded outside. Logic said run, but Hyukjin? Too late for that. The system popped up, showing that the nameless observer was watching his every move, activating the status window and inventory. Hyukjin blinked, his points were insane. Even top-tier players usually started with 9, and here he was, rocking 11 inches the tutorial. Meanwhile, goblins were now smashing windows, dragging one poor soul through the glass, screams echoing. Bus chaos hit peak levels. Hyukjin hit the floor, blending in with the bodies, using the Badabanus to keep his nerves locked down, and it actually worked. Survival in the tutorial safe zone had rules. One of them? Staying alive inside the bus. Hyukjin had to stay calm at all costs. One wrong twitch could wreck everything, but somehow he kept cool enough that the goblins didn't clock him. Bonus from the Guardian, he guessed. No idea why he got it, but damn, it was life-saving. If his future knowledge was correct, the first wave would rage for 10 full minutes, just a bit longer, and he'd make it. Staying motionless was hell, even for Hyukjin, but every second counted. Then the system pinged. The brave Lion King was giving him a shot. Wait, different Guardian? Yep. The Guardian handed him a high-potency elixir, curious how far Hyukjin's courage could stretch. That potion? 10 minutes of pure beast mode, plus 6 strength. Hyukjin realized even the tutorial was loaded with goodies. Players leveling up got status boosts, so this elixir? Essentially a triple-level power-up. Now, he could actually fight the goblins. The Guardian clearly wanted a show. Hyukjin rolled his eyes. These Guardians were wild, expecting him to just play along. Seconds were ticking before the raid ended. He could survive doing nothing risky, but the brave Lion King wasn't done. Negotiations with the intermediate administrator started, and Sinia mentioned the tutorial field would be tweaked per Guardian orders. Translation: the Guardian was pushing him to fight. Among all Guardians, the brave Lion King was a straight-up nightmare. Obsessed with reckless courage, challenges, and useless hype, but also twisted AF. He loved watching players suffer, face danger, and throw themselves into dumb bravado for his entertainment. Hyukjin knew the Lion King's endgame, nuking the safe zone entirely. Sinia announced that the negotiation with the Guardian was officially done. As requested, the conditional safe zone was about to vanish in 30 seconds. Hyukjin immediately pointed out that if a tutor forces a scenario change, the affected player deserves a reward. They were basically trying to shut him up and make him happy, with just a strength-boosting elixir. He made it clear that Sinia couldn't just ignore the rules, especially if his life was on the line. Ignoring the commandments? Yeah, that was not okay, which obviously shocked the admin. Even the nameless observer was impressed, but the brave Lion King just went quiet. Senya asked about these commandments. Hyukjin said it was just an irrational complaint, like, whatever, thinking their shock was normal. After all, the laws and commandments weren't even discovered until 7 years after the tutorial. When Senya pressed how he knew about them, he dodged the question, saying it didn't matter. Honestly, players don't owe anyone explanations on how to play the game, which shut her up. He also mentioned that 10 seconds of his safe zone time were already gone, and she'd need to make that up. Senya admitted he was right. Following the commandments, she extended the safe zone by 10 more seconds and added compensation for the scenario change. Hyukjin got a quality lubricant, perfect for sharpening blades or other uses, plus a rusty steel sword not deadly, but packing 2-5 attack points. He realized he couldn't complain anymore. At least he got something just by mentioning the commandments. When he came back, the goblin invasion wave was over, and everyone left the bus. Thanks to that chat, he used the safe zone efficiently and survived without fighting monsters. The system notified that the brave Lion King was disappointed, but Hyukjin didn't give a damn. He ended up seeing all the passenger bodies on the ground and almost vomited. But he had to stay strong and focus on surviving. Hyukjin knew the tutorial week was literal hell, and surviving meant finding water and food as soon as possible. So he left the bus and headed to the nearest convenience store, about 300 meters away. He had studied the area for 3 years, so he knew it well, but with time running short, he had to move fast or get caught defenseless. Meanwhile, someone was screaming for help because injured people were nearby. Hyukjin knew they were there, but the fog was so thick he couldn't pinpoint where. Using the bus he'd been in as a landmark, he tried to navigate, dodging obstacles, still wondering if his crazy calm was thanks to the Guardian bonus. The chaos around him, dead bodies, wreckage, was insane. Then, out of nowhere, an arm under a car made him jump. At first, he thought it was just another corpse, until a voice screamed for help. Hyukjin spotted a survivor and got closer. On the other side of the car, a goblin was lying in wait, cackling, ready to kill the trapped woman. She begged him to save her, saying she wasn't ready to die, still wanting to see her mom. That's when he realized it was a child. Initially, he didn't notice because he was shook by the survivor, but the kid wasn't even injured despite the goblin trying to slice her legs, probably some bonus, like Hyukjin got during the tutorial. Her screams weren't pain, they were pure fear. The goblin was too busy trying to kill her to notice anything else. Hyukjin thought maybe this was what people called a player's talent. It's a self. Suddenly, the administrator popped up and said it was a baby goblin. Still, a level 1 shouldn't have handled it this easily. If Senya was telling the truth, that made the kid even crazier impressive. In reality, the child had some insane tanker-type ability. Hyukjin knew if he didn't step in, more goblins would show up and she'd be toast, so he acted fast, opening his inventory to summon his rusty iron sword. Even with all his field knowledge, applying it in real life was way different from the virtual world. But he used it, aiming for the goblin's weak spot while it was distracted, and with the kid not even fighting back, it was perfect. Hyukjin hit it from behind, landed a clean strike, got the XP, and finished the job in one blow. Then he told the kid to get up, grab her stuff, or he'd leave her behind. She complied, following him through the streets. They ended up at a shop. Hyukjin warned her, "Don't open the doors, no matter what." Confused, she stayed silent, so he double-checked. She nodded, probably terrified, and honestly, who wouldn't be in this mess? Despite understanding her fear, he knew bigger priorities were coming. The system flagged that 200 waves of goblin attacks were about to start, so safe zones needed to be set up. He asked if she could see the system, and she could. Safe zones were spots like schools, convenience stores, and hospitals. Hyukjin realized, just as he suspected, she was a player with massive potential. Normally, you could only confirm convenience stores as safe zones in the second wave, but her talent let her see hospitals too. That proved she was something else. Still, Hyukjin was low-key confused. He could see the hospital zones too, even without crazy talent. The system hinted at extra safe zones, making the whole thing even more wild. Pushing aside all that confusion, Hyukjin locked in on one thing: survival. Just then, the system dropped a bombshell. The second wave of goblin attacks was about to kick off. He warned the girl not to even think about opening the door. She clearly wasn't ready to handle what was out there, so the best move was to sit tight and stay far from that damn door. With the system setting up new safe zones, a thick primordial fog began rolling in, wrapping the place in a creepy mist. Outside, goblins started creeping around like freaks in a horror movie. Some people still tried to fight back with whatever weapons they had, but every single one of them got brutally slaughtered. Others sprinted toward nearby convenience stores, banging on doors and begging for help, screaming that they'd die if no one let them in. But Hyukjin didn't move. Even when people cursed at him, he just stood there. Watching it all happen tore him up inside, seeing goblins tear apart those helpless people right in front of him. But the system rules were clear. Once a safe zone door opens, it vanishes. If he'd opened it, both he and the girl would have been toast. So, he sat there, forcing himself to remember everything the cruel system set by some god, and those so-called guardians watching all this bloodshed like it was some twisted game show, and he swore he'd pay them back one day, every last one of them. 6 hours later, after that nightmare of a second wave, things finally chilled a bit. The girl thanked him, saying she wouldn't have survived without him, and introduced herself as Kang Sunhwa. She smiled, saying she was glad they met, but Hyukjin shut that down real quick, told her not to thank him yet. He hadn't done anything special, and things were far from over. Then he added coldly that he might use her as bait if things went south, which instantly freaked her out. She panicked, asking what she'd done wrong to deserve that. But Hyukjin wasn't being cruel, he said it that way on purpose. He explained that he couldn't promise her safety, just staying alive himself was already a damn challenge. Still, he made it clear that as long as he could manage, he wouldn't throw her away. Then he told her to get some rest, saying they'd figure out their next move by morning. When she asked where they'd go, Hyukjin opened the system map, seeing both regular and extra safe zones, one being on the second floor of the Park Tower parking lot. He said they'd head for Gwanghwamun, guessing Sunhwa probably couldn't even see those extra zones yet. Honestly, he hadn't heard about them before either, but he had a gut feeling the Gwanghwamun Tower was the key to flipping this whole messed up tutorial around. Next morning, they bounce from the convenience store, finally stepping out into the wrecked city. Hyukjin checks if Sunhwa's okay after seeing all those corpses, and she says she is, but deep down, he knows that's bullshit. There's no way anyone could be fine after witnessing something that brutal. She's probably just putting on a brave face. Still, Hyukjin's kinda shocked. Walking through a city reduced to rubble, no survivors in sight, and corpses everywhere, it's like some post-apocalyptic game come to life. He tells Sunhwa to stay alert and holler if she spots anything like jelly sliding on the ground, leaving her confused as hell about what that even means. Then boom, they actually find one. A freaking slime. Hyukjin's caught off guard since he didn't expect to run into one so soon. Slimes were neutral mobs, weak, and their levels didn't even show. Basically, the kind of monsters even kids could beat up without breaking a sweat. Hyukjin slashes it down with his sword and earns some XP and 3 coins, which surprises him, even though it's his first time using a sword in real life. There's this weird nostalgic vibe like his body just remembers how to fight. Sunhwa's stunned when the slime just vanishes after dying. Hyukjin tells her those are the weakest monsters, but they'll keep popping up, so she should always stay on the lookout and call him out whenever she spots one. She agrees, ready to help. But Hyukjin can't shake off this feeling it's too easy. He's only ever used swords inside virtual dungeons. Yet somehow, it feels way too natural now. Like he's been a swordsman since forever. Together, they keep grinding Sunhwa spotting slimes, Hyukjin slicing them down, and by the 5th kill, he's already leveled up to level 2. He gains 2 bonus stat points and 1 random one, and Sunhwa freaks out seeing his body glow. He tells her it's just leveling up that killing monsters makes them stronger. She's fired up to level up too, though it's also his first time doing it. And yet, that same nostalgic feeling doesn't leave him. They keep farming slimes until he hits level 3, bagging 2 more bonus points and another random one. He's kinda impressed with how fast he's leveling, but the random stat points? That's something else. According to history, even the first king, Su Yu Hyun, who was called the tutorial finisher, said those random stats existed, but it took him ages to find them. Yet Hyukjin already got 2. He starts wondering if this has to do with his return to the past. In his old life, he'd always failed aptitude tests. Everyone said he had 0 talent. But maybe something changed when he came back. Maybe this was an awakening, where a player's real growth only kicks in at the start. Whatever it was definitely working in his favor. By surviving and hitting level 3, Hyukjin even caught the attention of some guardians watching from above. If he really had an early awakening, there was a chance to reach his ultimate goal, because in 3 years, a disease-curing potion would drop on the market. The price? 1 billion. And if he could stack up that kind of cash, he could save his mom's life. So for now, all he could do was grind, survive, and keep hustling toward that goal. During their journey to Gwanghwamun Tower, Sunhwa and Hyukjin kept farming slimes like it was a full-time job. Hyukjin grinded his way up to level 5, snagging 2 bonus points and 1 random stat each time, which honestly kept throwing him off every time he checked the bonus screen again. That's when something new popped up, a party feature. Once he hit level 5, he instantly used it to invite Sunhwa into his group. Boom, she officially became part of his team, and now they could share EXP. Sunhwa was kinda mind-blown by the new system features, while that nameless guardian kept watching Hyukjin with growing interest. But Hyukjin didn't care. Sunhwa thanked him nervously, promising to work hard and not be a burden, even begging him not to abandon her. He could tell she'd been through some serious abandonment issues. He felt bad, sure, but he was also fighting for his own survival. So he told her that words mean nothing, she better prove it through action. Despite the quick level ups and the sweet stat boosts, one thing still haunted him: that monster. Waiting on the first floor of Gwanghwamun Tower, Hyukjin doubted he could even protect Sunhwa when that time came. I mean, a level 5 guy protecting someone? Yeah, right. Then Sunhwa suddenly pointed ahead, spotting something. A creature, a level 3 city fox. The system showed it was neutral, but these things always moved in packs and attacked together if provoked. Hyukjin signaled her to move quietly, but Sunhwa, not knowing any better, used a skill called Taunt, pulling every damn fox's attention onto herself. Hyukjin rushed to help, realizing she wasn't taking too much damage, but the foxes were multiplying fast, so he went for the kill, aiming straight for their necks. After a brutal fight, he wiped them out, and checked if she was okay. Meanwhile, the system went off again. Level up, several times. He was now level 8. Right then, Administrator Senya appeared. Curious about his level, Hyukjin casually said he was level 8, which made her doubt him. He told her to scan him if she didn't believe it, and when she did, she was stunned he wasn't lying. Even the nameless guardian was shocked at how fast he was growing. Other watchers were now paying close attention. Hyukjin knew his rapid growth would draw eyes. Even he found it weird. He opened his status window, noticing his distributed points were way higher than a normal level 8's. Clearly, his growth was freakishly fast, but he wasn't about to complain. It was an opportunity he'd milked to the max. Then he told Sunhwa it was time to move. There was a dungeon inside the tower, and once they entered, she had to follow his instructions exactly, or she'd die. Sunhwa looked nervous, but Hyukjin assured her not to panic as long as she stuck to the plan. They took down a few more city foxes on the way and looted a worn iron gauntlet, which Hyukjin immediately gave to her. With that, their dungeon prep was complete. As they approached the tower, the system announced, "Minimum entry level 5. At the entrance, Sunhwa asked if they were seriously going in. Hyukjin said yes, no hesitation. Together, they stepped into the dungeon. Inside, monsters were everywhere. Instantly noticing them, Hyukjin reminded Sunhwa of the plan, and she nodded. Then, he disbanded the party and told her to start with the goblins. The two split up to clear the place. Hyukjin noted that, unlike higher-rank dungeons, where everything wanted you dead, this D-rank tower had both hostile goblins and neutral city wolves. If they focused on the goblins first, the wolves wouldn't bother them, and damn, Sunhwa was killing it. Her movements were sharp, her attacks clean, she fought like a pro. The goblins couldn't even touch her. Hyukjin couldn't help but think this girl's a total natural. When Sunhwa wrapped things up, Hyukjin hyped her up for doing great and told her to chill for a bit. Meanwhile, his mind was already running wild. He figured the mini-bosses were about to pop up soon, since they usually stayed hidden until all the nearby monsters were gone. Once Sunhwa caught her breath, Hyukjin said they'd finish off the leftovers. She nodded, then went straight to cleaning up the remaining foxes from the neutral city. Just a handful of monsters left. Out of nowhere, the system dropped an announcement: the pause had kicked in. The nameless observer was going nuts with curiosity about Hyukjin. The brave Lion King was watching closely, and even the unnamed guardian seemed to buzz with excitement. Then, someone started talking to Hyukjin, and that's when he realized time itself had frozen. It had to be some crazy power, probably from an administrator-level skill that could literally stop everything in the field. Senya walked up, clearly annoyed, asking if he'd lost his mind, especially after she burned one of those insanely expensive time-stop items. Hyukjin just stared, saying he had no clue what she meant. Senya shot back that up until now, he'd been acting like some all-knowing future seer, and asked if this was part of his grand plan too. Hyukjin's answer? Maybe, maybe not. That ticked her off even more. She called him reckless for summoning a level 13 goblin soldier mini-boss, something totally out of a level 8 players league. That thing had boosted stats and could crush them easily, especially since he only had one teammate with him. Senya demanded to know why he'd pick a fight he couldn't possibly win. Hyukjin could tell she genuinely didn't want him to die, which honestly threw her off, but he knew she was hiding something. The Guardians clearly had an interest in him after all. He was the player who acted like he could see the future. A total wildcard meant to put on one hell of a show for the audience up there. That's why Senya probably wanted him alive, not because she cared, but because he was entertainment. He also noticed something weird. He didn't remember ever hearing about Senya in the future. Maybe she'd been some clumsy administrator who got benched before the dungeon craze blew up. Her excuses were so bad it was almost funny. When she asked if he was trying to insult her, Hyukjin calmly said he was just being honest. She was wasting time anyway, letting things drag on like this. Then he gave her an idea. Once the pause ended, she could announce that he wouldn't be able to defeat the goblin soldier. Then, he'd prove her wrong in front of everyone. giving the Guardians one hell of a spectacle. Cinia stared at him, asking if he was seriously planning to fight that monster. Hyukjin told her to think harder. How could a level 8 player beat a mini-boss? Saying that aloud would make the Guardians lose their minds in excitement. If she played along, she could rise as a proper intermediate administrator who knew how to give her audience a good show. All she had to do was make a deal with him. But Senia's patience was wearing thin. She powered up, ready to smack him down. Hyukjin, unfazed, pointed out that if she really wanted him dead, she would have done it already. Killing him now would be a total waste after granting that pause. She had nothing to lose by cutting a deal. Finally, Senia asked, with clear frustration, what kind of deal he was thinking of. Meanwhile, Sunhwa's out there wrecking monsters left and right, stacking up levels like a pro. She turns back, flexing a bit, and tells Hyukjin that she's wiped out every single one just like he told her to. Hyukjin calls her over, and right then the system confirms it. All monsters cleared. Boom. That triggers the condition for summoning the floor's mini-boss, the Goblin Soldier. Suddenly, that ugly bastard spawns with a bunch of other monsters, claiming the whole floor as its new battlefield. Hyukjin pulls Sunhwa down into hiding, telling her to keep her head low. Just the sight of that beast was pure insanity. The goblins immediately start reacting, sensing intruders nearby. Hyukjin already knows the trick. The cleanest way to kill a goblin soldier is to bait out and dodge its deadliest move, spear throw. So first, they had to make it waste that attack. When the goblin lunges toward their hiding spot, Hyukjin decides it's go time. He tells Sunhwa they're starting the hunt and signals Senia to watch carefully because a level 8 player was about to solo a mini-boss. The level 13 goblin soldier locks onto them, ready to hunt. Hyukjin's not surprised. That's exactly what a mini-boss would do. But man, the pressure this one gave off, totally different from the rest. It missed its first deadly spear throw, then immediately switched tactics, charging straight at them with blinding speed. The goblin slashed and swung like a maniac, while Hyukjin kept dodging and countering, slicing through the smaller mobs before focusing back on the boss. His sword didn't cut deep, though his attack power wasn't high enough to deal real damage to something that outleveled him this much. The boss came at them again, changing its pattern, moving even faster this time. Still, Hyukjin read its movements like a damn book, waiting for that one perfect counterstrike. He was determined to end it, no matter how risky. Meanwhile, Sunhwa used her taunt skill, pulling all the smaller goblins toward her, tanking every hit while sticking to Hyukjin's plan. She took all that pain head-on because she refused to be left behind in this brutal world. A bunch of guardians joined the channel, curious to see how this wild fight would go. Even Senia was shocked by how many were watching. Everyone was whispering, was a level 8 player seriously fighting a dungeon boss in the tutorial? Senia confirmed it. Kim Hyukjin, level 8, unreal. The guardians couldn't believe what they were seeing. They kept saying, no way those movements belong to a level 8 player. Maybe he's hiding his real level? Senia agreed he wasn't fighting like any newbie. But still, by logic, there was no way he could actually win. Eventually, his weak attacks should have worn him out before the mini-boss even broke a sweat. But Hyukjin wasn't going down that easy. The fight dragged on dodges, slashes, counterstrikes, until he finally yelled for Sunhwa to finish them off. She went berserk, wiping out all the smaller goblins on her own and earning massive XP boosts one after another. The system admin was completely stunned by her sudden burst. At that same moment, Hyukjin hit level 9. Instantly healing all his damage and even restoring the durability of his weapon. That's the perk of leveling mid-fight. It not only boosts your stats but also restores your health and clears all debuffs, exactly as he planned. He told Sunhwa to keep her distance and get ready, because if she shared the XP while he took down the goblin boss, she'd level up too, healing herself and regaining stamina mid-battle. That'd be their shot at victory. Once she powered up, Hyukjin saw his opening. He knew the goblin's biggest weakness, its exposed neck from behind. He'd been watching, waiting, calculating every move. The outcome depended on one thing: how many goblins Sunhwa could kill. The more she leveled, the stronger their odds became. And with every monster that fell, their shot at clearing that dungeon grew closer to reality. Out of nowhere, the dungeon boss lands a nasty hit on Hyukjin. He instantly realizes that he's gotta tank that blow himself this time, no other choice. Still, he somehow pulls through and hits level 10, which helps him bounce back from the heavy-ass damage that goblin boss dealt. Then Hyukjin goes full beast mode, slashes the boss again, and somehow his rusty old sword levels up too, dealing even more damage. Finally, he catches the perfect moment and strikes the goblin boss right at the back of its neck. Boom, boss down. But of course, his sword snaps right after, totally breaking apart. The system congratulates him. They've officially defeated the goblin boss. Turns out Hyukjin also killed that mini-boss goblin soldier, making him the first ever player to take down a monster mini-boss solo. He gains the XP, and the system drops a bomb. The tutorial field's level cap is 10, and at least 5 players were supposed to be in that raid. But since the system marked it as a solo raid, all restrictions are gone, leveling up's back on the table, and some special hidden qualification gets unlocked too. Manhwa, hyped beyond words, jumps and hugs him. And honestly, she deserved that moment. She'd been killing it from start to finish. Hyukjin, though, starts wondering if this new qualification thing has something to do with a hidden boss, but he's got no clue what the required item could be. Guess that's a mystery for later. Meanwhile, over near Gwanghwamun, a bunch of wolves are getting wrecked by other players, earning them XP and turning heads. One player straight up one-shots a wolf, crazy impressive since those wolves are level 8. Everyone's hyped, showering him with praise, calling him Yu Hyun, the strongest in the tutorial. The dude blushes like crazy from all that attention. Then Yu Hyun spots Hyukjin and Manhwa from afar, realizes they're survivors too, and waves them over. Hyukjin immediately recognizes him. That guy would become a major figure in the future. And deep down, Hyukjin can't shake that thought that's been haunting him since day one. Was he really talentless? But after soloing a damn monster boss, he knows that's bullshit. There's no way he's got no talent. Even with all his future knowledge, Hyukjin knew his dungeon odds were basically 50/50, but the nameless observer still admired the hell out of him, his grit, focus, and insane willpower. And it wasn't just one guardian keeping tabs now, even the Lady of Scales had taken an interest. Unlike the fierce Lion King, she was more about protecting good-hearted players, donating safe rewards, and helping people survive. She was basically a beloved guardian, and for some reason, she'd started favoring him. Maybe it was because he'd been helping Manhwa, that kid everyone else left behind. Then Senia pops up, telling Hyukjin she's giving him a reward for slaying that mini-boss. He gets a standard steel sword, decent durability, average attack, but still way better than that broken junk he used before. Manhwa asks what's next, and he says they're heading to Cheonggyecheon to hunt city wolves. She's like, wait, wolves? Not foxes? Hyukjin explains that city wolves are all level 7 and up, and their leaders hit around level 9, way tougher than foxes, but solid targets for grinding XP. If they could take down a pack, just the 2 of them would be enough. When she asks how he even knows that, he casually says he heard it from others before they met. She nods, taking a second to process it, still kinda impressed that he already knew all that. To be honest, Hyukjin's OG plan was simple: chill in a nearby safe zone until the legend himself, the Fist King Yu Hyun, launched his big raid on Tower D's 2nd floor. That dungeon was wild enough to shake up the entire territory they were in. The one Hyukjin and his partner just cleared? Yeah, that was only the 1st floor. But once they finished it, all the local monster attacks stopped cold in that area. Now that Hyukjin could actually clear dungeons, survival till the end of the tutorial was easy peasy, as long as they stayed inside the safe zone. But Hyukjin wasn't planning to just survive. After realizing he had legit player talent, making $1 million to help his fam suddenly felt doable. When he came out of the dungeon, he kept replaying everything that went down. He had gained some kind of talent after the tutorial, or maybe he always had it, just didn't know. Either way, now he was ready to use it. That's when they ran into Yu Hyun, who showed up asking if they were survivors. Hyukjin immediately recognized him. Even though it was their first face-to-face, there was no mistaking the Yu Hyun, the Fist King, soon to be one of Korea's top 8 iconic players. Hyukjin confirmed they were survivors, and Yu Hyun said something nice about how tough it must have been for them. That honestly shocked Hyukjin. Dude had already saved a bunch of people inside the tutorial. Even in this timeline, his power and charisma were the same. Then Yu Hyun offered to team up, saying more survivors together meant higher chances of making it out alive. But Hyukjin straight up refused, leaving everyone stunned. He calmly said they just needed to survive 1 more week in the tutorial zone and that 2 people were enough. Yu Hyun was kinda disappointed, but he didn't push it. He just wished Hyukjin and Manhwa luck. The others whispered behind their backs, calling Hyukjin cocky since they had no clue about Yu Hyun's true power. To be fair, teaming up with him would have made survival easier. Before leaving, Hyukjin gave Yu Hyun one strange piece of advice: if they ever faced a strong monster, go for its left eye. Yu Hyun looked puzzled but thanked him anyway. Then, Hyukjin and Manhwa headed toward Cheonggyecheon. Manhwa asked if those people would actually make it out alive. Hyukjin said most would, especially Yu Hyun. That made her feel better, even though they should have been worrying about themselves. But reality had other plans. Based on the future memories of the Fist King, a tragic event was bound to happen. Yu Hyun and about 10 survivors would enter the D-rank tower dungeon, only to face massive danger. The ones who cleared the 1st floor would push into the 2nd, but the enemies there were brutal. Almost everyone would die as the raid timer hit 0. Only Yu Hyun would survive, earning the title of tutorial finisher, the first ever to conquer a D-rank tower. Still, that victory came with a price. From that day on, bringing people into that dungeon became his biggest regret. Now, The timeline could play out differently, but Hyukjin hoped his little tip about the left eye might save a few lives. Even so, he didn't want to risk joining them because this time, the cost could be their lives. Sunhwa suddenly pointed out something up ahead, a pack of wolves, the same ones they'd been hunting for. Hyukjin gave her props for spotting them from that far and was like, "Nice job, let's go get 'em." Without wasting a second, the two charged straight in. Sunhwa popped her taunt skill, swinging her baseball bat like she owned the place, playing her role perfectly as the bait to distract the beasts. Meanwhile, Hyukjin kept doing his thing, staying laser-focused. He wasn't just clearing tutorial dungeons, he was also grinding smart, using the no-level restriction rule inside the tutorial to push past level 10 while he still could. Together, they wrecked a bunch of the neutral city wolves. Sunhwa quickly realized that swinging a bat was way better than throwing punches. Following Hyukjin's advice to grab that weapon? Best decision ever. Hyukjin, on the other hand, kept slicing through monsters until he finally hit level 11, officially becoming the first player to ever do it. Sunhwa wasn't even shocked, just proud. It was already insane how hard it was for others to reach level 10 that fast, but Hyukjin went beyond that. Then came the surprise: he unlocked a brand new title, the First Pioneer. The name alone screamed prestige. It boosted EXP by 20% and could even stack with other titles. Hyukjin was stunned. He'd never even heard of that title before. But thinking about it, it made sense since no one else had broken the level cap earlier. No one could have claimed it. Sunhwa glanced at him, asking if he was good, and he just nodded, saying they should keep moving and hunt down more monsters themselves. Meanwhile, the administrator was silently watching the duo while chatting with the guardians. Senia, clearly annoyed, muttered that just as she'd suspected, she'd discovered something weird, and now she'd need to report it and get it confirmed. Inside the hospital's safe zone, Hyukjin and Sunhwa were prepping for another dam expedition. While Hyukjin noticed Senia had been acting weird since yesterday, she seemed pissed, and now he knew why she brought up the title he'd earned. He casually admitted he got one but refused to tell her which, leaving her frustrated and clueless. Not even the guardians could know a player's title unless it was spoken aloud, and Hyukjin wasn't about to hand out that info. Senia was under pressure, clearly struggling to figure it out, but Hyukjin didn't care to make it easier. He knew keeping her in the dark made things more interesting for the spectators anyway. Sunhwa then asked if they were heading back to Cheonggyecheon like before, and Hyukjin confirmed they were. Meanwhile, over near Gwanghwamun, Yu Hyun gathered his crew and dropped some big news about a nearby dungeon. No one knew how dangerous it was, but everyone could smell the rewards waiting inside. He declared he'd be entering it himself, hyping up his followers who instantly wanted in. The crowd buzzed with energy, chanting and prepping to take down whatever beast hid inside. Back at Cheonggyecheon, Hyukjin and Sunhwa were busy wrecking wolves from the neutral zone, leveling up like maniacs. Sunhwa noted how fast their hunts had gotten, and Hyukjin told her it was just repetition. They'd been grinding non-stop for 2 days straight. He'd already hit level 12 in no time. Moving so fast, the wolves barely had a chance to react. The loot was pouring in: 2 coins, drops, and a mutant wolf fang worth over 6,000 coins. Then Sunhwa spotted one more wolf lurking nearby, and Hyukjin instantly recognized it as the last one. He killed it with a single blow, easy and clean. But then a weird notification hit: they'd completed all hidden requirements for something special. The system listed them out. Obtain a secret item, reach level 12, and slay 500 city wolves. Hyukjin froze for a second, realizing what they'd triggered. He'd been avoiding danger, but fate clearly had other plans. Because now, they had just unlocked the damn Wolf King Lycanthrope. Hyukjin yelled for Sunhwa to run, and both of them bolted without looking back. Sunhwa tried asking what the hell was happening, but Hyukjin had zero time to explain. His only focus was getting them out alive. Out of nowhere, Lycanthrope crawled out of a damn portal, unleashing his skill Howl, which hit their bodies like a shockwave. Sunhwa stumbled and fell, apologizing as her body refused to move properly under that monster's influence. Hyukjin told her to hide behind a nearby car, but she hesitated, panicked about what he was planning next. He shouted again, forcing her to move, because he knew there was a secret item tied to this encounter, and certain conditions had already been met. Still, he never thought he'd actually meet Lycanthrope during a freaking tutorial. That boss wasn't supposed to exist here. Its power was easily on par with the second floor of Tower D's dungeon, maybe even worse. Hyukjin couldn't even read its level because his was too damn low, but he knew beasts like this were usually level 20 to 25. This kind of monster shouldn't have shown up in a beginner zone, and now he was stuck wondering how the hell he was supposed to fight something this unfair. Running again wasn't an option anymore. So, he pulled out a grand elixir, chugging it down to temporarily boost his strength by 6 points. If he wanted to live, he'd have to use the raid tactic from the great explorer Jackson's strategy, lure the boss in and outsmart it. As the Lycanthrope charged, Sunhwa tried to hide like she was told, but her chest tightened with worry, unsure if Hyukjin could handle this alone. She couldn't even see the monster's level, and that scared the hell out of her. It looked nothing like the wolves they'd been farming earlier. If the system wasn't showing its level, it basically meant one thing: you're not supposed to beat this thing. The difference was massive, at least 10 levels apart. Winning was technically impossible. Hyukjin recalled something from an old report about monsters like this. It said, low-level players should never run into them. They were massive, fast, and brutal. The only way to survive was to pray you were in a safe zone, or use desperate tricks to escape. But when escape wasn't an option, there was one method left, a survival move that might just work. Hyukjin grabbed a bottle of high-grade lubricant from his inventory, the kind used to coat sword blades or surfaces. He remembered lycanthropes always opened with a huge leap for the throat. So as soon as it lunged, he slid under it with perfect timing. The next attack came in a sweeping motion, and Hyukjin read the beast's muscle movements and shadow positions like clockwork. He threw the lubricant on the ground, making the monster slip like an idiot, giving him the perfect opening. Using his boosted strength, he dashed in and slammed it down hard in a single strike. He remembered from the same report that water was another weakness. Lycanthropes hated it. So, Hyukjin pushed the beast straight into the nearby stream, forcing it underwater. The thing thrashed violently, shrinking as its swollen form collapsed into something smaller, weaker. Manhwa was left speechless, watching the scene unfold. Hyukjin explained that when a lycanthrope hit water, it lost its monstrous form, turning into something no stronger than a regular city wolf. Manhwa was stunned and asked if Hyukjin had some secret martial arts training or something, because the dude fought like a movie hero. He brushed it off, saying he'd never trained a day in his life, just studied for exams. Truth was, he didn't win through skill, just clever tricks. The weakened lycanthrope howled from the water until Hyukjin finished it off with a clean sword strike, ending its misery and earning a flood of level-ups straight from 12-2 to level 15. He'd just taken down a hidden boss and got showered with rewards for it. The system granted him the title, Excellent Hunter, and even the Guardians watching were impressed. The nameless observer tossed him 1,200 coins, while the Lady of Scales added another 700, praising how he protected his ally. The brave lion, though, just scoffed at his cowardly tactics. Hyukjin didn't care coins were coins, and he'd made bank. He wondered how much more he could squeeze out of this system, now that he'd reached level 15 inside a tutorial. Then, calling for Senya, she appeared instantly, almost like she'd been waiting for it. She confirmed his new level and began explaining that the item shop feature had now unlocked. Normally, that wouldn't happen until after the tutorial, so this was wild. She said he could spend his earned coins on special tutorial-only items, just 4 available for now. Hyukjin wasn't surprised. That was standard tutorial stuff. He had nearly 8,000 coins stacked up and figured he could buy a bunch of potions or other useful gear. Before he could browse, Senya suddenly asked if he had a real name. Hyukjin frowned, wondering why the hell she wanted to know that. She sighed, admitting she hadn't been curious at first but changed her mind, then asked if he wasn't planning to check the rest of the Excellent Hunter rewards. He told her he'd do that later alone. No need for her help. Deep down, he didn't want her learning too much. She was way too green to realize how dangerous revealing information could be. The Excellent Hunter title was special, only obtainable in the tutorial, and applied to non-sentient creatures recognized by the system. It gave him a solid 20% boost to damage, 10% speed increase, and a new skill called Hunter Strike. The skill sometimes failed against targets, but it was still damn powerful. With that kind of buff, low-level monsters were basically free XP now. Hyukjin then told Manhwa to pack up. They were moving out. Their next target was the second-floor dungeon of Tower D. Manhwa hesitated, asking if he meant the same place where they'd fought the goblin soldier earlier. When Hyukjin confirmed, she looked shocked. He'd literally said that floor was insanely dangerous. Hyukjin agreed with her completely, because deep down, he knew the real nightmare waiting inside was nothing like the goblins. It was someone or something way worse. Meanwhile, Yu Hyun's team was getting absolutely wrecked inside the second floor. Bodies already dropping left and right while the guy himself was bleeding out and barely standing. The situation was tense as hell, and he couldn't wrap his head around what kind of monster he was even facing, or how the hell he was supposed to beat it. His bones ached, his body screamed to stop, but quitting wasn't an option. If he backed off now, it was game over. Even if it was suicide, he had to land at least one real hit. So, he swung again and again, but his strikes did jack shit. While one counter from the beast shattered his bones like glass, it felt like punching a damn concrete wall that punched back harder every time. He started wondering if this was just his death scene playing out in slow motion. Then suddenly, a memory clicked, something Hyukjin once said about hitting the monster in the eye. It sounded dumb back then, but right now, it was all he had. Before he could plan anything, the monster's fist came crashing down. He dodged once, barely, then got smacked by the second hit, sent flying like a rag doll, coughing blood mid-air. It was over, or so it looked. Then the system notification hit. New players had entered the dungeon. Everyone froze, confused as hell, until Hyukjin and Sunhwa appeared right in the boss zone. The system added that there was no player limit, and Hyukjin just sighed, realizing things had gone wild again. The boss was still that same magic troll unknown level, red named, and a total freak of nature. Most people inside were half dead already, and Yu Hyun had blacked out. Using his inventory, Hyukjin pulled out some basic potions and started healing whoever he could. One injured guy screamed for them to run, warning that anyone who stayed in the boss zone for over 10 seconds was guaranteed dead. But Hyukjin ignored him, tossing potions to Sunhwa and telling her to patch up the survivors, even that loudmouth. While she handled the wounded, he ordered her to tell the recovered ones to stay low and not move while he fought. The man couldn't believe it. This dude was seriously planning to fight the floor boss alone. He shouted again to run, but Hyukjin didn't even blink. He knew exactly what he was dealing with. That troll wasn't just any beast. It was one of the monsters he knew better than anyone else. Like the lycanthrope, its level was hidden, its name was red, and its toughness was straight up broken. Magic trolls were infamous for their ridiculous vitality and regen. They barely took any damage unless hit by proper weapons. Normally, players like Yu Hyun were the only ones who could stand against things like this. But he was down cold. So Hyukjin had to go solo. When the troll charged, one of the wounded tried to warn him, but Hyukjin was already moving. He dodged easily, realizing that while the troll's hits were monstrous, its movements were slow as hell. There was no real strategy here, just pure grit and timing. The only way to win was to stay alive long enough to beat it down. Hyukjin remembered how the Fist King had once killed his own tutorial boss by never letting it breathe, attacking non-stop until it broke. Sunhwa looked terrified, and the survivors stared in disbelief, wondering how Hyukjin had the guts to keep standing in front of that beast. Then, the system chimed again. His title was kicking in, giving him buffs mid-battle. His perception sharpened, his reflexes spiked, and he could literally see the trajectory of the troll's attacks. As long as he boosted agility and kept popping potions, he could dodge everything while striking back endlessly. It turned into a brutal endurance match, him versus a regenerating nightmare. Minutes turned to hours, and still, Hyukjin didn't back down. The spectators couldn't believe it. 1 hour passed, then 2. This random player had jumped in just to save them, and he was still going strong. People who thought Yu Hyun was the prodigy were now realizing Hyukjin was built different. He downed another item, muscles aching but eyes locked on the monster. He'd never fought something like this head-on before, but now he was doing it. 5 hours in, and the troll was still standing, but barely. Then the system finally announced that its regeneration had stopped. It had hit its limit. The boss was dying, and Hyukjin knew he was close. His old self, the civil service student Kim Hyukjin, would have never believed this was possible, but that guy was gone. Now, he was Hyukjin the player, and he was ending this fight. 15 more minutes, maybe less, and the floor boss would fall. Just then, the brave Lion King granted him a divine favor, confusing the hell out of him. A new skill appeared, superb overhuman strength, a buff that doubled his attack power instantly. Hyukjin didn't even have time to process it before his next strike landed, hitting twice as hard as intended. The sheer power ruined every calculation he'd made mid-fight, throwing his plan into chaos. He gritted his teeth, pissed off but unstoppable, cursing under his breath at the Lion King's timing. Everyone around was losing their minds, shocked that Hyukjin had taken down the floor boss almost completely solo. Hyukjin knew damn well the brave Lion King Guardian had allowed that on purpose, and if he ever got the chance to take revenge on those divine bastards, that lion freak would be the first to die. His original plan to beat the troll had gone to hell, and now he had no choice but to run. Meanwhile, Sunhwa managed to wake Yu Hyun, trying to help him recover, but the guy instantly panicked about the monster he was fighting earlier. She pointed out that it was still there, only now it was facing Hyukjin instead. That's when Yu Hyun froze. The troll's aura had shifted into something completely different, darker, way more dangerous. Out of nowhere, an arrow shot straight into the troll's forehead, shocking Hyukjin. The man who fired it yelled out, asking if it worked, and if the monster was dead, then laughed like a jackass, mocking Hyukjin for trying to steal his kill. But Hyukjin didn't waste time arguing, he just told them to run, because he couldn't save that idiot. The man didn't get it until the system announced the boss's consciousness was now restricted and had entered berserker mode. Hyukjin immediately shouted for Sunhwa to run as another notification declared the boss zone lifted. Chaos hit instantly, everyone scattered, running for their damn lives. Sunhwa asked where to go, and Hyukjin yelled for the escalators. The first floor escalator could only carry 15 people at once, but now there was no waiting, just survival. Meanwhile, the arrow guy met his karma. The troll killed him in one brutal swing, and Yu Hyun could only watch in horror as his body hit the floor. As Hyukjin and Sunhwa sprinted away, guilt crept in. He knew it was all his fault. Every damn thing that happened was just another twisted show for the Guardians' entertainment. No matter what choices players made, the system always had the final laugh. Hyukjin regretted not accounting for that from the start. With the troll now in full berserker mode, the zone's restriction was gone, meaning the monster could roam anywhere beyond the second floor. The dungeon had no safe spots left except one, the underground. Hyukjin told Sunhwa they had to go down, and when she asked where, he said they'd take the emergency stairs to reach the underground area of the second floor, the new temporary safe zone. But before they could descend, Hyukjin spotted the troll boss charging straight at them, which could only mean everyone else on that floor was already dead. He grabbed Sunhwa's arm and yanked her back just in time, leaping off the staircase as the troll's attack slammed into the spot they'd been standing. He forced himself to stay calm, panic would get them killed. The second floor was further down than he thought, but they finally spotted the emergency exit door ahead. The system recognized the dire situation, confirming it matched the tutorial field's conditions, and classifying it as a special encounter. That's when Hyukjin felt it, his innate skill awakening under pressure. Even without looking back, he could sense the boss closing in. His sixth sense had just been forcibly unlocked. But the troll's attack came crashing down before he could react, and for a second, he thought he was done for. Instead, the hit landed on Sunhwa. She had known all along that they wouldn't survive at this pace and couldn't block the strike, but she damn well refused to let Hyukjin die. So, she threw herself forward, taking the blow head-on. The Lady of Scales witnessed her courage and decided to bless her with a new ability, Platinum Shield. It gave her the power to block the troll's attack, but as she held the shield up, the system warned her that the impact was too much, and the shield would soon shatter from the absorbed force. Hyukjin realized she was hurt because of him, quickly dragging her away from the line of fire. He was shocked at her sudden awakening, but even more horrified to see her collapse unconscious right after using it. Hyukjin grabbed her and kept running, dodging the troll's furious swings. He tried to stay calm, they were close to the safe zone. All they had to do was reach that damn glass door. Bursting through it, Hyukjin finally exhaled as the system confirmed the additional safe zone of Tower D was active. The floor boss couldn't cross that line now. The troll slammed against the barrier, roaring in rage, but it couldn't pass through. For now, Hyukjin was safe. Still, he couldn't ignore the dread crawling up his spine. There were monsters out there that could breach even safe zones. The troll just wasn't one of them. Even in his berserker mode, Hyukjin tried shaking Sunhwa awake and noticed her arm was wrecked. She'd taken that troll's hit head-on just to block it. Without wasting a second, he poured a potion down her throat, hoping it'd restore her strength. He had no clue when she'd learned that kind of defensive skill, but damn, it was a lifesaver. If that strike had landed on him full force, his skull would have been mashed into soup. Meanwhile, that raging troll was still pounding on the safe zone door, roaring like a beast from hell. It ticked Hyukjin off so bad he just shouted it to die already. The bastard was in berserker mode anyway, shouldn't have long left. And right on cue, the troll's body burst apart like a damn bomb, painting the whole area red with blood. The system chimed in, declaring that the magic troll had been hunted by the level 20 player inside the zone. Just then Senya appeared, saying the dungeon's conquest reward would go straight to Hyukjin. With the boss gone, the tutorial territory would collapse, and her quest was marked complete. Then came another update. Difficulty for the next stage would depend on survivor count 5087 in total, making it low. Hyukjin froze for a second. That number was identical to what he remembered from before. Even with him and Sunhwa surviving this round, the total hadn't changed, which made no damn sense. Then came the juicy part, the tutorial completion rewards. Everyone got their system package, player qualification, 1,000 coins, and a beginner's defense kit. Individual rewards were to be distributed by each administrator. Since the whole tutorial was cleared, the level cap was gone too. The tutorial finisher title would go to the survivor on Tower D's second floor, Suyu Hyun, whose name would be carved into the Hall of Fame. Hyukjin knew that guy had been the sole survivor there last time too, but that wasn't what mattered now. He turned to Senya and brought up the trade she mentioned earlier. He is ready to negotiate. He didn't care about fame or bragging rights. He just wanted to save Sunhwa's life. So he asked her to upgrade his item shop rank immediately. Senya hesitated, saying it'd naturally level up after the tutorial, and that he could just wait or buy potions instead. But Hyukjin wasn't built for patience, he wanted it done now. Contracts between players and intermediate administrators were a thing, as long as the rules were followed. Through them, guardians could spectate the chosen player, and the more chaos or entertainment they brought, the more benefits the administrator got. Hyukjin knew how twisted that system was, but he also knew he was worth a lot right now, especially after those potions and wins. Still, his only focus was Sunhwa. She had risked her life to save him. The least he could do was return the favor. He owed her everything. So he kept praying she'd wake up after all the potions he'd fed her. Finally, her eyes flicked open, and she looked shocked that she was still alive. Hyukjin confirmed it. It felt like a damn miracle. She glanced at the mountain of empty potion bottles beside her and reminded him how he once said he'd ditch her if she ever slowed him down. He didn't respond this time. After what she'd done, Abandoning her would have been the dumbest move ever. She broke into tears, realizing she hadn't been left behind. Hyukjin snapped back to business, asking Senia to calculate his individual rewards. She agreed, but he couldn't resist teasing her again about that shop rank upgrade. It clearly annoyed her. He thought she was acting like a total rookie, not even preparing the proper contract paperwork to make the deal official. He pointed out that it wasn't his fault she was careless, then told her to just read out the damn rewards already. Senia finally displayed his data on the system screen, and Hyukjin couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The 7-day tutorial was officially over, and survivors were getting personalized rewards based on performance. His results were nothing short of insane stuff no ordinary player could ever pull off without knowing the future. Because of his past knowledge, the timeline had shifted, so it made sense that his rewards were also different. He earned 3 additional ability points, and noticed his title had changed again. Senia explained that his Excellent Hunter title had evolved into Excellent Player, and asked if he wanted to check its effects. He nodded but decided to review it himself, which clearly irritated her. The system revealed that Excellent Player was a rare title obtainable only during the tutorial, given to those who beat the boss and cleared every objective. Its perks were wild: 20% more attack power, 20% faster movement speed, a new skill called Excellent Attack, a 10% EXP bonus, and a small chance for attacks to bypass enemy defenses. Hyukjin was shocked. He thought Excellent Hunter was already busted, but this was straight up overpowered. Still, it made sense. Anyone who'd killed the lycanthrope boss had to be level 10 or higher, so the title upgrade checked out. Hidden rewards like this weren't supposed to exist, but apparently, they did. Then came the biggest twist: his abilities Sixth Sense and Death Sentence had transcended, hitting fusion level. The tutorial bonus combined with his innate ability had created the Excellent Player title, while the beta opening bonus fused into Calm Observer's Eye. He remembered how rare those fusions were. Barely any records existed, and most players who achieved them didn't even understand how. They were special enhancements only players at high hidden ranks could unlock. Now, Hyukjin had to make a call. His Sixth Sense could fuse with either Calm Observer's Eye or Excellent Player. After thinking it through, he chose to merge the 2 received abilities. At first, nothing happened. But then, agony ripped through his body. It felt like his heart was about to burst out of his chest. Blood spilled from his mouth as the system casually mentioned that the fusion came with an intense pain side effect, and failure meant death. Hyukjin cursed the damn system for not mentioning that earlier, but it was too late now. He was shaking, bleeding, barely hanging on while Sunhwa panicked beside him, screaming for him not to die. And just when it felt like he couldn't take it anymore, the system announced that the fusion had succeeded. A new innate skill, Eye of Perception, was created. But Hyukjin didn't even get to celebrate. His vision blurred, his strength vanished, and with blood dripping from his lips, he finally collapsed into unconsciousness. Hyukjin jolted awake in a completely different place, disoriented and unsure if he was even alive. His head was spinning, and he swore he'd heard some kind of alarm before everything went blank. Turning to the side, he froze. There was a woman beside him, Kim Ah-hyung, his sister. What really shook him wasn't just seeing her, it was the system window analyzing her emotions right in front of his eyes. It said she was happy and relieved, but also worried. Still, she looked exactly the same as she did 7 years ago, which freaked him out even more. Ah-hyung snapped that he'd gone out to study and vanished for a whole damn week, demanding if he even cared how much she and their mom had worried. Before he could reply, she stormed out, muttering that as long as he wasn't dead, it was fine. Typical Ah-hyung, tough as nails, same as ever, even after a decade. But even after she left, Hyukjin could still hear her voice outside. His innate ability had kicked back in the moment he'd lost consciousness, sharpening his senses. He heard her mumbling under her breath, saying he should have just died instead of making her worry sick for so long. That hit him hard. He apologized silently, because he'd never wanted to be the reason she cried. Memories came rushing back how they'd argued before, when he'd begged her not to work at that crappy factory just to help their mom, insisting he could handle it himself. They were supposed to fight through life together as a real family. And now, in this second chance, he wanted to make that right. When his mother showed up alive and well, Hyukjin felt something heavy in his chest lift. Then came Sunhwa, bursting into the hospital room the second she heard he'd woken up. She threw herself onto him, crying and laughing at once, overjoyed that he'd survived. That's when it hit him for real. He'd gone back to the past. After 7 brutal days in that nightmare tutorial, where survival odds were basically zero, he had actually made it out alive. Now, armed with skills and instincts forged through hell, he was ready. The next time portals appeared in this world, he wouldn't be caught off guard. He'd change everything. A month passed since the great disaster in Jongno, but the world was still reeling. News reports kept replaying the tragedy. Out of 150,000 people, only 5,000 had survived. The tutorial had ended, but the trauma was still fresh. Families shattered, cities scarred, and anchors spoke with forced sympathy while showing endless footage of the chaos. For one broadcast, they brought in a special guest, Soo Yoo-hyun, the guy being hailed as the tutorial finisher. The reporter praised him for saving lives, for fighting off goblins and wolves with his bare hands, calling him the hero who led people to safety. He'd even earned a famous title after his feats, and when asked about it, Yoo-hyun just smiled faintly and said he got lucky. He claimed there were others who were the real heroes, earning praise for his humility. But deep down, Yoo-hyun knew it wasn't humility, it was the truth. Because there had been Hyukjin and Sunhwa, and Hyukjin especially was on another level entirely. The man had faced the floor boss alone and lived. Without him, Yoo-hyun would have been long dead. He hadn't checked yet, but he was sure of one thing: Hyukjin had to still be alive. He damn well hoped so, because one day, he planned to return that favor. At the entrance of the new portal, Hyukjin stood beside Sunhwa, both facing the glowing gate that marked the start of Seoul Station's dungeon. He already knew it would open on June 7th, right at this spot, and as expected, chaos broke out. Civilians were screaming, sprinting in every direction, desperate to survive, because they knew monsters were about to flood out. While everyone else ran for their lives, Sunhwa looked up at him and asked if they should go in. The system's voice echoed, saying only players could enter and at least 7 were recommended. Hyukjin didn't even blink before agreeing they were going in no matter what. The moment they stepped through, the system confirmed entry into the Seoul Station dungeon and opened channel 19207 for the Guardians to watch. Hyukjin couldn't help but think about how, in the future, once humanity figured out dungeon clears, life would get a hell of a lot easier. Back then, even D-rank dungeons became nothing more than glorified tutorials. He asked if Sunhwa remembered what he told her earlier, and when she nodded, he confirmed they'd push forward. Senia appeared again, warning that the dungeon required a 7-player team and trying to remind him of the manual's safety rules. She insisted it was suicidal to enter with just 2 people, and begged him to retreat until he had a proper squad. But Hyukjin didn't give a damn. He simply walked out of the safe zone, ready to move deeper in, just like he'd promised. He was going to show her how a real player conquered this twisted world. Meanwhile, far away in Yoido, the financial district, Yoo-hyun was getting chewed out for ditching his position without warning. He'd become stupidly famous after the tutorials, interviews, TV appearances, the whole deal, but now he was walking away from it all. He apologized, saying he was choosing a new path. The company's owner grumbled, claiming their business wasn't shady like the others, but his irritation was obvious as he told Yoo-hyun to just leave. Stepping outside, Yoo-hyun reflected on how insane the world had become since that day a month ago. Even after leaving the tutorial zone, monsters like slimes still popped up in the streets. Players who managed to grab loot early became valuable assets, trading items for survival. Investing in players had become the new economy, the fastest way to adapt to this broken world. While deep in thought, he overheard a couple arguing about running away because they'd heard of a new dungeon opening at Seoul Station, the same kind they'd seen in Jongno. Suddenly, another intermediate administrator, Neptune, appeared before him, announcing that the Seoul Station dungeon had finally opened, the first since the tutorial. Neptune suggested Yoo-hyun should enter as the tutorial finisher himself, explaining that 7 players were recommended for a full team. He advised Yoo-hyun to recruit people first, but stopped mid-sentence when realizing 2 people had already entered the dungeon. After a short pause, he shrugged it off, telling Yoo-hyun to still form his own team when possible. Then the system laid out the cold truth. Dungeons were living entities that self-destructed if left uncleared. When that happened, breaches opened and monsters escaped into the world, and only players could enter and close them before the timer hit 0. Back inside the dungeon, Sunhwa tried to talk about how eerie it felt, but Hyukjin immediately told her to watch her step. The Seoul Station dungeon wasn't some fancy labyrinth. It was a pitch-black, damp cave, where one wrong move could send them sliding into hell. He activated his perception eye, scanning the area. So far nothing looked too dangerous, but that didn't mean they could relax. In their current state, even a simple mistake could screw them up. Hyukjin checked Sunhwa's stats, and nearly whistled in surprise she'd hit level 15 at ridiculous speed. There hadn't even been that many monsters since the portal opened, yet she'd grinded her way up non-stop. A 14-year-old girl already pushing level 15, Hyukjin couldn't help but feel impressed. Soon, they reached a massive divide in the path ahead, the infamous 7 fort paths. 7 entrances leading to 7 entirely different routes, each with its own unique item waiting at the end. That was exactly why this dungeon demanded 7 players. Each person was supposed to take one route, and anyone under level 10 was basically signing their death certificate. With only 2 of them here, it was damn near suicide. And Hyukjin was sure Senia was losing her mind watching them right now, but he didn't care. Without hesitation, he told Sunhwa he'd scout ahead and be back soon, asking her to wait. She simply nodded, trusting his words completely. As he stepped toward one of the 7 cursed paths alone, Hyukjin walked down one of the dungeon's eerie paths. passing the first fork that instantly triggered recognition from the system. The dungeon responded to his presence, activating the Nepal's path within Seoul Station. But fear? Nah, that wasn't in his vocabulary. He kept moving deeper, eyes sharp, curiosity burning to see what this damn place still had hidden. To clear this dungeon, every single path had to be conquered, each one handing out a different reward. The real pain was that collecting all 7 rewards was the only way to beat it. The system was ruthless. Each path automatically scaled its difficulty to match a full 7-player team. Entering the Nepal's path with just 2 people? Straight up suicide. That path was infamous for being the hardest route, known for wrecking unprepared players. Still, countless strategies had been recorded over time, including secret methods that eventually leaked to the public. People even tracked those crazy few who cleared dungeons with fewer members than intended. Then came a new system alert. The Seoul Station dungeon had activated its second charm, the Dugo path. With each opened path, the difficulty would shift, lowering as more were unlocked. What was originally programmed for 7 players would now bend to the will of 1. Another notification hit soon after, revealing the Delancia path's activation. Slowly, every route in the dungeon began to open, each adjusting its level to match a single-player challenge. Once all 7 were unlocked, Hyukjin turned back to where Sunhwa was waiting. The rules never said they had to clear all paths at once, and that loophole was exactly what they'd exploit. With that thought, Hyukjin decided it was showtime. He and Sunhwa stepped into the first path of the Nepal's passage, ready to grind through the madness. Outside the dungeon, chaos was breaking loose. Civilians panicked as the police cordoned off the Seoul Station area, yelling for everyone to stay back and evacuate. Nobody knew what the hell was happening, but the fear was contagious. Yu Hyun, watching from the crowd, immediately sensed that a dungeon portal had opened inside the station. Then, a strange voice echoed through the confusion, dripping with irritation. Someone complained that the cops were messing with his livelihood, blocking him from what was his. Heads turned. The man floating in the air looked nothing like a normal human. The cops shouted for him to identify himself, guns raised, but Yu Hyun froze. He recognized that face. It was Chris, the intermediate administrator from the tutorial zone. And if an admin was here, that meant a player nearby had triggered something big. The cops barked another warning, threatening to open fire. But Chris didn't even flinch. Annoyed, he grabbed one officer by the neck, asking if he had any clue what he was doing. The others panicked, shouting for him to drop the man and opened fire. But the bullets didn't even touch him. His barrier deflected everything, then hurled them right back. Within seconds, flames erupted and chaos consumed the area. Chris looked around in disgust, calling them noisy insects before declaring that the way to Seoul Station dungeon was now cleared. He smirked, saying it was the perfect time for players to step in. Apparently, some famous names were around, and he made sure to call one out: Yu Hyun. As Chris spoke, another figure emerged beside him, greeting Yu Hyun like an old buddy. It was Seo Juhwan, a player Yu Hyun hadn't seen since the tutorial a month ago. Juhwan chuckled, calling it wild to meet the great finisher of the tutorial here of all places. Yu Hyun greeted him back, cautious but unsurprised. He'd expected Juhwan to have survived. Memories hit hard. During the goblin attack, Juhwan was a blood-soaked maniac, stacking corpses while everyone else ran for their lives. That kind of madness stuck with you, and even if it freaked Yu Hyun out, he couldn't deny the guy had serious skill. Juhwan asked if Yu Hyun was also aiming to clear the Seoul Station dungeon, though it was obvious he was. This world had changed for good, and dungeons like these weren't going anywhere. Juhwan grinned, saying that, as long as they existed, players could chase whatever crazy dreams they wanted. It was the ultimate chance to grab power, fame, or whatever the hell they desired. When Yu Hyun didn't respond, Juhwan mentioned that the administrators said it needed 7 players to clear. Since they only had 6, he threw out the offer to join them, and together they'd crush it. Back in the first path of Nepal's, Hyukjin and Sunhwa ran into a herd of black yaks, ready to rip into the new monsters. The sight of the massive herd made Hyukjin smirk, knowing they had a long grind ahead, so he pushed them deeper into the dungeon without hesitation. As the yaks charged, he swung his sword with precision, killing them one by one, chaining multiple kills and racking up experience points and coin drops like it was nothing. After cutting through the first 30, Hyukjin noticed Sunhwa had finished her own fight, and she asked about the skill he used earlier, the one that flung all the yaks aside effortlessly. She wanted to know if anyone could learn it, and Hyukjin subtly glanced at the administrator, Senior, acknowledging her curiosity, then whispered that with enough practice, she might pull it off herself someday. The nameless guardian stayed silent while the Lady of Scales looked concerned, and the whispering demon clearly disapproved of his choice to stay vague. Sunhwa asked if just grinding to get stronger would help, and Hyukjin explained that practicing to avoid regrets was key. If she gave her absolute best at the right moment, she could make it happen, just like he had in his past life. Sunhwa didn't fully get it, but his conviction made her trust his words. Suddenly, something floated near them, a ring glimmering in the air, and Hyukjin immediately recognized it, the item he had been waiting for in the dungeon. With that, they cleared Nepala's path and approached the next fork. Sunhwa hesitated, thinking they had to kill every monster like they did in the tutorial, but Hyukjin explained that weaker monsters weren't worth the grind, and leaving was smarter since they weren't alone in the dungeon. Meanwhile, Juwon's group stepped through the portal into the dungeon, noticing it felt more like a cave system than a tower dungeon. Juwon reminisced about the tutorial dungeon, but Yoo-hyun grimly reminded them of the over 10 people who died there, including himself failing to beat the second-floor boss, turning it into a disaster. Juwon just smiled and urged them to keep moving. Finishing faster meant safer returns for everyone. As they went deeper, a player noticed multiple forks, one glowing brightly, leaving them unsure of which to pick, and Juwon decided they should start with the closest, the Nepala's path. Hyukjin and Sunhwa moved through another dungeon path and instantly snagged the second reward, grabbing Ryugo's necklace faster than the Nepala's ring. The protagonist realized Sunhwa was starting to piece together the real purpose of each key item, understanding collecting them mattered more than slaughtering monsters. Out of nowhere, Sunhwa apologized, leaving him slightly confused, and explained she'd been slow because she kept watching him hunt but always ended up exhausted. While she struggled with a single yak horn, he was slicing down multiple monsters at insane speed, proving he could handle it alone. She started worrying she was becoming a burden, but Hyukjin denied it and reminded her he never did anything useless, and his guidance wasn't out of kindness. With that settled, they moved to the third path, where level 14 purple yaks roamed, far more aggressive than the black ones, and one charged at Sunhwa immediately. Its horn struck her head so fast she couldn't even see it, and only later realized it was a projectile attack from the yaks, which Hyukjin explained could hit from range. Confident she wasn't hurt, he let Sunhwa take the lead, calling her an excellent tank, leaving her puzzled by the new role she'd been handed. Waves of horn attacks rained down on her, and Hyukjin praised her ability to endure far more than he'd expected, though she complained it didn't feel safe. He reminded her the yaks couldn't actually injure her, telling her to use her taunt skill, which she activated, making the yaks attack even harder and fire more horns at her. Suddenly, the assault stopped, and Sunhwa realized all the yaks collapsed simultaneously, while the experience automatically accumulated, and Hyukjin explained, purple yaks always fell after using both horns. Finally, they located their goal on the third path, Delancia's bracelet, leaving only 4 more key items to complete the dungeon. Sunhwa suggested hunting the remaining monsters for more experience, but Hyukjin insisted they leave some for other players to prevent congestion and maintain dungeon balance. Outside, other players struggled to handle even one yak, constantly dodging attacks while Yoo-hyun's powerful punches decimated enemies, impressing everyone and proving why he was the tutorial's famous finisher. Juwon observed carefully, noting the team's efficiency was still mediocre, and hunting these monsters gave poor rewards, with only horns collected and little experience gained. He commented it was strange, nothing awaited them at the end of the path, and suggested continuing to explore other routes to avoid boredom. They decided to try Ryugo's second path, filled with black yaks just like before, noticing fallen bodies and broken horns scattered around. Yoo-hyun wondered what Juwon was thinking, and Juwon speculated that the missing rewards could mean someone had already passed through the dungeon or that it was unusually different from normal runs. Considering their team only accessed the dungeon thanks to Chris bypassing police barriers, Juwon doubted any other player could clear it as fast as himself or Yoo-hyun. Then he remembered Hyukjin, wondering if he might already be inside the dungeon, and instructed the others to finish clearing the yak path before trying a different route, hoping they'd find whatever they were missing. On the sixth path, called Victoria's Path, Hyukjin and Sunhwa had just wiped out a few more black yaks after a decent grind, stacking up XP and snagging another rare drop. The item turned out to be Victoria's Shield, the second-to-last reward which, at first glance, seemed perfect for a tanker, but when Hyukjin checked it, the thing had trash durability, barely usable as an actual shield. By now, they had Athenia's necklace from the fourth path, Zenith's club from the fifth, and this weak-ass shield from the sixth, leaving only the heat item from the seventh path to wrap things up. Sunhwa figured that meant they were almost done, and Hyukjin agreed since clearing that last one would finally end the dungeon run. As they stepped out of the sixth path, Sunhwa sensed something ahead, and that's when another group showed up, Juwon's squad. They spotted the duo instantly. Hyukjin had expected this meeting eventually, but the fact that it took them this long just screamed rookie energy. Among them was Juwon, who smirked like he had been waiting for this moment. The same guy Hyukjin remembered from the future, the crazy bastard from the Demon King's army, also called Nightmare. That bunch was infamous for being straight-up psychos who fought heroes and committed unspeakable crap for fun, and Ju-won, in particular, was known for his bloody hobbies. Hyukjin knew he'd face one of them someday, just didn't think it'd happen this today. Ju-won mentioned they'd passed through areas cleared of monsters, and guessed it was Hyukjin's doing, which he confirmed. He looked way younger than Hyukjin remembered, but still gave off that same lunatic vibe. After some casual talk, Ju-won pointed out how fast they were progressing, saying a dungeon like this was meant for 7 players, hinting they might need more hands. Hyukjin didn't bite, and coolly said they'd see for themselves whether 2 were enough, making it clear he saw through Ju-won's intentions. The group didn't like his tone, but Ju-won jumped in before things heated up, suggesting they join forces. He explained that their team had solid hunting experience, and teaming up would make clearing faster and safer for both sides. Ju-won added that they could even split the rewards evenly so no one got salty about loot. After a bit of thought, Hyukjin agreed to the alliance, but only on one condition: the 7th key from Lakitula's path would belong to him. The squad gathered up and stormed into Lakitula's path, diving straight into another yak massacre, stacking XP like crazy as the monsters kept spawning ahead. The others yelled about more yaks up front, and everyone moved together, which made Sunhwa realize how much faster everything went with a full team. Still, she couldn't shake off this weird gut feeling. Hyukjin's movements looked off slower, less precise, almost like he was running out of fuel. Earlier, he'd been soloing everything effortlessly, but now he looked tired as hell, which made her wonder what was going on. Meanwhile, Ju-won kept analyzing Hyukjin, curious about what kind of trick he'd been using to clear the previous paths so fast. Seeing him now, Ju-won started thinking maybe the guy wasn't that special after all, just a regular player who'd gotten lucky a few times. Eventually, they snagged the Lakitula earrings, the final key item Hyukjin needed, and Ju-won picked them up, unimpressed. To him, they looked like some cheap, useless junk, with low durability and no special stats. He couldn't understand why Hyukjin wanted them so badly. Hyukjin walked over and asked if they'd found the item, and Ju-won handed it over, mocking its plain look and asking why it mattered. Calm as ever, Hyukjin said those items were necessary to clear the dungeon, but only if collected in the right order, and since he had all 7 keys now, they were ready to finish this thing. To keep his word, he paid Ju-won 500 coins as promised, which stunned the guy since earning that much meant killing at least 40 yaks. Ju-won laughed, realizing it would be way too easy to rob him later, but still played nice, saying he'd help them until they got out. Hyukjin accepted that offer, though he hinted there was still a lot left before the main quest was done. Ju-won rallied his team to follow Hyukjin deeper in, which made Sunhwa uneasy. She worried about his fatigue and asked if he was really okay, but he brushed it off like it was nothing. She hoped maybe she was just overthinking it. Truth was, Ju-won was a dangerous guy, level 16, intimidating, and carrying that twisted aura only Hyukjin could see clearly thanks to his eye of perception. He could literally sense the darkness in that guy's head, the same kind of sick energy tied to his blood-soaked future. Hyukjin wondered when Ju-won's real self would finally snap through that fake, friendly mask he wore. As they went deeper, they reached the end Menorah Square, where a massive statue suddenly opened its eyes. Hyukjin knew this was coming. Clearing all 7 paths always triggered Menorah's Square. Back in his timeline, this place was known as the end of the line for low-ranked players, because no one ever made it past this point. Sunhwa freaked out seeing the statue move, while Hyukjin noted how simple the area looked, despite its final destination name. Then the statue spoke, demanding to know who dared disturb its deep slumber. Yu-hyun was shocked as the thing warned unqualified players to leave or face punishment. But Hyukjin wasn't about to back off after all that effort. He declared himself ready to prove his worth. The statue glowed brightly, and a system screen popped up, telling him to take the test of qualification, a deadly one, where even a single mistake could destroy the challenger completely. The test recreated the same dungeon paths he had cleared. Hyukjin opened his inventory and equipped each of the 7 key items in the right order, starting with Napala's ring, followed by Dugo's necklace, Delanche's bracelet, and so on until all the slots on the Menorah statue were filled. Each piece latched onto the statue, decorating it like a divine relic display. When it was done, Menorah acknowledged him as worthy, and asked him to answer her final question, what her name was. Hyukjin remembered the hidden quest lore from his timeline, the one where Menorah or Mandra meant stables. The statue was the guardian of those stables, protecting the hidden treasure of her long-lost master. To unlock that treasure, the player had to claim to be her master, not themselves. So Hyukjin did exactly that, calling himself Rancher, the one who gave Menorah new life. The others were confused as hell, but the statue bowed, recognizing her creator. The system confirmed he'd found the correct answer and completed the secret quest. Hyukjin felt a wave of relief as notifications flooded the screen. The unnamed observer sighed. The Lady of Scales was stunned, and the whispering demon chuckled, clearly entertained by what just happened. Everyone around stared in awe at Hyukjin's success, while Sunhwa's nerves finally eased, seeing it all end well. The others were confused, asking what he'd done and what the system meant by calling him her master. But at least they were safe. Even Yuhyun admitted to himself that Hyukjin wasn't some ordinary player after all. Then, Manhwa spoke again, saying her master had left behind items for him to choose from a set of powerful relics. Manhwa's gloves, Manhwa's fine sword, and Manhwa's breastplate, all top-tier rewards that could give massive advantages early in the game. Hyukjin thought carefully, knowing what lay ahead, and had a clear pick in mind. Before he could choose, Juwon stepped up, pretending to be friendly, congratulating him on his win and commenting on how interesting those rewards must be. He admitted he couldn't see what options Hyukjin had, and Hyukjin casually told him it'd only take a minute to sort it out. Juwon smirked, saying that was fine, they'd just leave once he was done. But Hyukjin wasn't fooled. Using his eye of perception again, he caught Juwon staring at Sunhwa like a predator, eyeing prey, disgust and calculation written all over his face. The guy clearly saw her as an easy target, a hostage even, and thought Hyukjin didn't notice. Big mistake. Hyukjin calmly announced that he'd made his choice and selected Manhwa's gloves. The statue handed them over a special item that boosted defense by 2, added 3 points to poison resistance, and granted immunity against infections. Manhwa wished him well on his journey, and the system finally declared the quest in Manhwa's square complete. The next stage popped up as something called the Forked Path, and Sunhwa instantly got curious seeing the 2 split routes ahead. The quest description said, Seoul Station Dungeon still had one last trial left, and if they failed here, the whole place would collapse. At least one player had to enter each passage. Hyukjin agreed that they still had to clear the final paths, which basically meant the dungeon run was nearing its end. Sunhwa asked if they'd finally get to go home afterward, but Hyukjin reminded her it wasn't over yet, and told her to stay sharp and stick close to him. She promised she would, though before the moment could settle, Juwon butted in, sounding all offended, saying this was supposed to be teamwork, not everyone blindly following Hyukjin's lead. He complained that it felt one-sided and suggested splitting into 2 groups to handle the paths more efficiently. Hyukjin didn't argue if that's how Juwon wanted it, then he and Sunhwa could handle one side alone. Juwon chuckled at his confidence, asking how he could be so sure that just the 2 of them were enough. Confidence was fine, he said, but arrogance could kill. Hyukjin didn't deny it, though he could tell Juwon was still salty, probably remembering that humiliating loss from before. When Hyukjin asked how they'd split the teams, Juwon suggested dividing based on balance, 3 players on one side and 4 on the other, and he volunteered himself as the leader of the 3-person team. Naturally, he even proposed putting Sunhwa in the other group as their tanker, pretending to sound fair. Though the look on Sunhwa's face said she hated the idea, Hyukjin shut it down instantly, saying he didn't like that setup at all, and pulled Sunhwa closer. That made Juwon frown and demand an explanation, but Hyukjin simply stated that he didn't trust their team's capability and wasn't leaving her side. Calling Sunhwa like a younger sister, he'd protect until the end. Juwon realized the 2 of them were inseparable and smirked, hinting that maybe some guardian had blessed them with special info or benefits, which explained Hyukjin's ridiculous confidence. Senya, listening from above, was startled when Hyukjin casually agreed to it even though it wasn't true. He couldn't exactly tell anyone that his knowledge came from the future. To him, it didn't matter what they believed. The truth was his secret to keep. The system even popped up, showing that the Guardians were curious about his source of information, and Hyukjin mentally cursed those shameless cosmic bastards, thinking they should try helping for once instead of gossiping. Juwon seemed satisfied with that excuse and said he'd stop pushing to take Sunhwa with them, but insisted Yuhyun should join his side to balance things out. Hyukjin had no objection to that, and Yuhyun agreed too, planning to meet again once both paths were cleared. Juwon walked away with that fake smile of his, wishing them luck, though his tone screamed something darker. The system then announced the start of the quest, telling them to reach the end of the path, where all the dungeon-clearing clues awaited. Since there were fewer than 5 players, a temporary safe zone was generated. As they began walking, Sunhwa wondered aloud if they should just head straight to the end, but before Hyukjin could reply, Yuhyun spoke up. He mentioned remembering someone from the 2nd floor of the tower dungeon during the magic troll fight. Someone who hadn't interacted much but had been with that girl all along, and now he was sure that person was Hyukjin. Hyukjin was a bit caught off guard that he remembered and admitted it was him, wondering why he brought that up now. Yuhyun bowed, thanking him for saving his life back then, which threw both Hyukjin and Sunhwa off completely. To Yuhyun, Hyukjin was a hero. If he hadn't driven off that troll, Yuhyun would have been dead. Hyukjin thought that was ridiculous. He'd only been running for his life that day, but it seemed like the story had been twisted into a legend. Yuhyun said he'd never forget that favor and wanted to repay him somehow, which made Hyukjin internally laugh at how straightforward the guy was. The system even confirmed that Yoo-hyun's gratitude was genuine. Hyukjin thought it was surreal hearing such praise from someone who'd later be known as the Fist King, and now that same powerhouse was offering him a personal favor. It just didn't feel real. Hyukjin told him he'd keep it in mind, and Yoo-hyun happily asked if he could start calling him Big Bro, which totally weirded Hyukjin out since they were the same age. Still, Yoo-hyun didn't care about that, saying Hyukjin was his savior and deserved the title. Hyukjin gave in, figuring it wasn't worth arguing, and Yoo-hyun asked him to talk casually with him from now on. That simple exchange lightened the mood, and Sunhwa smiled, relieved to see the two finally connecting like real allies. As they moved deeper into the dungeon, Hyukjin finally spotted the crystal that could clear the Soul Station dungeon, and just as he expected, it was still untouched and shining like proof of progress, so he told his team to chill and rest up since they'd need all that energy for what came next, assuring Yoo-hyun that it was fine because this area was marked as a temporary safe zone, which meant they could take a breather before things got messy again, and the best way to win inside dungeons was by saving stamina for the real fight instead of burning it early. Yoo-hyun still frowned about Hyukjin talking too formally, pushing him to loosen up while Hyukjin wondered how this guy always managed to get so hyped over random stuff. Sunhwa then got curious about what she should call Yoo-hyun if she was like Hyukjin's little sister, deciding she'd just stick with her usual way, while Hyukjin found it kind of funny how she addressed them with that oppa tone like people in Korea did for older brothers. But she made Yoo-hyun freak out a little when she called him Mr., making him feel like some middle-aged boomer uncle, and Hyukjin just sighed, thinking kids from this generation were really built different. Yoo-hyun then asked if the crystal was really that exhausting to handle, and Hyukjin explained that dealing with it was tied to clearing the whole dungeon, because finishing the final stage could trigger traps or hidden challenges, but before that, they had another problem waiting to blow up. On the other side, Juwon's squad was making their move, heading toward Hyukjin, and the system suddenly dropped a warning saying that since more than 5 players had entered, the temporary safe zone was gone, throwing everyone into alert mode as Hyukjin told them to get up because shit was about to go down. Juwon's crew showed up, acting smug, mocking how slow Hyukjin's team was despite all that confidence. But Hyukjin coolly said they'd just been waiting for him, already knowing this setup was coming from the start. Juwon scoffed, calling him a know-it-all trash, and lunged in swinging his sword, throwing a jab that he should have been more humble since he'd die by his own hands anyway, but Hyukjin fired it right back, asking if he was even capable of killing him, and that's when the real clash began, blades flashing, the two moving fast as hell through the narrow space. Juwon mocked that Hyukjin's confidence seemed to vanish since he was only dodging instead of attacking back, taunting that it was pathetic for someone who bragged so much, while Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa got tense seeing Hyukjin hurt his hand trying to defend himself. The enemies split off, going after Yoo-hyun and Sunhwa, and one of them missed a hit and laughed, calling Yoo-hyun overrated, while the others joked that fighting someone as weak and cowardly as him would take less than 5 minutes since they had the numbers. They laughed about how they'd kill Sunhwa if Yoo-hyun slipped up, warning him that if he wanted to live, he'd just have to hand her over. But Yoo-hyun's glare said everything. Juwon, meanwhile, said it was getting boring with Hyukjin only defending, wondering if he had anything cooler to show since he looked like a total rookie when fighting players instead of monsters. The whispering demon watching them seemed to enjoy every insult thrown at Hyukjin, but the protagonist just smirked inside, realizing Juwon wasn't even using shadow ambush, meaning the guy wasn't half as skilled as he pretended to be. That pissed Juwon off, telling him to keep that arrogant face so he wouldn't feel bad killing him. And Hyukjin finally asked one last time if he'd really kill them for not handing over Sunhwa, but when Juwon said he'd take her either way, Hyukjin charged forward, pressing something onto his chest that made him cough blood, warning that what happened next was all on him. The story then cut back to an hour earlier when Juwon had been plotting outside with his team, ignoring someone who said they should just clear the dungeon since the intermediate administrator had blocked the entrance. But Juwon said screw that, deciding he'd just snap Hyukjin's neck and take what he wanted. The others realized he wanted to ambush them mid-run, reasoning that Hyukjin's team would be tired, making them easy prey, though one guy hesitated saying Hyukjin looked skilled, but Juwon brushed it off, claiming his stats weren't that different, and that Yoo-hyun was the only real threat. His plan was simple, let his crew gang up on Yoo-hyun while he personally tore Hyukjin apart. Back in the present, things flipped fast. Hyukjin's move suddenly leveled up like crazy, his reactions sharper, his strength heavier, making Juwon panic as if the guy's entire stat chart had skyrocketed. Yoo-hyun too was holding his own, knocking players down one by one, while Sunhwa tanked with her platinum shield, blocking a brutal strike that left the enemies stunned, giving Yoo-hyun the opening to land a power punch straight into a player's chest, sending the dude flying into a dungeon wall. Seeing that, the rest panicked and tried to back up Juwon, shooting arrows toward Hyukjin, but the guy dodged them effortlessly, even avoiding one from his blind spot like he had eyes in the back of his head, leaving everyone shook. Hyukjin noticed the long-range support was more annoying than Ju-won himself, but Yoo-hyun was wrecking them anyway, smashing through anyone who tried to corner him. As chaos spread, Hyukjin stayed focused, and suddenly, he splashed something from his thermos onto Ju-won, a strange liquid that made the guy confused before realizing it wasn't water but something sticky and sweet. Hyukjin told him to look around as the walls started crawling with creatures, and within seconds, massive honeybees stormed out, swarming straight for Ju-won's team. Everyone froze as the bees tore through them with grotesque stings, while Hyukjin just stood calm, knowing exactly how this event worked. He'd triggered the honeybee swarm on purpose since bees reacted to sweetness, and the honey water was basically bait. He also knew that in this dungeon quest, they showed up in huge numbers, not strong individually but deadly together, especially if there wasn't a fire mage to burn them off. He yelled for his teammates to duck, knowing the bees lost their target once you got low enough, while Ju-won's gang screamed in pain as the swarm stung them endlessly until everything went silent. When it was over, Hyukjin and his crew stood up, watching the aftermath, and he felt no pity, thinking that people who hunted others deserved death as their punishment. The system announced that this counted as the first player kill since the tutorial, and Hyukjin had awakened a new innate ability called an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a skill that let him return the damage or action he'd received as revenge, giving him a major stat boost that could scale even higher the longer it stayed active. He found it strange since he'd never awakened anything like that this early before, remembering that in his past timeline this ability had remained dormant. It was an ability known for activating only against those who attacked first, perfect for one-on-one fights, and almost everyone knew about it in his previous world. Still, it felt weird that it had appeared now. Yoo-hyun then stepped up saying it wasn't Hyukjin's fault, and he shouldn't feel guilty since anyone would have done the same in a life-or-death situation. And Sunhwa agreed, saying those guys were bad players anyway. Hyukjin understood they were just worried about him blaming himself, but he didn't. He believed that leaving killers alive would have only gotten them killed later, and if that meant becoming a murderer to protect his team, then so be it. The system notified that the Lady of Scales acknowledged his resolve, admiring his decision and even considering rewarding him for it. Hyukjin noticed the way his teammates looked at him had changed, filled with more respect and awe, but deep down, he didn't feel anything for the ones who died. It just hit him how much he'd changed from who he used to be. Returning to the crystal, Hyukjin figured clearing this dungeon was just a matter of time since only 2 more crystals needed to be destroyed. But before they could move ahead, the damn crystal suddenly began darkening as if rejecting their presence. The system declared that the Soul Station crystal wasn't welcoming intruders, and the moment his perception eye flared up, he sensed danger closing in. The players got startled, but Hyukjin calmly told them to move back while assuring everything would be fine and that he'd handle it. Opening his inventory, he pulled out the honeybee stingers he had saved earlier as part of a plan against the poisonous gas leaking out. He'd already equipped Minora's gloves, knowing they could resist poison to some degree, even though their defense wasn't strong enough to fully block it. The system recognized the gloves trying to fight off the venom, but the toxin spread fast, filling the area with thick smoke until visibility dropped to 0. Hyukjin realized he didn't have much time left before the poison overwhelmed him, but holding his breath, he pushed through the suffocating haze and managed to touch the crystal, just as the system announced that the poison was being neutralized. The crystal then dissolved completely, the air cleared, and everyone finally got to breathe again. Gasping and exhausted, Hyukjin recovered from the strain, his hand burning from the effort, but the Soul Station crystal was now his. That also meant he'd completed half the dungeon's total objectives. Somewhere unseen, the nameless observer was intrigued, while the whispering demon seemed pissed about his survival, clearly hoping he'd die. Once Yoo-hyun questioned how he pulled that off in the middle of all that smoke, Hyukjin reminded them about the honeybee stingers they collected earlier, explaining he used them to counter the poison. Yoo-hyun got impressed and asked how he even figured that out, to which Hyukjin casually said the item description hinted at it, though in truth, it was a trick originally devised by the great explorer Jackson, something he obviously couldn't reveal. The others looked at him with open admiration before Hyukjin wrapped it up, saying they should move on since one part was done, and the next should be a bit easier. Sanya silently watched him walk away toward another crystal, realizing he hadn't used the bee honey earlier just to deal with Ju-won, but had collected it, knowing its neutralizing properties would come in handy. Soon, anonymous guardians flooded the viewing channel, while the administrator commented that Hyukjin's strategy was so flawless it didn't even need commentary. Even the true master of the demon joined the stream to witness it. When Hyukjin secured the second Soul Station crystal, the dungeon's completion conditions were fulfilled, and the break was officially sealed. Right after, Senya approached him personally with the rewards, which caught him off guard since it was rare for her to handle it herself. She explained that every party member would receive a bonus status point, and Hyukjin, being the first to clear the dungeon, could choose his own reward. There were 3 options: Gold, Recovery Elixir Type A, and Recovery Elixir Type B. The gold was extremely tempting, since 3.75 kilograms of it equaled around 200 million won, a massive sum that also hinted at something important for future dungeons. Still, Hyukjin knew that in this early stage, players weren't protected by law, meaning part of their earnings would get taxed, and the government could even seize gold under the pretense of otherworldly safety regulations. Losing it all was a real possibility, so he gave up on the cash dream and picked Recovery Elixir Type B instead, a safer, smarter choice. The nameless observer grew curious about his reasoning, the Lady of Scales couldn't quite decide, and the Whispering Demon grudgingly respected his decision. In the end, with the Soul Station dungeon break sealed and the mission fully complete, the group finally stepped out safely, leaving the chaos behind. Later, while riding the old local bus, Hyukjin tried bringing up something serious with his sister, catching her totally off guard when he asked about moving away. She stared at him like he'd lost it, wondering if he suddenly got rich or something. Hyukjin just shrugged and told her he'd saved up a little, around 100 million. His sister thought he was drunk, and honestly, he couldn't blame her. For their family, that kind of money sounded unreal, more than they'd ever even dreamed of having. The guy had pulled it off using the Recovery Elixir Type B, an insanely effective cure for a specific illness. Just like in his past timeline, he gave it to the same person Juwon once did, a rich guy who could afford a massive payout and just so happened to suffer from that illness. The deal went exactly as planned, 1 billion won in exchange, and a valuable connection to a big shot. As he thought about how smooth everything went, his sister was glued to her phone, watching the news where CEO Song suddenly appeared. Hyukjin instantly recognized him, the bald CEO, who should have been rocking a wig by now. His sister was shocked, since even the fake hair tech looked real. But Hyukjin knew better. He'd seen the dude's hair actually grow back after using that elixir. Turns out, Recovery Elixir Type B wasn't just for healing, it was secretly a top-tier baldness cure. Song, the self-made powerhouse of his corporation, saw it as an investment gold mine, and offered 100,000 cash plus an apartment in return. He even agreed to help Hyukjin adopt Manhwa, a cheerful girl whose future had been uncertain since her dungeon tutorial days. Hyukjin's mom adored the girl, saying she brought good energy into their home, and so he figured it was time to give everyone a better life. He dropped the news about moving into their own house, but his sister barely listened, sighing while scrolling her phone. He smiled anyway, thinking the family would finally have peace, maybe even go out for dinner that night. But that moment got wrecked when a glowing portal suddenly ripped open in the middle of the street. It hadn't even been long since the Soul Station dungeon incident, and now this. Out of the chaos stepped a familiar face, Shin Yanseo. The bus screeched to a stop, people panicking, while Hyukjin got ready to jump off. His sister thought he was crazy since the place was far, but he couldn't ignore it. Only one portal had appeared in the Hongjudong area, the same one known as the first dungeon ever cleared by the Empress of the Sword. It wasn't just famous because it was a special dungeon, but because that's where the strongest PvP fighter in history first rose. Hyukjin approached Shin, realizing she had no clue who she'd become years later. Right now, she was just a bright, curious girl with a totally different vibe. He could see her status window level 19, loaded with skills, and described in a hilariously cheesy way. When he warned her about monsters spilling out if the dungeon wasn't cleared, she mentioned her administrator had said the same. There hadn't been any dungeon breaks so far, thanks to Hyukjin's insider knowledge from his past life. Back then, Soul Station had collapsed multiple times before his strategy saved it. This time, he was ahead of everything, making sure no one died needlessly. But even he knew he couldn't stop all dungeon breaks forever. Eventually, there'd be too many for him alone to handle. He asked Shin if she was planning to enter, but she hesitated, doubting herself. He told her it was fine after all. She'd eventually surpass even the legendary tutorial finisher. When he suggested teaming up, she seemed surprised but excited, and sent him a party invite. They were both level 19, evenly matched, and she was relieved to know she wasn't lagging behind. When she asked his age, she was shocked to hear he was 20, thinking he sounded way older. In truth, he was mentally 30, but his body was still young. She suggested dropping the formal talk since they were the same age, and he agreed. He knew if they made it out alive, they'd both change the game forever. Without wasting another second, they stepped into the portal of light together. His sister could only stand frozen, watching him disappear. Inside, Hyukjin stared down the underground tunnel, curious about its layout. The return portal behind him was still active, meaning escape was possible. And if Shin Yanseo could solo clear this place after the tutorial in his past life, then this one shouldn't be too hard for him. Suddenly, the system alerted that monsters were appearing, catching him off guard. Rabbit tag monsters between levels 20 and 18 emerged, making him curious. Shin, who arrived shortly after, was impressed because they were large monsters. She asked if they were some sort of boss types, even though they didn't look that strong. The protagonist had to agree they weren't strong monsters despite their height. Unlike players, he could tell how strong a monster was just from its appearance. They were rabbits, so they didn't seem threatening or powerful like other monsters. Their main trait was that they fled quickly when they judged a target as a threat. That's exactly what happened. Hyukjin knew they ran because they feared them. If possible, they had to kill each one in a single blow, and he asked if she could do it. Shin smiled in agreement. She had the perfect skill to make that work. It was expected. She had the title of one-hit finisher, always being the Sword Empress, even if it was still a bit early. She charged at the monsters with her sword and defeated them without any problem. That was the innate ability of the Sword Empress, the one-hit finisher. It was impressive on its own, but he didn't expect her to be this skilled this early. Her behavior also changed the moment she started fighting. She looked like an ordinary college student just a short while ago. Now, she perfectly matched the battle-obsessed woman he remembered. Setting that aside, he never would have guessed this portal was filled with rabbit monsters. They were practically invincible against people with poor attack speed, but their attack and defense power was weak, even though they were particularly well known. Still, among other players, there was another reason for their interest. With a bit of luck, he was able to get that thing there, though nothing dropped this time. Shin asked if he'd been here before, and he denied it. It was his first time. She thought that because he was killing the rabbits with such ease and speed, to which she replied that she also only needed one strike for each of them. Even so, Shin sighed and let it go. There was no need to argue. Now that she knew they were the same age, trying to talk normally was kind of driving her crazy. She just wanted to speak casually, and Hyukjin finally introduced himself to her. Shin was about to call him by name and introduced herself too. But there was something she wanted to ask. She was wondering if he had a lot of knowledge about portals, but she was sure of it after watching him kill that rabbit, even if she didn't understand how he knew so much. Hyukjin remembered spending hours studying portals that appeared at specific times. His last exam covered association policies and how frequently portals occurred. He simply answered that he tends to learn everything he studies somehow. She still smiled, saying it was hard to believe something like that. The Whispering Demon was impressed by the protagonist's answer. Even more monsters appeared, and Hyukjin said they should talk after dealing with them. Among the items dropped by the rabbit monsters, some stood out. There was something that could greatly help players between levels 30 and 40. Hyukjin hadn't expected it to drop after just killing 1 or 2 rabbits, but since it was there, he made a point to get one before leaving. He would hunt until it appeared. Sinia was just watching when she heard a voice praising the player, saying he really was interesting. A girl named Ro asked if Sinia was the one broadcasting him to the Guardians. Ro was curious because the player had reached level 19. Not many players should be able to keep up with Shin. They could try to view his current status, but access was denied. Sinia explained that wouldn't be possible. Hyukjin had modified access to his professional information. He even removed his player name from the ranking board. Ro was surprised, wondering how he suddenly knew about access permissions. Normally, players weren't told about that kind of thing, and she asked if Sinia had told him. She replied that obviously she hadn't. She hadn't done anything against the commandments. There was nothing to worry about, but Ro still thought the whole thing was strange. She could see a player using the system, but doing something this blatant. He seemed like the kind of man who took advantage of easy targets. In any case, broadcasting Hyukjin should be a good source of income. Ro wanted to know if she could take on the job when Sinia wasn't available. Once again, Sinia replied that none of that would be possible. She had signed an exclusive contract with the protagonist, which really surprised Ro. That kind of thing could only be done 3 times. But still, she had stepped forward and acted. There was nothing Ro could do if he turned out to be the early rising type. But none of that had anything to do with Ro to begin with, and it never would. While the players kept fighting, Hyukjin suddenly saw an item drop. It was an iron sword of high quality, forged by a high-level blacksmith. It had excellent attack power and durability, which caught his attention. He threw the sword to Shin, telling her to use it since it was better than her current one. She caught the sword in surprise, unsure if it was really okay for her to take it. Hyukjin knew she'd make better use of swords than he ever could. So, she accepted the sword, thanking him for the offer because she knew it was truly good. In exchange, she said she'd offer him the next item that dropped, no matter what it was. The truth was, the protagonist wasn't really looking for a weapon. He had a lot of knowledge about the monsters that would appear over the next 10 years. The weapons he had now were already quite good. He didn't need the iron sword. He wondered how many more monsters he'd have to take care of before it showed up. It needed to appear before the monster spawn limit was reached. Another item dropped, and Hyukjin quickly grabbed it because he had finally found it. This was probably the best result he could get within that portal. The Ring of Legolas, a ring crafted by refining topaz that held a mysterious power. It was an HP absorption ring, and just then, he glanced to the side and saw a large crystal. The completion crystal was already appearing even though they had barely entered the dungeon. It seemed it was designed to show up after a certain number of monsters had been killed. Few dungeons were this easy. It made sense Shin had completed it alone in her timeline. Shin asked if there was something there, and he replied, it wasn't anything important. They should focus on defeating all the rabbit monsters first. He had obtained the ring, but that wasn't enough. Rings were the only equipment that could stack. He still had 9 other fingers, so he couldn't stop there. It might take a few hours, but it didn't matter. He needed to collect them all. Shin noticed that the protagonist was dealing with the monsters at the same speed she was. With all the knowledge he had, it felt like he'd entered the portal before she had. It made her wonder just who exactly that strange player was. After grinding through that dungeon for what felt like forever, Shin finally noticed the monsters had just stopped showing up. She figured maybe they'd farmed enough points from all those rabbit kills, but after hours of slaughter, the silence felt weird. She started wondering how the hell they were supposed to get out of there. And that's when Hyukjin casually pointed to the exit somewhere deep in the pitch-black tunnel, where you couldn't see shit. But he already knew the way. The guy had seen the completion crystal break before, which meant the portal was cleared. And once a light portal closed, it was gone for good. Still, he didn't mind. He'd snagged 8 HP absorption rings while farming. Dude had milked that place dry. Meanwhile, the celestial admins up there were losing their damn patience. Cinia was shaking with frustration. The brave Lion King was bored out of his mind. The nameless observer had already dipped, and the Lady of Scales was just watching, like, what the hell is this guy even doing? Hyukjin knew it probably looked boring as hell from their point of view. But screw them, he wasn't about to miss that loot. Still, it had taken way longer than he'd planned, and he was already thinking what excuse he'd give his sister once he got home. As the two stepped out of the portal, Shin noticed they were back in the same place as before, but something felt off. The crowd was gone, the streets were empty, and then bam, Ro popped up, all smiles, thanking the Guardians for tuning into her channel. She dropped the bomb that the true master of the Celestial Demonic Mountain had just requested a PvP zone, and right there, she announced its creation. Hyukjin immediately recognized her, Ro, one of those flashy intermediate admins who loved hyping things up, unlike Sania who barely spoke 2 words during a stream. Ro said the Guardians were losing their minds over these 2 players. On one side, Shin the sword prodigy who'd caught the eye of that powerful Guardian, and on the other, Hyukjin, the mysterious player who somehow knew way too damn much. The Guardians were already placing bets on who'd win. Ro hyped it like it was some grand tournament, reminding everyone no one could die in a PvP zone, every hit would be healed afterward. Shin seemed unsure, but she relaxed when she heard that. Hyukjin, on the other hand, was completely stunned. This was happening way earlier than in his original timeline. He didn't even have a Guardian backing him yet. That caught everyone's attention, the Lady of Scales, the Whispering Demon, the brave Lion King. They all went quiet when he pointed it out. Even the nameless observer shut up. Ro seemed thrown off too, wondering if Senia hadn't told him anything about Guardian selection. But Hyukjin wasn't done. Before the PvP started, he called out that so-called noble Guardian who wanted the duel, accusing him of basically pushing him to betray someone who trusted him. And that jab hit hard. The Guardian, the true master of the Celestial Demonic Mountain, revealed himself as the Lord of Millions, a proud warrior who despised betrayal and injustice. That warrior, pissed but impressed, decided to grant Hyukjin a temporary skill, one-hit finisher, usable only inside the PvP zone. Shin was shocked it actually worked. From the Guardian's point of view, Shin was the stronger one, the true fighter he had chosen. To him, Hyukjin was just some weak-ass guy who hadn't earned the skill through training. But now that both had it, the playing field was even. Hyukjin couldn't help but find it ironic they'd just cleared a dungeon together, and now they had to fight each other right after. Shin felt the same. She was just as curious to see who'd win between them. Hyukjin had impressed her before he hunted at her pace, navigated the portal like he had night vision, and always knew what to do next. It was like he could see the future or something. Now, she wanted to see how far he could go when he went all out. Both readied themselves, and the Guardians were hyped, the brave Lion King yelling for them to start, while the proud warrior just watched silently. When the duel began, their blades clashed at the same instant, and Hyukjin's eye of perception triggered. Sparks flew as they traded blows, and even though he could predict her next move, she was tricky, sometimes faking him out, making it hard to counter. Ro was losing her mind watching the fight. It was intense, skillful, and unpredictable. But even with that advantage, Hyukjin couldn't break through. His swordsmanship was still limited. Shin noticed his sharp senses and smirked, saying she'd start taking things seriously now. That shocked him so far, she hadn't even been fighting at full power. Once she went all in, her attacks hit harder, and even though it wouldn't kill him, getting smacked by her sword definitely wasn't painless. Hyukjin was impressed. She'd already figured out her limits and adjusted. She probably thought they were evenly matched now, but in truth, it all came down to timing the moment to use one-hit finisher. They kept going until Shin missed a strike, slicing through a tree instead. She blinked. Had he been holding back too? Before she could react, Hyukjin used his temporary skill, darted behind her, and pressed his sword lightly to her neck. That was it, match over. Shin admitted defeat, giving Hyukjin the win for the first ever PvP zone. He was honestly caught off guard. PvP zones weren't supposed to appear this early, but hell, he wasn't complaining. The title of first opponent began to generate, awarded to the winner of the first PvP battle. The opponent gains a considerable advantage in elevated terrain over other players. It granted him Light Step, a skill that lets you leap forward before your opponent can react. A formidable light-based technique that didn't require any mana to use. There had been many speculations about how the Empress of the Sword obtained Light Step, but the truth was that she had won a PvP battle in Hyukjin's original timeline. Shin asked what exactly he had been thinking about so much he had won, so he should be happy with his reward. Either way, she was so shocked she called her mother for the first time since elementary school. If Ahyung saw her now, she'd probably be just as surprised. In a way, it felt like stealing the Empress of the Sword's skill, but it wasn't intentional, and Hyukjin had won, so he didn't have anything to worry about. Besides, it seemed like they were shocked that he had actually won, and the Guardians talked about it. It was as if all 4 Guardians were watching with vivid interest. They were probably trying to make a good impression because they knew about the selection. The brave Lion King kept mocking his dirty tricks, as expected. That guy still firmly hated Hyukjin despite everything, but for some reason, he kept watching his channel even while hating him that much. The PvP zone was deactivated, finally ending after a long moment. The wound he got during the battle was healed, just as they had been promised. At that, Shin reminded him they weren't going to go their separate ways just because of this. She wanted his number so she could give him hers too, which left him confused. In truth, Shin thought they might team up again later, not to drink or anything like that, but to work together in the game. And after everything, she had ended up liking the kind of person Hyukjin was. She was really straightforward, so he couldn't do anything but accept it. The protagonist added his number right when his eye of perception detected danger. He couldn't dodge it, maybe he should just accept it. So, he took the hit to the back. It was an attack from his sister, who suddenly appeared angry because he had left without saying anything, just disappearing all of a sudden when she had been looking for him for hours. She even thought he had died. Shin asked who she was, and Hyukjin said she was his sister. Back home, Hyukjin finally let out a deep sigh, thinking how they'd be moving out soon. 3 days, that's all it would take to pack up everything. After years of struggle, his family could finally live a better life. Even after he showed them the house papers, they still looked like they couldn't believe it. But he knew time would prove it. Their future was about to change for the better, and that was a damn fact. Still, the rest of the world was heading straight toward chaos just like before. He remembered clearly, in the old timeline, the cataclysm hit on May 11th, 2018. The world fell apart overnight, with over 20 million people dying inside the tutorial fields. The internet went wild, people freaking out, talking non-stop about the coming end of everything. Big corporations like Sun tried turning it into a business opportunity, calling it new technology, and launching projects to cash in on it. Everything so far matched exactly with Hyukjin's notes. If the pattern continued, then on June 16th, 3 days from now, dungeons and portals would start appearing across the country. He could see the future, sure, but that didn't mean he could fix everything. He wasn't some hero or saint, just a player doing what he could. His only job now was to survive and keep playing. June 16th was also the day of the infamous Iyuang murder case, where 6 people would die along a mountain route. Nobody ever found the killer, but Hyukjin knew what had to be done. He and Sunhwa headed up the mountain, pretending to hunt monsters. Slimes were everywhere, but they were too weak to even count as real monsters. When Sunhwa asked if there was anything more exciting around, he told her about a lycanthrope, which immediately freaked her out. Meanwhile, the world was panicking. Reports of monster attacks like the one in Jonagu were spreading like wildfire. People were terrified, clueless, and desperate. The so-called intermediate administrators were butchering humans without mercy, and modern weapons were useless against them. While climbing, Hyukjin noticed 3 middle-aged women nearby, exactly where the victims were supposed to be. One of them froze as he approached, panicking and reaching for her phone. He tried to warn them to stay quiet. It was dangerous to make noise, but 2 of them screamed anyway, calling the cops. And that's when it showed up. A level 24 lycanthrope burst out of the shadows, reacting to their screams. The women bolted in terror while one fell to the ground, trembling. Hyukjin rushed in front of her, blocking the monster's path. He had been tracking its bloodlust since entering the mountain, and now it was time to face it head-on. No tricks this time. But something felt off. Another bloodthirsty presence lingered nearby, something even deadlier. Before he could locate it, an attack came from behind. He dodged fast, activating his light step skill. The system pinged, asking if he wanted to switch his title to Excellent Player. He accepted instantly, boosting his speed and power, then launched a precise strike on the hidden assailant, a level 27 six-tailed fox. That shocked him. A spirit-type beast showing up here was unheard of. These things were stealthy, tricky, and used spiritual magic to hunt. While Hyukjin fought, one of the women was badly injured, and the lycanthrope lunged again, but Sunhwa jumped in, taunting it to draw attention away. It wasn't her first fight, but this time was different. Last time, she'd been paralyzed with fear from its howl, but now she stood firm, resisting the status effect completely. Using her Platinum Darkness skill, she faced it head-on, refusing to give in. Hyukjin moved in at the right moment, striking the lycanthrope and saving her, while Sunhwa finished the beast off with a brutal hit that sent it flying. The system rewarded them experience, coins, and a title, Predator of the Tutorial Field, Hidden Piece, King of Wolves. The lycanthrope went down easier than expected, but the six-tailed fox had made everything messy. One woman didn't survive the attack, and the other two backed away in horror, calling Hyukjin a monster. He looked at the body with quiet guilt. This was supposed to be the infamous Mount Wang case. The government had once bragged about killing the lycanthrope, but they'd never realized the true predator, the six-tailed fox, was still alive. It had slipped away back then, invisible to their tech, and now, even though it was wounded, Hyukjin knew it hadn't gone far. Meanwhile, somewhere else the women were screaming, pointing at the six-tailed fox that lurked nearby. Hyukjin stepped forward, realizing the beast wasn't far. It needed human flesh to heal, especially organs. That explained why it went after the fleeing woman instead of them. The wounds on its belly told the story it was desperate to feed, but something felt off. It wasn't the real fox. What stood before them was just a doppelganger. The real one was hiding. Using his detection ability and the eye of perception, Hyukjin spotted it camouflaged high in a tree, silently watching. It didn't know he'd seen it, so he had to pretend to be unaware. He told Sunhwa to provoke the clone, keeping the real one's attention fixed. Her taunt worked partially. The fox got agitated but didn't fully commit. Hyukjin told her to keep at it, stay loud, and trust him. She continued baiting the creature until it finally lunged forward. The clone wasn't an illusion. It was a physical copy that shared stats with the main body. Its strength was halved, making it easier to defend against. Still, killing the clone wouldn't end things. The real body would just sense the danger and run. The system then offered him a solution, a starter dagger for 260 coins. Without hesitation, he bought it, locked his eyes on the real fox, and threw the blade. In that instant, notifications flashed. The brave Lion King is interested in your throw. The nameless observer is watching. The true master of the celestial demonic mountain mocks you. Seconds later, the fox vanished. Sunhwa froze, confused, thinking she'd heard an arrow sound. But it wasn't that the dagger had struck the real body, dead on. Hyukjin climbed up, finished the job with his sword, and looted the corpse. Experience gained. Coins earned. Level up. 26. Among the spoils, he obtained the foxtail, a valuable item from a six-tailed beast, perfect for the upcoming dungeon. Before he could even breathe, the sound of helicopter blades filled the air. Someone had called the police. Getting dragged into that mess would only complicate things, so he prepared to leave. But then Senia appeared fluttering in with trembling wings. She asked his current level, and he told her to scan him. She did, but her wings shook harder. Then suddenly, everything froze. Time itself stopped. It was the Lady of the Scales doing. A pause. Messages from various guardians poured in like a storm. Each one came with an offer. The brave Lion King praised his courage and offered a Tier 3 elixir of great strength. The Lady of the Scales and Whispering Demon chimed in with their own gifts. The Typhoon Sword of Jo Sung-hyun, a rare-grade weapon, and the Demonic Fruit, a consumable that boosted player growth but turned one's alignment evil. Both items were ranker-level gear unheard of at this stage. Then came the most shocking one. The true master of the Celestial Demonic Mountain offered to teach him the Celestial Demonic Art, an absurdly overpowered technique. Only the nameless observer remained silent, watching quietly like always. Hyukjin understood what this was. They were all fighting to recruit him before he reached level 30, bribing him with gifts to win his favor. That's why Senia had been trembling earlier. She knew this chaos was coming. Now she was stuck in the middle of a guardian power struggle, probably flooded with complaints for not announcing it earlier. Hyukjin could tell she was about to break. He teased her about it, saying she clearly knew what was happening. She tried denying it, but he wasn't having it. When she got snappy, demanding to know what he wanted, he casually replied, 3,000 coins. She tried haggling it down to 2,000, but he shut her down, reminding her she wasn't exactly in a position to bargain. She tried again, 2,700 coins. He smirked, reminding her they were on the same side, but if she kept playing games, he'd happily walk away and end things for good. Defeated, Senia finally agreed 3,000 coins, no more. With that, the time pause ended. Hyukjin asked for the contract, ready to sign. Another deal sealed, another step forward in a game that was far from ordinary. After that whole mess, Hyukjin and Sunhwa finally headed back home. when his phone started buzzing out of nowhere. Turns out it was Shin, calling in all panic after reading that viral article that had his name plastered all over it. She'd just realized it was him who'd soloed that monster up in the mountains, and honestly, she couldn't stop thanking him. If it weren't for him, her mom would have been a goner, and she swore she'd never forget that. She even started saying all this wild stuff about how she'd do anything for him, take care of him however he wanted, which totally threw him off because where the hell did that come from? Still, he was planning to call her anyway since he needed to ask something important. He was going to be gone for a few days and wanted to see if she was down to tag along. When she asked where, he casually dropped that it was pretty far Japan actually. Not some chill trip though, more like a deadly-ass raid. He wanted Shin, Sunhwa, and Yuhyun to join him because a big-ass portal was about to open in Osaka, and he planned to clear it before it broke. Shin thought he meant another one of those 5-hour dungeon hunts, and while Hyukjin agreed it'd be similar, he wasn't sure what kind of chaos they'd face this time. Portals were unpredictable as hell. Some countries had prepared for these tutorial events, but even with all that prep, new dungeons still popped up like glitches in the system, killing thousands before anyone could react. The Osaka one was especially risky. Once it shattered, monsters would flood out, tearing through cities. Unless the right team was there at the right moment, it'd be another bloody disaster, like Mount Inwang. He made it clear this wasn't a fun invite. They could totally refuse if they wanted. He wouldn't hold it against them. But if they went, he'd cover everything, tickets, hotels, food, the whole damn trip. All they needed were some clothes and their passports. Shin sighed, realizing that his trip invite was just work in disguise. Typical Hyukjin move. She asked how he even knew all this ahead of time, and he finally dropped the truth that he'd been getting prophetic dreams, kinda like cheat codes showing him what major events were coming. He'd kept quiet because it sounded too insane to believe, but after everything that had happened, maybe the world wasn't so logical anymore. Whether they believed him or not didn't matter. Hyukjin was going, even if it meant going solo. Seeing how dead serious he was, Shin decided to tag along anyway, thinking, screw it, maybe she could treat it like a weird date. Yuhyun didn't hesitate either. Dude owed Hyukjin big time for saving his life, so there was no way he'd bail now. Sunhwa asked if she had to go too, and Hyukjin said he'd handle everything if she wanted in. She said yes immediately since she'd never even been on a plane before. Honestly, Hyukjin expected at least one of them to chicken out, but everyone agreed, without a second thought. With that kind of squad, a future king of fists, a sword empress, and a top-tier tank, they were stacked. For a beginner party, it was god tier. So yeah, the plan was locked. They'd be flying out to Osaka the next day. It didn't take long for the group to board their flight, and Sunhwa was losing her mind over how cool planes actually were. Shin was trying not to get flung back in her seat, laughing the whole time. Meanwhile, Hyukjin sat there hoping they'd make it to Japan without any surprises. The only thing stressing him was the timing. He had no idea exactly when the portal would open, only that a tutorial with a brutal 33% survival rate was going to happen first. It was called the Tokyo Tutorial, an intro-level dungeon that usually spawned weak monsters, unless the RNG gods decided to screw people over with a special case. Considering a massive break had happened right after last time, things looked messy. Maybe the dungeon was too close to the tutorial, or maybe that rare special case was happening again. Either way, he wouldn't know until he saw it himself. All he could do was get to Osaka fast and plan to stay in Japan for at least a week. Sunhwa, curious as always, asked if it was okay to be gone that long, but Hyukjin told her not to stress. Everyone back home was just happy they'd moved into a new house. Even his sister had been poking around, suspicious about how he pulled it off, but deep down, she was proud. She acted cold, but she was clearly hyped for him. Sunhwa wanted to believe that too, even if reality was never that simple. And just like that, the plane roared down the runway, passengers strapped in tight, the crew confirming takeoff. Their next destination, Japan, and possibly hell itself. The squad finally touched down in Dotonbori, Osaka, the city's main hotspot, and the exact place where the portal was about to spawn. The crazy part was, this portal was never supposed to be cleared in the first place. It was destined to break, unleashing waves of bloodthirsty monsters. But Hyukjin, being the absolute madman he was, wanted to catch it the moment it appeared, and end that mess before it spiraled. Even if they couldn't locate it in time, his plan was simple: wipe out whatever crawled out and reduce the damage as fast as possible. He was fired up to handle it, even if no one knew how long it'd take. And just as he was scanning the area, boom, a shimmer popped right in front of him, and for a second his heart almost exploded, only to realize it was just Senya showing up out of nowhere. She reminded them that only they could see her right now, and if they didn't want to look crazy, they should keep their mouths shut and let Hyukjin talk. She asked why he was even in Japan, and he played it cool, saying it was a vacation, but the lineup of his party made her doubt that real quick. The dude had tank-level powerhouses tagging along, no way it was just sightseeing. Senya didn't say much though. She mentioned something about the commandments preventing her from leaking info or interfering with the game, but she hinted that discussing a Guardian's mission wasn't against the rules. Apparently, a mysterious Guardian sponsor who didn't want to be named had sent her to hand over a mission. Hyukjin laughed that it was just a chill trip, but deep down he knew this was fate calling. He figured if they'd been offered a mission, then screw it, they'd roll with it. The others didn't get why he kept labeling this chaos as a trip when it was clearly anything but. Still, he understood that clearing the portal before heading back to Korea was their main goal. Since it was getting close to dinner, he asked the team what they wanted to eat, and Sunhwa instantly said she wanted to try gyukatsu. So they found a place and went for it, while Senya silently observed from a distance. To her, Hyukjin seemed cautious on the surface, but the truth was, the guy was a straight-up tactician. He used every situation, every loophole, every system glitch, to turn things in his favor, milking the Guardians for whatever benefits he could, without breaking the rules. He even thanked them in his head for all their tempting offers, though he wasn't planning on accepting any. He refused to take any of the missions, instead choosing to just acknowledge the help and promise to give them a damn good show in return. Senya couldn't tell if he was brave or just reckless, but she couldn't shake the thought that this dude was playing with something way above his level. While she disappeared into the ether, the group found a restaurant and started checking it out, but then all hell broke loose. A strange noise echoed, and suddenly people were sprinting in panic across the street. That's when Hyukjin realized they just found what they came for. The portal known as Turtle Nest had finally appeared. Yoo-hyun looked ready, waiting for the signal, and Hyukjin told Sunhwa to take point. Everyone else was tense, mostly because they weren't used to watching a kid lead the charge. But the truth was, that kid was the strongest of them all, and they'd better get used to it fast. They stepped inside the dungeon, instantly swallowed by pitch-black surroundings that smelled like wet soil. The whole place looked like a swamp straight out of nightmares, covered in thick mud and dripping with mystery. Nobody had cleared it before, so they were basically walking into a blind run. Hyukjin suggested scouting the area first, just to get a grip on their environment, but then, something unexpected happened. Another fairy appeared beside them, glowing faintly and staring like she was sizing them up. She didn't seem to recognize who they were, but the way she looked at them said otherwise. Something about them caught her interest, that same strange sensation Hyukjin got whenever he looked at Senya, like being able to see her but not truly see her. His perception skill couldn't analyze beings above his level, meaning this one was way out of his league. The fairy, who called herself Celine, was actually an intermediate administrator, and she stepped closer, intrigued by the vibe she got from Hyukjin. He looked young, but there was something about him, a quiet confidence, almost like he'd been through dozens of raids already. She quickly realized he came from the Korean server, and thought maybe she'd made a mistake showing up here. Back in her prime, Celine had been one of the top 3 in the Japanese server, known as the Rising Star Excavator, a title that instantly made Hyukjin's brain start racing. If she was here, that meant there were players already inside this portal, maybe even broadcasting their run. But that also meant those players had probably failed to clear it, which lined up perfectly with what Hyukjin already knew. Turtle Nest was the portal that broke. Anyone trapped inside was as good as dead. Not wasting time, he told the team to buy a portal map from the shop, an item that showed real-time positions of all members inside. Shin hesitated since it cost a whopping 1,000 coins, but Hyukjin reminded her that losing coins was way better than losing their lives. She sighed, low-key salty, since she'd been saving those coins, but Yoo-hyun backed Hyukjin up without question. The activation phrase was portal map, and it even came with built-in alert signals: yellow for mild danger, red for we're screwed levels of danger. He made everyone promise to keep their eyes glued to the map and move quietly, since too much noise could trigger a mob attack. Shin muttered that it wasn't even that complicated of a plan, and Hyukjin gave the go-ahead. They split into pairs, Yoo-hyun with Shin, and Hyukjin with Sunhwa, each taking different paths through the swamp. The key was to stay alert and keep track of their positions, since those marshes could swallow people whole. As they started moving, Shin couldn't help teasing Yoo-hyun about his muscles, patting his arm and smirking, while the poor guy just sighed, wondering why she couldn't just call him by his damn name first. And with that chaotic energy, their deadly little adventure inside the turtle nest officially began. Meanwhile, the other administrator, who was broadcasting his own feed, was completely thrown off when a bunch of guardians suddenly ditched his stream. 1 second, everything was fine, and the next, his view count just tanked out of nowhere. Dude had no clue what the hell just happened. His channel literally featured Yoo-hyun, the damn finisher, plus Shin, the same girl who had caught the interest of the true master of the celestial demonic mountain. But somehow every single guardian switched over to Senya's stream, like she dropped the hottest content of the season. The poor guy basically lost the entire content war overnight, and couldn't even figure out how many people were now watching that human freak show instead. Hyukjin's name was spreading like wildfire. This guy was leveling up, through completely unknown means and weird-ass knowledge. But that didn't mean the admin was out of options. he still had other tricks to climb back up. The fact that no one knew jack shit about Hyukjin because of his exclusive contract made everything even more suspicious. So the administrator tried reaching out to higher-ranking guardians, gossiping about how strange the whole thing was. Everyone was talking about Hyukjin, about Senia, and how the hell that human knew things even before the Korean server itself did. And now, on top of that, he was casually explaining how to use the damn portal map like he built it himself. No wonder people were losing their minds trying to figure out if they were using some illegal hack or divine cheat code. Back inside the field, Shin warned everyone to watch their step, and Yoo-hyun agreed, reminding her that Hooten had already told them to chill on the talking, so they kept their mouths shut and stayed alert. Then something caught their eyes, fragments scattered across the ground, like broken shells. Turned out to be a level 1 golden turtle, tough little bastard with armor thick as hell. Shin wondered if they should take it down, but Yoo-hyun refused, saying they'd signal Hyukjin first before doing anything stupid. Before they could even blink, the turtle ducked back into hiding, leaving them staring like idiots. Then Shin spotted something else, a guy lugging around a massive sack. They moved closer, wondering if he was another player. The man said no, though he was clearly hauling around a freaking monster, one of those golden turtles with absurd defense. Yoo-hyun quickly figured out what was going on. The dude had been trying to hunt them but couldn't kill any because their defense was just too damn high, so he was dragging them back to the water to deal with them somehow. Shin was honestly surprised that Yoo-hyun pieced it all together so fast. Still, she asked what they should do, maybe send Hyukjin the yellow signal, but Yoo-hyun told her to wait. They didn't even know the key for this zone yet. Then chaos hit. The water suddenly started thrashing, and that Japanese guy let out a scream that could wake the dead. When they looked, he was being yanked backward, shouting that he didn't want to die. Shin froze as he grabbed onto her leg, begging like hell for help. And then she saw it. The swamp split open, and a massive creature rose from the dark water. Even Yoo-hyun was stunned. The swamp expanded fast, dragging everything down, and for a second, they had no clue what to do. If that idiot kept clinging to her, she'd be dragged in too. But Shin didn't have it in her to just abandon him. That's when Hyukjin showed up out of nowhere, cold as ever, and without hesitation, he snapped the man's arm and told Shin to pull her shit together. The monster was a swamp alligator level 17, not too strong on paper, but in the swamp, its power jumped to the level of a damn 25. Killing one in its own turf was borderline impossible unless you had insane penetration skills. The swamp itself acted like its armor. Hyukjin told Sunhwa he'd move ahead first and used his light step to close the distance fast. When he reached them, Shin was still being grabbed, paralyzed like her brain had just crashed. The nameless observer was watching with amusement. The whispering demon was laughing his ass off. The true master of the celestial demonic mountain was clapping like it was a show, while the lady of the scales just sat there silently judging. Hyukjin snapped at Shin, basically asking if she planned to just stand there forever. If he hadn't intervened, she would have been gone, but she was stuck, not scared, just blank, frozen in panic. He sliced the man's arm clean off to free her, telling her to stay sharp next time because luck won't always have her back. Yoo-hyun asked what the plan was now, and Hyukjin said the monster had just eaten, meaning it'd soon get sleepy and crawl back to land. Sunhwa was skeptical, but Hyukjin said he'd already seen it happen in one of his prophetic dreams, so they stayed low, just watching. Celine, observing from her side, was honestly questioning reality. A dude having dreams that accurately predicted monster behavior? That was next-level bullshit, but she couldn't deny the results. Even if he didn't foresee that one player's death, the accuracy of his visions was still terrifying. If anyone deserved an exclusive contract this early, it was that bastard. Eventually, the swamp alligator surfaced again, dragging itself onto land. Yoo-hyun cracked his knuckles, ready to go all out, and Hyukjin noticed him channeling mana into his fists, king of fists for a damn reason. That level of control was rare as hell for someone at this stage, but before he could move, Shin stepped up, burning with rage. Hyukjin could feel it, her murderous aura spiking, her sanity slipping a little. She'd leveled up again, and the fury in her eyes said she wasn't holding back. Ignoring Hyukjin's calm warning, she dashed forward like lightning, her sword glowing as she went straight for the alligator's head, the usual weak point. With a clean, vicious strike, she merged with her blade and tore through the monster like it was butter. The beast went down hard. Even without using light step, she'd hit a whole new level. Shin was growing fast, maybe even faster than the version of her Hyukjin once knew. When it was over, she noticed the system reward. She'd picked up a quest item, the alligator's claw. It could be exchanged with an administrator for a special quest. Senia announced it right away, saying the player who presented it would trigger the quest, meaning Hyukjin. Shin handed the claw over without question, and soon the quest appeared: kill 5 swamp alligators. They'd just taken one down, 4 more to go. Sunhwa honestly didn't think they'd pull it off. Not in that hellish swamp at least, because fighting there was just asking to die, and everyone knew it. So the only real option was to drag those damn alligators onto land if they wanted a chance to kill them. Like before, The nameless observer and the 4 other guardians were watching with that same eerie curiosity, eager to see what would happen next. The moment one of those beasts crawled out of the murky water, trying to swallow some poor player alive, Hyukjin already had a plan in mind. He bought himself a long-ass spear, keeping the distance advantage on his side, but then noticed Shin standing there, low-key terrified, thinking he might use her as bait or one of those sacrifices to lure the monsters out. He sighed, and instead placed a small chunk of lean black yak meat right on the spear's tip. It wasn't just any meat though, it was ridiculously juicy, the kind that could instantly make whoever ate it feel full and satisfied. He'd gotten it back from the Soul Dungeon when he met Juwon, thinking it'd be useful someday, but even he didn't expect that day to be now. So with the bait ready, all they had to do was find another gator and use the meat to lure it out. Basically, it turned into some weird version of alligator fishing. Shin looked doubtful, unsure if it would even work, but Hyukjin calmly said if the gator went for the meat and ate it, then yeah, it'd work. Still, he warned them to stay sharp, because those things could show up out of nowhere, and if one grabbed your ankle, you better be ready to chop that foot off before it drags you under. Didn't even take long, one gator lunged and swallowed the bait like a vacuum. The black yak meat had that special property. It was so rich that even a few bites would leave a creature fuller than eating an entire human. Once those swamp gators were satisfied, they dragged themselves out to the shore to rest, and that was when their strength basically disappeared. On land, it was just a level 18 monster, no longer that untouchable swamp predator. Perfect moment to strike, so the group worked together, attacking while it was distracted, and took it down easily. Even for Hyukjin, who already had some idea of the future, it was impressive how smoothly it went. He knew this turtle nest portal from before. It was the one that used to collapse because people cleared it wrong. But somehow, without a clear strategy, they had managed it flawlessly this time. After collecting all the alligator claws, Hyukjin reported to Senya. Her oddly hesitant response made him wonder if something was off, but she brushed it off and just completed the quest, handing him the rewards. He received a map of the turtle nest, showing all the key points. That alone meant the portal had been cleared properly. The map basically revealed everything important about the area. Hyukjin realized then this quest was like a reversed version of the original back then. Players were supposed to hunt the crocodiles after finishing the turtle nest mission, not before. They soon found the real turtle nest, and Hyukjin pointed it out. As they entered, Shin frowned, confused. There were no turtles anywhere. Hyukjin guessed it was probably because that Japanese player had beaten them to it. The guy had been carrying multiple golden turtles in his bag. Probably because he couldn't kill them, they'd just retreat into their shells whenever attacked. The group searched every corner for the transparent crystal, but it wasn't there. According to the map, there were 3 nests total, so they decided to check them all. Moving to the first entrance, Hyukjin told Shin and Yuhyun to make sure none of the turtles escaped back into the water, since once they did, catching them again would be impossible. They nodded, and everyone got into position. Each golden turtle was worth a decent stack of coins, and if luck hit, they could even drop random coin boxes. The most famous strategy involving them was the secret mission called Collective Spirit of the Golden Turtle. It didn't take long before Shin finished clearing 2 nests and collected a bunch of turtles, though she didn't get why they didn't just kill them all right away. Hyukjin explained that mass hunting was far more efficient. Soon enough, they triggered the hidden mission. The drop rate for random coin boxes shot up by 10%, and coin earnings did too, lasting for 30 minutes. It was technically a hidden mission, but in the future, this would become public knowledge. All you needed was to gather 40 golden turtles at once. Later on, people even built golden turtle farms and slaughterhouses for this trick. But here, Hyukjin was the first to ever discover it. Because of that, he unlocked a title called First Pioneer, which could link with hidden missions. Checking the details, he found that if a player with this title was the first to uncover a hidden mission, they could trigger something called a link scenario, and it could happen up to 3 times. Using it here would unlock a hidden boss, spawn the venomous golden turtle, a level 30 intermediate monster, but with the boss buff, it'd fight like a level 35 beast. That was too dangerous without serious poison resistance. Hyukjin had his Mandre gloves, which helped against toxins, but even then, he wasn't stupid enough to risk it. Shin seemed confused, not understanding what he was planning. He just told her to wait. She also received the bonus notification, the increased drop rate and coin gain. She grinned, satisfied with the outcome, saying she wouldn't get greedy. If others wanted to take the lead, she was fine splitting tasks. She'd learned a ton that day, and figured she owed him again. With a teasing smile, she joked that maybe they could call this a date. Hyukjin, of course, had no clue how that counted as one, but Yuhyun chimed in saying he didn't want any rewards, just helping out. Sunhwa added that she'd simply follow Hyukjin's lead without complaint. Then Hyukjin asked if anyone had a large, blunt weapon for smashing. Yuhyun pulled out a big hammer and handed it over. It was ridiculously heavy, useless for moving targets, but perfect for something stationary like the golden turtles now. Hyukjin said it was time to start making real money. He'd begin with 70,000 coins and split whatever was left evenly among the team. Manhwa didn't really get the plan but thanked him anyway. He never planned to hog all the rewards. Keeping his team motivated mattered more since he'd probably work with them again. Then he got to work, swinging that massive hammer down on a golden turtle, killing it instantly and earning 200 coins. Each strike brought more coins pouring in, and the others just watched, surprised by his precision. To them, he looked like some pro at using heavy weapons. As the turtles fell one after another, Hyukjin started collecting random coin boxes too. Once he got 7, he knew it'd trigger another hidden mission he had in mind. It was exhausting, but he was determined to get all 7 no matter what. Shin couldn't believe how fast he moved, and even Yu-Hyun noticed his strength stat seemed higher than his own. For someone technically lower level, Hyukjin was insanely strong and fast. It was shocking to see. After a relentless grind, he finally got the 7th box, stacking up nearly 20,000 coins. That left him 50,000 away from his 70,000 goal. He opened the first box, boom, 6,000 coins. Second one, another 1,400. Total came to 7,800 already. Way more than expected. Then the third box hit him with only 70 coins, which made him groan. 4 left, and he mentally begged the universe for luck. Next one, 9,000, then 700, then 2,000 more. When all 7 were done, he'd officially completed the hidden side of the jackpot challenge. Hyukjin grinned to himself. He'd pulled it off exactly like in the past. Being the first to meet the conditions for the jackpot meant he could link his first Pioneer title with the challenge and unlock another link scenario. The bonus would turn all those random coin boxes into double coin boxes, doubling his haul. Hyukjin casually asked Senya to share the reward he got, and that small move instantly caught the Guardian's attention. The nameless observer leaned in curiously. The Whispering Devil's interest spiked. The true master of the celestial demonic mountain grew restless, and the brave lion literally started pounding his chest like some overhyped gorilla, making the entire scene awkward as hell. But Hyukjin didn't care. He was too focused on the 7th box, ready to turn that thing into a double coin box, the kind that straight up doubled your money when you opened it. The trick was simple. The more coins you had on hand when you cracked it open, the more you'd earn, but only real gains counted, not coins earned through trading. This wasn't just his loot though. They had all worked their asses off clearing that swampy death trap together. They were a team, and Hyukjin wasn't the kind of guy to hog rewards. So he planned to buy the box and give everyone at least 3,000 coins each. A solid deal by all means. Yu-Hyun stayed quiet, expressionless as usual, but Shin was visibly anxious, probably thinking it was way too generous, and she wasn't wrong. For a beginner, 3,000 coins was a hell of a lot. Still, when Senya mentioned that linking the first Pioneer title to a secret mission could only be done 3 times, Hyukjin didn't hesitate. He just shrugged and said fairness mattered more than hoarding opportunities. Of course, that wasn't the real reason. Deep down, Hyukjin just wanted his damn 70,000 coins as soon as possible. The Lady of the Scales seemed impressed by the gesture, while the Whispering Devil glared, clearly pissed. To that devil, Hyukjin was just another human schemer trying to curry favor with the Lady of the Scales and rope her in as his personal guardian. And honestly, he wasn't entirely wrong. Timing it perfectly, Hyukjin linked the first Pioneer title with the hidden jackpot challenge, triggering the effect. And bam, the 7th coin box turned into a double coin box. At that exact moment, he was holding 43,219 coins, which instantly doubled to a jaw-dropping 86,438. He immediately handed out 3,000 to each teammate, thanking them for the grind. Yu-Hyun, though, still thought Hyukjin had soloed the entire thing, which made Hyukjin smirk to himself, finding that cute as hell. His plan had gone beyond what he'd hoped for, and to top it off, the Lady of the Scales even dropped him a 500 coin sponsorship. He mentally rolled his eyes, kinda stingy for a celestial powerhouse. But hey, coins were coins. After that, Hyukjin told Yu-Hyun to smash the transparent crystal, freeing the turtle nest portal and finishing the mission. The portal cleared. Rewards popped up. Each of them received 500 coins and a return scroll to the beginner's tower. Shin blinked, confused by the scroll, but Hyukjin just told them to use it. It was perfect timing anyway. If they tried to exit the normal route, the local authorities would have probably been waiting to interrogate them for being in a Japanese portal. Then, Senya appeared again, offering a mysterious compensation reward. Apparently it was sent by an unnamed guardian. Hyukjin accepted 7,000 more coins. The two stared at each other for a bit, both silent, realizing how absurd the payout was for just a beginner-level portal. Some high-ranking guardian had definitely stepped in through Senya, though she was still trying to stay low-key. If it were the Lady of the Scales, she'd have said so openly. The Shepherd of Las Vegas didn't fit either. He was tied to the US server, so whoever it was, Hyukjin had no clue, and honestly, there was no way to find out now. Deciding not to overthink it, He told everyone to use their return scrolls. Senya switched her stream back to the Korean server, broadcasting from the beginner's tower. When they teleported, the group found themselves back in Korea, but something was off. There were no real people around. The crowd looked normal, but Hyukjin quickly realized they were all NPCs, basically bots coded to fill the tower space. Shin noticed this was Tower D, and was stunned by how different it looked. Yoo-hyun questioned if their re-entry was even legal, but Hyukjin brushed it off, saying they could do whatever the hell they wanted, thanking them for their hard work anyway. Then he reminded them of their next step, clearing the Seoul Station dungeon 25 times, as fast as possible. Both Shin and Yoo-hyun were confused at first, but Hyukjin just nodded, saying it'd be easy. It was all part of the early riser condition anyway. Once he explained the logic, they understood grinding fast would give them an edge. Shin agreed, determined as ever, and Yoo-hyun said they'd finish it in a blink. Sunhwa, meanwhile, asked what she should do since she was a tanker. Hyukjin told her to head home for now, he'd be late. But when he noticed that clingy, almost sisterly attachment she had, he chuckled and promised he'd bring her ice cream later. That worked like magic. She lit up instantly, and Sophie let her leave, though Hyukjin couldn't help but think it was wild how much that girl loved ice cream. Not long after, he spotted the massive escalator leading up to the second floor of the beginner's tower. Only 15 people could teleport through it at once, but right now, it was completely empty. It required 100 coins to activate, and Hyukjin, without hesitation, paid up and started climbing. Senya was watching silently, clearly thinking he was wasting his money. She even admitted it, spending coins to go up wouldn't achieve anything. But Hyukjin knew that too. The point wasn't to get something right now, it was to see. Originally, the second floor of the beginner tower wasn't even supposed to open automatically, which meant someone had already forced it open again. That someone was the infamous Demon King, the same mysterious player who led the Demon King's army, known as the Nightmare. 10 years ago, his identity had stayed hidden, but his actions left chaos everywhere. Every historic disaster after the Cataclysm had his fingerprints on it. He was also the first player to ever climb the second floor of the beginner's tower and claim the bonus from it. The system didn't just reward him though, the first few players got bonuses too. That meant whoever opened the second floor this time might still be up there, and odds were, it was the Demon King again. Then it hit. A surge of pressure slammed into Hyukjin, almost crushing him. His eye of perception flickered and went offline, making it feel like his vision was being stabbed out from inside. Even through the pain, he caught a glimpse. Someone was up there, someone terrifying. For a split second, he was sure it was the Demon King himself. His whole body froze, his muscles locked up, his breathing went shallow. Then, just as suddenly, the eye of perception forcefully reactivated, and the figure vanished, probably for the best. Hyukjin had zero interest in picking a fight with that monster anyway. He could reach his goals just fine without getting stomped by a living disaster. So instead, he calmly told Senya to open the secret item shop. That caught her off guard. She didn't expect him to know about that. She confirmed that, yes, it existed, but it had cost 50,000 coins to use. Hyukjin didn't even blink he had the money, and he opened it right away. For most beginners, that was insane. Spending 50k just to access a shop for 60 seconds was madness. Each item was limited stock, one per player. Technically possible for a beginner to afford, sure, but no one would ever waste their entire fortune for a 1-minute window. Hyukjin, though, wasn't just anyone. The system triggered the open bonus, and his bargain seller perk kicked in, unlocking extra deals. That's when it all clicked. He had been saving up those 70,000 coins specifically for this exact moment. He immediately bought the high-level assistant scroll, an enchanted item designed to boost progression and had a high chance of upgrading one's class rank. Senya finally understood why he'd been hoarding coins and chasing that exact amount. It wasn't random luck or greed, it was strategy. Every move had been pre-planned, maybe even seen ahead of time in one of his precognitive dreams. But deep down, even she had to admit it was eerie, way too precise. This player wasn't normal. Dream or not, what Hyukjin was doing blurred the line between knowing the future and straight-up cheating fate. The one-eyed bastard of an administrator finally shows up, whining that this might be some kind of bug in the system. So, they send a request to Neptune to investigate, but instead of Hyukjin stepping forward, he flips it around and tells Neptune to come over if he wants to scan him so bad. That smug tone pisses Neptune off immediately. Then Hyukjin straight up calls him a pygmy, which just sets the guy ablaze with rage. Neptune tries flexing his authority, using the power of forced submission to make Hyukjin kneel. But of course, our boy doesn't budge. He just glares back like, "Try me again, asshole." That arrogance? It drives Neptune nuts. I mean, this was a mid-tier administrator, and here's a mere human casually shitting on him in front of everyone. Neptune tries to play the big boss, saying Hyukjin should know his place, probably thinking the kid's grown bold just because he's got Senya, the naive angelic type, backing him up. But Hyukjin? He's not buying that bullshit. He stands his ground and even warns Neptune that he can't kill him no matter how hard he tries. Neptune's whole vibe screams power trip. He's pissed that this insignificant human dared to talk back, while Hyukjin's just pointing out the obvious. He only called him a pygmy because, well, that is the damn name of his race. But Neptune still plays the victim, pretending Hyukjin's being rude. Then he tries to lecture him like a teacher scolding a kid, saying he's crossed the line and deserves punishment. But before things get ugly, the Lady of the Scales herself steps in. She sides with Hyukjin, dropping her divine power of innocent until proven guilty. Instantly, Neptune's forced submission shatters. The invisible weight crushing Hyukjin's body just disappears, and our guy rises up with that cold-ass smile like, "You done yet?" Then things get even wilder. The true master of the celestial demonic mountain, the dude who absolutely despises cowards, activates a special rule. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Neptune panics and tries to stop it, but no one gives a damn. Whatever authority he had left just crumbles. Through that power, Hyukjin's stats spike like crazy. His perception kicks in, letting him peek at Neptune's info. Turns out, the pompous fool's not that impressive after all. But since Hyukjin's still not at full proficiency, he can't see everything. At that point, he knows he could stomp Neptune in a one-on-one fight. But doing that live on stream? Nah, not worth it. Neither the Guardians nor he needed that drama. So he waits it out, hoping the system check wraps up soon. And sure enough, the result comes out, no bugs found. Neptune looks like a total clown. Hyukjin throws one last jab, daring him to accuse him again without proof. Neptune fumbles, mutters an apology, face red as hell. Later that night, things shift back to reality. Hyukjin's sister's low-key pissed because even after she spent time cooking dinner, the guy went and ate outside. Their mom's just laughing, teasing her about why she suddenly made stew. She tries to play it off, saying the kitchen just looked nice, but her mom's smirk says it all. Meanwhile, Sunhwa's wondering what Hyukjin's up to now. He's in his room, checking his notifications, and notices a non-aggression pact from Neptune, basically a peace deal. There's also a shiny new item, the Pygmy's Ring, forged by a dwarf blacksmith, super rare stuff. Now, Hyukjin's got choices to make. He logs into the player community site. It's kinda evolved into this hub where players hang out and trade info. There, he spots a recruitment post, a team looking for a tank to tackle something called the Short Table Dungeon. The poster's nickname is hilariously cringe, but Hyukjin knows that guy's destined to become a legend 10 years from now, Lord Flame, Choi Sung-do. And that dungeon? It ain't like Soul Station or any of the standard ones. This one's got a twist. You can clear it multiple times for stacked rewards. Sounds like a pain in the ass, but the payoff? Worth every bit of blood and grind. The Short Table Dungeon, that freaky little death trap that popped up only during special events, was back, and players were already dying left and right, trying to clear it. Even Soul Station Dungeon was claiming lives daily. Raid posts were dead silent, barely anyone responding, and that's when Hyukjin saw his shot. Dude decided to hop in as a level 25 tank. Yeah, risky as hell, but money doesn't wait. He needed a dungeon that actually paid off, even if it meant stepping straight into a fire pit. Dungeons weren't death sentences, they were jackpot zones for the crazy ones brave enough to dive in. So he heads to Konchak University Station, bringing just one person along. At first, that sounded dumb as shit, but it actually made him happy. Fewer people meant bigger loot cuts. Most would call it suicide, he called it math. That dungeon hadn't even been cleared before, and here he was planning to enter it with a half-sized squad. Soon, he met this dude with the nickname Jayangdong Firemaster. Hyukjin came with Sunhwa, meeting the guy for the first time. The man looked like a skeleton now, but 10 years down the line, he'd balloon into a damn beach ball. Turns out, this was Choi Sung-ji. Hyukjin activates his eye of perception to check him out, but something weird happens. His scan gets blocked. A guardian was meddling. That was rare as hell for someone below level 30. Sunhwa asks if everything's good, and Hyukjin brushes it off. Choi, meanwhile, seems surprised seeing a little girl tagging along. He's like, what the hell? She's just a kid. But Sunhwa snaps right back, she ain't one. Still, Choi's the soft-hearted type when it comes to kids, unlike Juwon. He tries yelling at her to leave, but she's not listening to anyone except Hyukjin. The man sighs, realizing there's no reasoning with this bunch. They talk about the next portal, and Hyukjin brings up the monster waiting inside a fire horse, level 32, spirit type, mane and tail made of straight-up flames, leaving burning footprints wherever it walks. Choi sighs like, you've gotta be kidding me. But deep down, he's intrigued. He's got that itch for a good fight. The dude even admits he's fought the thing before and managed to cut its HP in half solo. That's why he's still alive. Apparently, the fire horse doesn't chase weaklings, which makes this dungeon more like an open challenge than a death wish. They move through the tunnels, Choi talking about some guys in black cow masks he'd smoked earlier, probably black yaks. The dungeon seemed like a one-time instance, so the mobs didn't respawn. Then they reach a dead-end path, the gateway. Beyond it lies the fire horse's field. Choi still can't believe they brought a kid into the mess, but warns her to run if things go sideways. Sunhwa nods, but Hyukjin can already tell she's getting seriously pissed. They step into the field and there it is, the level 35 fire horse, burning bright and roaring like hell itself. Hyukjin's eye of perception can't read much since his proficiency's still low, but he doesn't care. He tells Choi to flank from the side and cut its HP down to 40%. If he's got a crit buff, pop it now. Choi looks stunned like, how'd he even know I had that? But Hyukjin doesn't wait, he signals Sunhwa, and they charge. The battle's insane. Fire erupts everywhere, hooves blazing, but their coordination's flawless. Choi watches for a moment, realizing these two don't need babysitting. So, he finally jumps in, activating Fatal Flames. Boom, 3% critical. He keeps stacking that skill, each strike boosting his crit rate even higher. The fire horse keeps taking hits non-stop. Then it starts charging up some ritual, the ground lighting up under its hooves. Hyukjin shouts for them to pull the thing from their inventories. Next second he uses Flash Step and dives in again. And guess what the thing was? A goddamn fire extinguisher. Choi's jaw drops. The bastard actually brought a real extinguisher to fight a fire monster. But hell, it works. Once the fire horse's HP hits 20%, it begins summoning its master. Flames surge everywhere, and Hyukjin yells for Choi to go all in. Choi charges up Fatal Flames one more time, landing a fat 36% crit. The monster screams, collapses, and boom, they win. Hyukjin praises Choi for clutching it, but Choi laughs and calls them both bastards for hiding the extinguisher. Still, deep down, he's proud. Then Sunhwa spots a glowing item on the ground, Flame Essence. It's an awakening material that amps up fire-based powers big time. Hyukjin's confused why it dropped, and Choi's surprised too, especially when Hyukjin tells him to check the item details. Turns out, the condition to use it is having the blessing of the Sunset Giant. That's when it clicks, the damn Guardian chose Choi. This whole dungeon? A setup by the Sunset Giant to awaken him. When Choi drinks the essence, the dungeon's true identity is revealed. It's a training ground crafted just for him. The guy feels kinda guilty, saying Hyukjin did most of the work, but Hyukjin waves it off. They agree Choi will get priority on the next loot drop to even things out. With that settled, they move deeper through the second portal, straight into the ravine of fire. The air is scorching, a river of molten lava about 7 meters wide cutting through their path. On the other side lies riches, but to reach it, they have to cross that burning hell. Choi's like, bro, we'll melt before we make it halfway. Hyukjin realizes the cruel truth the Sunset Giant only intended for Choi to survive this part. The fire essence's power makes him immune, but the others? Toast. He asks if Choi can handle it. Choi nods, saying, yeah, but insists they all go together. Hyukjin sighs, because, honestly, that'd just be suicide. Choi refused to leave without Hyukjin and Sunhwa, stubbornly standing his ground until they found a way to cross together. But Hyukjin calmly explained that if they attempted to cross now, they would be burned alive. He clarified that he wasn't asking Choi to abandon them, he only wanted to clear a path first before anything tragic happened, and that finally made Choi Sung-gu pause and think. Hyukjin reasoned that since Choi had consumed the flame essence and possessed the protection of a special guardian, he would be able to pass through safely. Reluctantly, Choi agreed in frustration, and before heading out, he told them to stay put and wait since he would return soon. As Choi disappeared into the blazing path, Hyukjin, through his eye of perception, clearly saw the man's unwavering loyalty. Sunhwa, however, couldn't hide her concern and asked if Choi would really be okay, to which Hyukjin simply replied that he hoped so, before turning his focus toward the item shop. After browsing for a moment, he decided to purchase a Whisper Stone, a rare tool that allowed the user to communicate privately for only 3 minutes. Using it immediately, he contacted Sania, and after a brief system confirmation, the connection was made. Through the whisper, Hyukjin told Senia to stop broadcasting him for a while, and instead focus on other players since all they were doing was standing around, which might bore the Guardians watching. Senia, however, refused in her usual cold tone, saying she would decide when and what to stream. She also added that the Guardians watching were actually more intrigued than ever, curious to see how Hyukjin planned to cross the fiery ravine. A system window soon appeared, revealing the reactions of the observing Guardians. The nameless observer was watching closely. The Lady of Scales seemed curious about his next move. The courageous Lion King dared him to challenge the River of Fire, while the Whispering Devil appeared completely bored. Still communicating through the Whisper Stone, Hyukjin told Senia his plan to make things more entertaining for the Guardians. He explained that he wanted to stage a scene where he and Sunhwa appeared to be swept into the flames, then abruptly cut the stream at that moment, only to resume it later, showing them leaping safely out of the fire. Senia immediately caught on to his intention and realized that Hyukjin must already have figured out a solid way to cross the River of Fire. Hyukjin turned to Sunhwa, telling her to climb onto his back in case the fiery river overflowed. He assured her he'd figure something out no matter what happened. At the same time, he continued whispering to Senia through the Whisper Stone, instructing her to follow his plan exactly. Senia reluctantly agreed to pause the broadcast for 30 seconds, though she couldn't help but wonder in confusion how the hell was this guy managing to speak out loud and use the Whisper Stone at the same time. Suddenly, the blazing river before them began to surge violently. A system notification flashed, explaining that the ravine of fire did not tolerate living beings near it and was now attempting to consume their life force. The flames lunged toward Hyukjin and Sunhwa, and just as planned, Senia cut the stream. With the broadcast closed, Hyukjin shouted for Sunhwa to grab his arm. Now that the Giant of Sunset couldn't see them, it was time to move. He had one shot to cross the inferno using Flash Step, a skill that didn't teleport like Warp, but instead propelled him forward in a lightning-fast line. Timing it perfectly, Hyukjin executed his plan. Flames roared around them as he carried Sunhwa through the burning chaos, his body enduring heat that would have reduced anyone else to ashes. Fortunately, he'd come prepared. The Manhwa's cuirass he wore granted +3 fire resistance and a defense of 7, protecting him from multiple debuffs. It was the same piece of armor that had helped him clear the Soul Station dungeon, an item he had worked hard to get despite the Guardian's earlier complaints about his boring stream. But then, a sudden alert flashed. The cuirass had been exposed to extreme thermal energy and was now destroyed. Without wasting a second, Hyukjin equipped the Pygmy's ring he had received from the Intermediate Administrator Neptune, which gave +5 fire resistance. Yet, the ring couldn't withstand the inferno either, and shattered almost instantly. The situation grew dire, until he remembered the Tailor Six-Tail Fox from Mount Inwang. He activated its tail, which drastically boosted his fire affinity and resistance. With that final push, he poured all his strength into the leap, diving through the raging blaze. Moments later, Hyukjin and Sunhwa crashed hard onto the rocky ground beyond the flames, the air still searing around them. His body burned with the after effects of the heat, but they had made it. They had crossed the ravine of fire. A system window appeared, announcing a new title, Incendiary. A smirk spread across Hyukjin's face as he read the title's description. It granted +5 fire affinity and +5 fire resistance, plus a 10% increase in damage when using fire attribute attacks while reducing damage taken from fire. Sunhwa beamed, saying she'd received the same title, and Hyukjin already knew what that meant. This title could eventually evolve into Immortal Fire God. Ironically, this achievement was supposed to belong to Choi Sung-gu, not them. Their daring stunt through the flames had left their clothes charred and half-burned, prompting Hyukjin to glance at Sunhwa and tell her calmly to go buy some clothes from the shop first. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Choi was trudging through the wall of fire, the heat far worse than what he'd faced against the fire horse earlier. Every step burned like hell, but he didn't stop. Gritting his teeth, he kept pushing forward until the system finally chimed in. The short table dungeon had been successfully cleared, and it was now calculating rewards. That was when Hyukjin realized Choi had made it. Still, it had taken them nearly 6 hours to clear the dungeon. As for rewards, Hyukjin's level shot up to 27, and he received 1/3 of an unknown map fragment. Judging by that, Hyukjin immediately knew Choi was the one destined to collect the entire map. It was probably tied to his next personal dungeon. Soon after, the dungeon faded away, and the group found themselves standing in an alleyway. And there was Choi buck naked, with only his half-burned underwear hanging on. The moment he spotted Hyukjin, a wave of relief hit him so hard that he actually teared up. He rushed forward, hugged Hyukjin tight, thanking the gods that they'd made it out alive. Poor guy had clearly been terrified it took him way too long to finish that dungeon. Meanwhile, the Whispering Demon was oddly amused by the reunion, while a new guardian, wrapped in blue light, started paying attention to Hyukjin. Even the Giant of Sunset seemed astonished by what he saw. Trying to pull himself together, Choi fished out the reward he had promised Hyukjin. It was none other than the Tome of the Divine Fire Physique, a ridiculously rare magic tome, so rare that fewer than 10 copies had ever appeared in a decade. Using it would allow anyone to become a world-class ranker with ease. But there was a catch. The moment Hyukjin took it, the Flame Lord Choi Sung-gu would cease to exist. Hyukjin wasn't scared of changing the future, but he knew accepting it would enrage the Giant of Sunset, who might even try to kill him, breaking rules if he had to. And even though that guardian was supposed to be law-abiding, he was still an annoying bastard. So Hyukjin decided to take a different approach. Instead of directly claiming the tome, he focused his mind on something else, the map fragment he had received as part of the reward. That, he knew, would be the key to what came next. Hyukjin and Choi soon made their way to the Tower D, first floor, to officially seal their deal through a contract. The notary NPC, Senna, verified everything, and announced that the contract had been successfully registered with the registration fee to be covered by player Choi Sung-gu. Choi gave Hyukjin a puzzled look, asking if he always solved his problems in such a complicated way. Hyukjin simply shrugged and said it depended on the situation. In this particular contract, Hyukjin allowed Choi to keep the Tome of the Divine Fire physique, but in return, he would receive 3% of Choi's total profits and gain the right to join Choi's personal scenarios in the future. Now that both were officially registered as allies, Hyukjin was confident that the Giant of Sunset wouldn't dare touch him. Choi, however, wasn't satisfied. He insisted Hyukjin take at least 30%, but Hyukjin refused, saying 3% was more than enough. He already knew how tough it was to earn even 1% under that overbearing guardian's gaze. With everything settled, Choi chuckled and waved goodbye, telling Hyukjin to call him for the next mission. Hyukjin already knew they'd meet again soon in about 10 days. As the two parted ways, Sunhwa tugged at Hyukjin's sleeve, saying she wanted to eat tonkatsu. Without hesitation, Hyukjin nodded after everything they'd just been through. A warm meal sounded perfect. As the duo rode in the taxi, Hyukjin's gaze drifted outside and caught sight of the U-Plex building, a spot where another 7th-floor dungeon was soon expected to appear, and that alone was enough for him to plan on scouting the area before it opened. Soon after, they arrived at the Go Chicken Corner, and the moment Sunhwa's favorite dish landed on the table, her face lit up with pure joy. Hyukjin casually asked if she liked the food, and she nodded, saying it was super good, her tone full of excitement. As she ate, memories from her orphanage days came flooding back, how she used to save every 10 or 20 cents she got as allowance just to visit a small snack stand once in a while, dreaming of eating a $5 tonkatsu someday. But her warden would always mock her for it, sneering at her, and reminding her how pathetic it was for a poor girl like her to dream of something so simple. Hearing that, Hyukjin realized how much the girl had endured, and couldn't help but think the world really was a messed up shit of a place. Still, Sunhwa's smile didn't fade. She said she was just thankful to finally have a family, promising Hyukjin that she'd do her best from now on and never be a burden. Hyukjin just leaned back, telling her to relax, reminding her she wasn't his employee, she was just someone worth caring about. On the 23rd of June 2018, just 2 days from now, a dungeon was set to appear in Peace Park, Paju. It wasn't just any dungeon. It would have the highest difficulty among beginner grade ones, far tougher than the Seoul Station dungeon, and destined to claim countless lives once it opened. And as if that wasn't enough, in just 5 days, Choi Sung-gu's personal scenario dungeon would also begin. Every single day leading up to that point, Hyukjin had been planning and calculating his every move. He knew he couldn't afford to drift with the flow anymore. He had to be the architect of his own fate. Peace Park had to be cleared. That wasn't optional. But right now, he simply wasn't strong enough to take it on. To even stand a chance, a player needed to be at least level 30, and Hyukjin wasn't there yet. So he sat down, focused, and began scribbling out a plan on paper, his roadmap to survival and strength before the storm hit. June 23rd, the scene shifts to Seoul Station, where chaos and order clashed in perfect sync. The news blared across every screen, reporters announcing that the 22nd Players Association, established by the Emergency Committee, had officially begun operations. Its first CEO, Song Ki-young, head of Sungshin Group, was now stepping into the spotlight. For years, he had been the shadow leader behind the committee, and now he was its face. Amid all this, Hyukjin arrived at the station gates with Sunhwa by his side. The guards immediately halted him, demanding proof of citizenship. Calm as ever, Hyukjin handed over his ID and introduced Sunhwa as his family member. Once verified, the massive container gate rumbled open, revealing the dungeon entrance beyond. Standing before it, Hyukjin could tell the government had finally taken full control over gate management and player activity. The era of unregulated chaos was over. Player association operations had officially begun on a national scale. As Hyukjin and Sunhwa stepped inside, a system window flashed, confirming their entry into the Seoul Station dungeon. The moment they vanished into the dungeon, one of the stationed guards quietly grabbed his communicator, reporting their entry. On the other end, a voice ordered him to keep a close eye on player Kim Hyukjin. That information quickly reached a man in a sharp suit, who then passed it directly to CEO Song. Hearing that Hyukjin had entered the Seoul Station dungeon for the 30th time, the CEO's brows lifted in surprise. 30 times. No one had ever cleared it that fast. The man in the suit explained that Hyukjin's speed was incomparable, and he likely had a unique strategy only his team knew. He listed his party members Su Yu-hyun, Shin Yeon-seo, and Kim Sunhwa. The mention of Sunhwa made the CEO pause for a moment. He remembered being the one who helped process her adoption papers. And when he'd first met Hyukjin back then, the boy's fearless gaze had left an impression, those sharp, unshaken eyes that looked straight through him. As he gazed out the window, CEO Song pondered how fast the world was evolving. The U.S. and Japan had already authorized players to use personal firearms, propelling their power levels far beyond Korea's. South Korea had been the first to experience the so-called tutorial disaster, yet it was falling behind. If they didn't keep up, they'd be erased from the race. Turning to his subordinate, the CEO gave a decisive order. In our Taeguk guild, we need someone who can stand at the top, "We need Kim Hyuk-jin." The man in the suit blinked in shock and asked what position they should offer him. When the CEO replied, "Guildmaster," the man froze. Everyone had assumed that title would go to Song Jin-sok, the CEO's own grandson. But the old man wasn't sentimental, he saw only results. "Time won't wait for us," CEO Song said coldly. "If we don't act now, we might lose him forever. Make sure my intentions are delivered carefully." As his subordinate hurried out, the CEO leaned back, memories of Hyuk-jin flickering in his mind, that arrogant glint in his eyes, that unshakable confidence. To him, Hyuk-jin wasn't just another player, he was a diamond, one who could propel Sungshin 10 steps ahead. And when the time came, CEO Song would make sure to sharpen that diamond into a blade, one that would cut and bite for Sungshin, like a loyal hunting dog. The scene shifts to Hyuk-jin, standing before the shattered remains of the crystal he just destroyed, marking the dungeon's completion. The system's message flashes before him, announcing that he has cleared the Seoul Station dungeon 30 times, unlocking a hidden piece in the process. A special title becomes available, First Pioneer, one that connects directly to the discovery of this hidden piece after 30 clears. Players who bear the title of First Pioneer can trigger unique linked scenarios, and such events can occur up to 3 times. Right now, one of those scenarios has been activated. The new scenario indicates a sudden rise in both the difficulty and the rewards of the hidden field within the Seoul Station dungeon. The system asks Hyuk-jin whether he wants to link the 30 Seoul Station dungeon clears with the First Pioneer title to begin the linked scenario. Sunhwa glances at him curiously, wondering if he also received a hidden piece notification, and asks whether they should enter again, but Hyuk-jin decides it's time to wrap up for the day. The hidden field was something that used to appear only after ordinary players reached around level 30, and with Hyuk-jin and his team still in their mid to late 20s as rankers, pushing forward now would just be unnecessary greed. Choosing to hold off on linking the title, he decides they'll challenge the next floor tomorrow. As their figures slowly fade from the dungeon, Hyuk-jin recalls that Yoo-hyun and Yeon-seo had already completed around 28 clears, and he should have told them to get to the 30th clear. The next day, Hyuk-jin and his team once again stepped into the Seoul Station dungeon. The system confirmed that the special condition of 30 dungeon clears had been fulfilled, unlocking the hidden scenario that allowed entry into the underground second floor. A prompt appeared, asking if the team wished to proceed below, and without hesitation, Hyuk-jin took the lead, telling his team to prepare. They were heading down. He already knew the dangers that awaited them there. The second floor of the Seoul Station dungeon was far more brutal than the first, packed with stronger monsters and completely devoid of safe zones. That meant no time to breathe, no room to rest, and a high risk of being ambushed the very moment they teleported in. And just as Hyuk-jin predicted, an arrow came flying the instant they arrived. Sunhwa reacted instantly, her platinum shield flashing as she deflected the shot. Her shield had evolved so much that its form now shimmered visibly in front of her, a testament to her natural tanking instincts. She didn't even need to see the attack to block it, just a warning was enough for her to move. Yeon-seo, startled, tried to find where the arrow came from, and Hyuk-jin immediately realized they were up against a skilled ranged enemy. The system issued their first flashed quest, eliminate the orc archer first. Spotting the creature, Hyuk-jin drew his blade, knowing this was no ordinary foe. From this point onward, the monsters weren't the kind that could be easily killed with modern weapons. Orcs and creatures above their rank had resistance to such tools, making them true monsters. Ahead of them stood a group of 10 orcs, each around level 27, while the level 28 orc archer remained hidden behind them, firing from a distance. Another arrow shot through the air, and Sunhwa barely managed to block it, though the effort left her drained. Even an excellent tank like her could only endure so much. Hyuk-jin could tell she wouldn't hold for long. He called out to Yeon-seo, signaling her to follow him closely and stay 3 steps behind him. As the archer loosed another arrow, Hyuk-jin made his move, sprinting straight toward the oncoming orcs. 2 of the orcs charged at him with blades raised, and as the first one swung, Hyuk-jin slipped past effortlessly. From this floor onward, everything depended on teamwork, every member moving in sync without waiting for orders. Only true, coordinated parties could survive here. Any explicit command could slow them down and turn into a fatal mistake. Hyuk-jin and Yeon-seo dashed through the orcs' formation with blinding speed. Yeon-seo, trying to keep up, could barely process what was happening. Hyuk-jin was weaving through narrow gaps between the orcs while dodging arrows, his movements sharp and precise. The orcs' sheer size made them react slower, always a half beat behind. That tiny lag made all the difference. But for Yeon-seo, it turned the path into chaos. Struggling to match his pace, she activated her skill, the movement art of the heavenly demonic flying step. Hyuk-jin glanced back just long enough to see her executing it properly. The heavenly demonic flying step was a technique granted by the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain himself, and though Yeon-seo's proficiency was still at the beginner stage, it was enough to throw the sluggish orcs into confusion. Meanwhile, Sunhwa deflected another arrow, and with it she finally reached her limit, her arms trembling as her strength finally began to fade. Back on Hyukjin's side, he finally closed in on the orc archer, sprinting straight toward the beast with his sword drawn. In a sharp flash of motion, he shifted to the creature's left flank and slashed deep across its shoulder. Without missing a beat, he called out for Yanseo to strike from behind, guiding her to aim precisely at the back of its head using her special skill. Excellent strike. Yanseo followed through flawlessly, driving her weapon into the exact spot Hyukjin indicated. The system confirmed the kill, rewarding her 31 coins along with a surge of experience points. The successful hit lit a spark of confidence in Yanseo. Dodging and picking off the orcs one by one suddenly felt easier, almost manageable. For a moment, she even believed this floor might be less brutal than the first, but that thought vanished in an instant when another arrow came flying straight toward her, and she knew she couldn't dodge it in time. Before the impact, Hyukjin darted in from the side, kicking her out of the arrow's path just in time to save her. Landing back on his feet, he snapped her back to focus, making it clear that losing concentration here meant death. Realizing her mistake, Yonseo steadied herself, tightening her grip and locking back onto the fight. Meanwhile, Sunhwa stood firm, with her platinum shield raised high, breathing heavily as exhaustion crept up her arms. She gritted her teeth, knowing she just had to hold out for one more strike. At the same time, another level 28 orc archer drew his bow, locking his next deadly shot directly onto her position, while Sunhwa braced herself, determined to block whatever came next. Hyukjin and Yanseo charged straight toward the next group of orcs, locking onto their new target, the second orc archer. The duo moved in perfect sync, slipping past the swings and slashes of the orc warriors with sharp, fluid precision. Hidden behind them, the orc archer began to panic, realizing death was closing in fast. Within moments, Hyukjin and Yonseo reached him, unleashing their strongest coordinated strike, cutting down the creature in seconds. The system confirmed the kill, rewarding them with experience and coins as their victory echoed through the dungeon. Meanwhile, somewhere deeper inside, Yuhyun was carving his own path, smashing through walls as he made his way toward the crystal. Once that crystal was destroyed, they would clear the first gateway of the path. Staring at it, Yuhyun understood instantly that it had to be taken down quickly. He sprinted through the horde of orcs, ignoring every one of them, until he stepped right into the attack range of a massive orc wielding a club. The blow came fast, and with his size and slower speed compared to Hyukjin and Yonseo, Yuhyun couldn't dodge it. He took the hit head-on, pain surging through his body, but he refused to stop. Gathering mana into his right fist, he aimed straight at the dungeon crystal and struck with full force. The crystal shattered instantly, signaling the completion of the first gateway. As it broke apart, every remaining orc froze mid-motion, petrified in place, their bodies turning lifeless. Catching her breath, Yanseo realized how close she had come to being hit earlier. Looking over at Hyukjin, she felt the weight of her mistake and offered a quiet apology for losing control. Hyukjin, still breathing heavily, shot her a cold glance, reminding her that carelessness like that could have put everyone at risk. With guilt written across her face, Yanseo nodded, promising herself to stay sharp and move more carefully from now on. Meanwhile, Sunhwa sat down to catch her breath, drinking a recovery potion to regain her strength. Watching both her and Yuhyun doing their part so efficiently made Yonseo feel a sting of frustration. Hyukjin's harsh words from the earlier battle echoed in her mind, replaying over and over. She remembered how she had frozen mid-fight, only to be saved by him, and how helpless she had felt in that moment. She also remembered the day her mother got hurt, and the promise she made to protect the people around her no matter what. But deep down, she knew she wasn't strong enough yet to keep that promise. She needed to change, to grow powerful enough to repay the debt she owed Hyukjin. In the present, that thought burned inside her. She internalized a fierce determination to become as strong as Hyukjin himself. But that conviction didn't go unnoticed. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain sensed her resolve and intervened. The system suddenly displayed a message that left both Hyukjin and Yonseo stunned. The true master wished to grant her power. He offered her the Heavenly Demon title, explaining that if she accepted it, her advancement would occur automatically. Hyukjin quickly understood the weight of what was happening. Normally, an advancement like this only occurred when a guardian made a contract with a player at level 30, but this was different. The true master was trying to forcibly advance Yonseo by granting her a title effect, and not just any title, but a guardian title. It was an unbelievably powerful gift, one that Hyukjin recognized immediately. It was the same title once held by the future Sword Empress herself. The very thought of it shook him. In his past life, Shin Yonseo, the Sword Empress, had been one of the most powerful players in existence. She was unmatched in one-on-one battles, the strongest duelist alive. Yet even she had reached her limit. It had taken 8 heroes of her caliber just to face the Demon King. That was as far as her power could go. If Hyukjin were to accept the Heavenly Demon title now, he would inherit that same limit. But having returned to the past, he no longer wanted to follow the same path. He wanted to surpass the Sword Empress and break beyond those boundaries. With that thought firm in his heart, Hyukjin refused the title. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, sensing his decision, fell into silence, deeply disappointed and filled with regret over the choice Hyukjin had made. Looking at Hyukjin, Yonseo curiously asked if he had also received the same title, and Hyukjin replied that he had, but he refused it. The answer shocked her. She asked if something was wrong with the title and whether she should accept it or not, but Hyukjin reassured her that it was a good one and told her to go ahead with it. He knew his own fighting style clearly and preferred to use his insight and intuition to guide his team. Whatever they had just faced, he couldn't have cleared it alone. Without Yonseo, Sunhwa, or Yuhyun, the victory wouldn't have been possible. His strength wasn't just in combat, but in understanding each person's abilities, identifying their advantages, and placing them exactly where they were needed most. Yonseo noticed it too. She could tell how naturally he led the group, moving as if he already knew every strategy in advance. When she pointed it out, Hyukjin explained that it was simply his special talent, his ability to assess people and command them efficiently. Hearing this, Yonseo began to understand. Every time Hyukjin took charge, she could almost see a clear path opening in front of her, like his presence itself guided her forward. He mentioned that he probably knew her better than she knew herself, and that thought left her speechless. Yonseo admitted that, when it came to swordsmanship, her talent surpassed his. But still, she blushed slightly and thanked him sincerely. Hyukjin, however, knew something she didn't. The title offered by the true master of the heavenly demonic mountain could only be granted to one person. If he had accepted it, Yonseo might have been forced to take a lesser one. Since they were teammates, he couldn't let that happen. The heavenly demon title suited her far better, and he made sure she understood that. Knowing that the guardian was still watching, Yonseo decided to show her respect and gratitude. Hyukjin added that with her hidden potential, she could make that title shine brighter than anyone else. In his mind, he genuinely believed she could even become one of the most famous players in the world. The guardian seemed to take his words to heart, clearly pleased by his praise and the faith he showed in Yonseo. Encouraged by that, she accepted the title. The moment she did, a wave of energy flickered through her body, marking her advancement as the aura settled around her. Overwhelmed with excitement, Yonseo turned to tell Hyukjin about it, but he stopped her mid-sentence, placing his hand over her mouth. He reminded her that she didn't need to talk about everything, even to her own party members. A seasoned player always kept their guardian's identity and abilities secret, hiding their titles and powers until the right time. He expected Yonseo to do the same, to use her new title wisely and strategically. As his hand lingered on her face, Yonseo suddenly grew shy, her cheeks turning red, and Hyukjin couldn't help but wonder why she was reacting like that. Before he could think further, a system window appeared in front of the team, notifying them that the duration of the first gateway had expired. They were about to be transported automatically to the second gateway. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings shifted, and the group found themselves standing in an open field filled with tents, the entrance to the second gateway, known as the Village of the Orc Warrior. Scanning the area, Yuhyun looked around, wondering if they would be fighting orcs again. Just then, another system alert popped up for Hyukjin, informing him that the Village of the Orc Warrior scenario had been partially altered, immediately catching his attention. The altered conditions were listed clearly. The first change was that the perk allowing orc warriors to become petrified when the crystal was destroyed had been removed. The second change was that the level restriction preventing orc warriors from growing stronger in this gateway was also lifted. Finally, the system revealed the main quest: if they failed to destroy 3 crystals within 10 minutes, orc archers would spawn. Hyukjin's expression hardened. This scenario was completely different from the one he remembered from his past life, and that realization frustrated him deeply. As the team scanned their surroundings, 2 orcs began approaching, spotting the group from a distance. Yuhyun cracked his knuckles and prepared for battle, while Yonseo looked to Hyukjin for guidance. Remaining calm, Hyukjin picked up a sturdy rod from the ground and decided they would handle this the standard way. He instructed his team to hold off the orcs as much as possible, while he focused on destroying the 3 crystals within the time limit fast and without fail. A quiet tension settled over him as frustration simmered beneath the surface. He knew he couldn't handle an additional wave of orc archers on top of the warriors already here. The battle needed to end before that 10-minute mark. Glancing toward a particular tent nearby, his expression darkened. His gut told him something dangerous was inside. As he recognized what it was, he silently cursed his fate for being thrown into a place like this, because within that tent waited a monster far beyond what they could handle right now. Hyukjin understood that scenarios sometimes shifted whenever a player leveled up too fast. While glancing back at Yonseo, he sensed that this sudden change had happened because she carried the title of Heavenly Demon. Without that title, the script would have shifted only through player influence. He also knew that if the orcs were not petrified, wiping them out would be a serious pain. The level limit on the orc warrior had vanished as well, turning it into the kind of monster that grew nastier the longer a fight dragged on. From the look of the village, Hyukjin felt that the orc warrior was not absurdly high in level, but the players still carried a disadvantage. His only real fear now was the possibility that the orc warrior had already hit something around level 37 or maybe even 40. New orcs began spilling out of the village, and the players had barely 8 minutes left. Hyukjin could feel the urgency clawing at him, because without petrification, a direct fight with the orc warrior was unavoidable. He decided to start by grabbing the iron sword he had picked up earlier and focused on stopping the damn archer from appearing. He avoided revealing that he already knew where the crystals were, and instead casually guided the group toward a tent while insisting they avoid the orcs. Very briefly, he explained that Yonseo would move toward a point on the right side, while Sunhwa and Yuhyun would head to the left together. As he drew his sword, he calculated the plan in his head. With this setup, 2 of the crystals would definitely get destroyed, and he would take care of the last one himself. The moment an orc swung at him, Hyukjin was already sprinting at full speed, attempting to slip past it. He managed to evade the strike, just as the orc smashed its weapon into the ground. He knew the final crystal was inside the orc warrior's tent, so he headed straight for it. A notification appeared, telling him the first crystal had been destroyed, and he assumed Yonseo had taken care of it. That title of hers practically guaranteed the sluggish orcs would never catch her. Once she reached him, she immediately reported her success and mentioned that the pursuing orcs had eventually given up. When Hyukjin acknowledged her effort, she reacted with surprise, and he responded with clear reassurance before focusing again on the objective. As he approached the tent, he checked inside with caution, while Yonseo stayed behind. Loud, heavy snoring echoed inside. Every orc within the tent, including the orc warrior, lay asleep. Since petrification effects were gone, the players would be forced into a fight, which added a layer of difficulty. Even so, Hyukjin formed a new plan. He pulled out a small bag from his inventory and began giving Yonseo her next set of instructions. Meanwhile, noise erupted outside as countless orcs chased after Sunhwa and Yuhyun. Spotting his comrades in a messy retreat, Hyukjin called for them to fight their way through and piss off as many orcs as possible. He instructed Yonseo to strike each orc while Sunhwa distracted them. A heartbeat later, one orc was already pouring blood after Yonseo drove her sword into its neck. As the creature staggered, Hyukjin thought about how Sunhwa and Yuhyun would definitely drag the orcs back like bait. In that setup, Yonseo only needed to land bleeding strikes and keep moving. Soon, she activated her swift strike ability and tore through the orcs one after another. Her movements became so damn fast that tracking her was nearly impossible, and the orcs barely had time to react. But during one of these rapid attacks, something went wrong. Yonseo misstepped, and Sunhwa suddenly threw herself forward to shield her, because danger loomed ahead. Without Sunhwa, the monster's club would have smashed straight into Yonseo. Sunhwa braced with her platinum shield, but the impact was still brutal, ripping pain through her left arm. The sharp crack of the hit echoed through the area, and the orc warrior jolted awake. His eyes snapped open, and he rose from his spot with a guttural growl. One by one, the rest of the orcs woke as well, stirred by the commotion. While watching from the side, Hyukjin instantly recognized that the entire group had snapped out of their sleep. He considered the crystal, but realized running toward it would trap them with no escape. At that point, he understood the only option left was to kill every last monster that had awakened from its slumber. As soon as the monsters spotted the player, they rushed at him like brainless beasts hungry for a kill. Hyukjin made the fight easier for himself by deciding to pick them off one by one, so he stepped onto the lowered club and climbed up with sharp precision. The moment he reached the top, he slashed the first orc's throat clean, killing the bastard instantly. He kept his distance as carefully as possible, knowing one dumb move would screw him over, and a moment later, he slit the throat of the second orc just as fast. The orc warrior watched everything from the side, drooling like some freak as it glared at the guy. Seeing the chance, Hyukjin gave a subtle signal to his team, and within seconds his comrades stormed into the tent, dragging an entire group of orcs behind them. The tent was already drenched in the smell of blood because of Hyukjin's earlier attacks, and that heavy metallic stench spread everywhere. The orc warrior growled, driven wild by the scent. Suddenly, the creature grabbed the orc next to him, ripped off his damn hand with a vicious bite, and then seized another orc who tried to run. Hyukjin's team watched the scene with pure horror twisting in their eyes, unable to believe how brutal the monster looked. Yonseo remembered Hyukjin's earlier claim about the warrior being weak to the smell of blood, and the whole scene proved him right as the crazed orc slaughtered his own tribe. One orc somehow managed to run off, but before he got far, the warrior's unique ability activated. The escaping orc froze on the spot like his whole body just shut down. A smirk appeared on Hyukjin's face because he knew exactly what that meant. The orc couldn't move at all, trapped under the spreading fear ability, something most boss-type monsters carried to stop players from running. But Hyukjin flipped that shit on the orcs instead, knowing the warrior found his own kind more tempting. The ability took ages to recover, so the bastard wasted it and still managed to evolve into a superior orc warrior. The players watched in shock as the monster's body grew bigger. Yeonseo's worry deepened, and Yoo-hyun silently confirmed her fear. Hyukjin caught his breath and quietly noted that going up against a tightly packed group led by an orc warrior would have been suicide. Fighting one oversized monster was way better than taking on a damn army. When the warrior finished leveling up, he opened his eyes and let out a furious growl before grabbing an axe and preparing to attack. Compared to its new bulked-up form, Hyukjin looked tiny as hell, but something inside him stayed steady. A sudden system task appeared, ordering him to kill the orc warrior, with the courageous Lion King offering the ability Overwhelm as a reward. The moment the orc's axe slammed into the ground, pieces of earth blasted everywhere. Hyukjin dodged and felt a rush when he realized Overwhelm was the kind of ability high rankers used to resist mental attacks, and here he was getting that badass skill in this shitty place. Sunhwa tried moving closer to help, but Hyukjin shut that down instantly. Knowing her protection meant nothing against something this damn strong, the level gap alone made any contact fatal. The orc's level wasn't even visible, meaning no one here could tank a single hit from it. As the orc swung again, Hyukjin avoided the blow and closed the distance, landing one solid strike right on the monster's head. Only Hyukjin had flash step, and only he could get close enough to deal damage. The plan to trap the monster needed time, so Hyukjin kept hitting it from behind whenever he could. Another massive swing missed him by inches. Watching from the sidelines, Yeonseo felt a surge of doubt, and Yoo-hyun could only assume Hyukjin's plan had to be doing something, or else they were all pretty much screwed. As she watched the battle, Yeonseo remembered Hyukjin's earlier explanation about the dungeon clear. When he handed her the item, she recognized it immediately. He had told her to use it on the orcs that Sunhwa and Yoo-hyun would drag in. The bag carried beast fangs that served a very specific purpose. Hyukjin had collected them from mutant wolves during the tutorial phase, and their paralyzation poison was deadly to humans. Those fangs had been scattered all over the tutorial field, and over time, he gathered dozens of them, each one capable of causing fatal paralysis. Yeonseo had driven a fang into every orc she struck, leaving each monster marked with her precise and nasty little trick. Hyukjin caught himself letting out a short, amused breath at the thought of the orc warrior devouring his own kind, along with roughly 70 of those damn fangs lodged inside them. For the moment, however, the huge bastard showed no real reaction. It was still just as furious, its rage boiling through its massive frame. Hyukjin already expected that the fangs alone would never be enough to paralyze a monster of that scale, but the slowed movement was clear, and that small edge was all he needed. Blow after blow slammed into the orc warrior, as the creature growled in frustration, unable to keep up with Hyukjin's pace. At the right moment, Hyukjin signaled Yeonseo to step in. She burst forward and slashed at the orc's side, only for the beast to block her strike with a rough, angry motion. For now, Sunhwa and Yoo-hyun stayed behind, leaving the front line to the fast swordsman. Hyukjin could tell the gap in attack and defense still existed, and the orc clearly understood it as well. The bastard sensed its body dragging sluggishly because of the embedded fangs, but it remained convinced it could still feast on humans without trouble. Saliva dripped from its jaws as it fantasized about the taste of human flesh. Its disgusting train of thought was abruptly cut off when Hyukjin smashed a metal pipe straight into its face. Hyukjin felt irritated knowing that even piercing the eyes wouldn't deliver a clean kill, but he still aimed for the same deadly spot as the orc lunged to grab him. He chose another approach and drove his sword into the orc's mouth, while shoving the iron rod deep inside. The attack hit perfectly, and the orc collapsed to the ground, writhing in unbearable pain. Hyukjin jumped back and quickly directed Yoo-hyun to strike carefully so the iron rod wouldn't slip out and the monster wouldn't clamp its mouth shut. Yoo-hyun responded instantly, hammering the orc with everything he had. His fists blurred as he delivered blow after blow, leaving the monster unable to react. When he finished the barrage, Yoo-hyun suddenly seized the orc's head, pulled it toward him, and drove his knee into its face with brutal force. The impact echoed through the room, sending the orc staggering backward. In that opening, Yeonseo activated her one-hit finisher skill and completed what she had started. The entire room exploded in a wave of blood, coating everything in the aftermath of her strike. Moments later, the system granted the players their victory reward. Unfortunately for them, killing such a powerful enemy earned them only the orc warrior's molar. The description claimed that if the item was ingested in a special way, the player might gain a special power, but for now, it felt like one hell of a cheap drop after such a brutal fight. As a reward for completing the task, Hyukjin received 2 solid items from the Great Orc Warriors set, stacking them neatly with the sick satisfaction of someone who had earned every damn piece. On top of that, he finally acquired the skill Overwhelm, something powerful enough to make any player feel like a badass. But he wasn't the only one who got it, which instantly made everyone start testing and fumbling with the ability, trying to figure out how it worked. In the middle of this chaos, Hyukjin received a sudden notification from a guardian whose title was the Herdsman of Las Vegas. The name hit him with instant familiarity. This guardian was notorious for putting huge value on team effectiveness, and for choosing only a single contractor in his entire existence. Yet he picked Hyukjin, offering him the Great Orc Warrior's leather pants without hesitation. Because that guardian decided to favor him, Hyukjin ended up collecting the entire 3-piece set, something most players would kill for. After that, the group continued wiping out the remaining orcs and grinding their levels. The whole area was eventually cleared, leaving Sunhwa genuinely happy, while Yuhyun wiped the sweat off his forehead, saying everyone had pushed themselves hard. Yeonso was already dreaming of a 3-day rest once they got out of the dungeon. Hyukjin stayed quiet, his mind stuck on the fact that they had barely scraped through the 2nd floor. Then something up ahead caught his eye and froze him mid-thought. A strange portal shimmered in front of him, something completely out of place. The others looked at him with confusion, claiming they saw nothing at all. While the system counted down their exit timer, Hyukjin felt his muscles tense, and an idea struck him like a jolt. With zero hesitation, he sprinted toward the portal at full speed. The others tried to stop him, shocked at his sudden move, but no one could catch up to the bastard. With 3 seconds left before their forced teleport, Hyukjin only had time to tell them to leave without him. He dashed straight into the portal, fully convinced it was a hidden piece that only he could perceive. The moment he passed through, he was transported into a place labeled as the Special Hidden Piece, the Forest of Unknowns, with a quest ordering him to find the master of the forest and converse with them. Hyukjin knew that special information like this always targeted talented players, and appeared as early as the tutorial phase. Whether it was an extra safe zone or an invisible door, the game loved exposing the talent gap with information disparity. If a door appeared only for him, he'd treat it as a damn privilege, and fucking use it. Upon entering the forest, he noticed a swarm of guardians suddenly joining Senia's viewing channel just to watch him. Some even spammed requests to subscribe to her stream, and tossed her coins like desperate supporters wanting a front row seat. After checking the mission details, Hyukjin frowned internally because he didn't recall anything like this forest appearing early in the game's progression. Seeing the map, he realized the forest was nearly the size of Seoul, which instantly sent a chill through him. The thought of what kind of monster ruled a place that huge was enough to make anyone feel a bit sick. One wrong move here, and someone could starve to death before even meeting the forest master. When Hyukjin mentioned he was close to level 30, Senia's surprised reaction gave him a quick reminder. Hyukjin knew that 2 things could make guardians lose their minds and go crazy over: first, a special hidden piece like this massive unknown forest, and second, a player close to hitting guardian selection. Hyukjin fit both conditions, so he wondered what kind of crazy tokens they'd throw at him now. He let out a quiet chuckle as the guardians bombarded him with survival items. Senia stared at them with shock, unsure how to respond to the overwhelming wave of support. Hyukjin felt relieved since these items weren't just useful, but valuable enough to sell for ridiculous amounts. Thanks to one nameless guardian, his eye of perception was even boosted temporarily. Senia began explaining each item, starting with a camping kit that allowed a simple zone setup. While she gave the rundown, Hyukjin checked her status window and noticed the summary calling her a woman denying her feelings. Her wings twitched as she continued explaining, holding a magical campfire that could burn for 3,000 hours straight. Hyukjin stared at the items with pure appreciation, knowing how rare this loot was. Suddenly Senia looked at him sharply and asked if he had been listening. He assured her he had been, which only made her fluster more even as she tried to act like she didn't give a damn. Feeling unsatisfied with his casual attitude, she used her administrator authority to assign him a special task he needed to repeat everything she had explained in precise detail, with 300 coins being offered as a reward. Hyukjin scratched the back of his head, surprised that she was fussing over him this much. He went through the explanation, talking about the camping kit and then about the magical campfire he currently held. When he finally finished, he realized he had actually completed the damn task correctly. Senia noted that he did great, though she insisted he should pay more attention since his survival depended on it. Hyukjin turned away, ending the interaction by reminding himself that guardians didn't enjoy long conversations between players and administrators anyway. What bothered him more was the fact that he hadn't mentioned the temporary eye of perception increase, meaning Senia had no idea about it yet. As Hyukjin wandered deeper into the forest, a low weight settled in his chest. The place was massive and unfamiliar, and he knew clearing it would take a shitload of time. Still, he kept moving, mentally repeating the task he had been assigned. When he glanced up, he noticed the sky darkening into evening. The forest followed real-world time flow, which at least helped him figure out where the west lay. He continued walking until an old piece of advice surfaced in his mind, saying that when someone didn't know where to go, heading east was the smarter bet. The dungeon had felt manageable so far, but that illusion cracked the moment he spotted a massive claw mark carved deep into the bark of a tree. By the time full darkness settled, he had already set up his camp and activated his safe zone. Senia appeared soon after, watching him with unreadable eyes, waiting for what he had learned from his exploration. Hyukjin realized immediately that the Guardians were the ones demanding the progress update. To him, Roaming the forest wasn't something thrilling anymore. He was gathering clues and handling the quest, but he knew damn well watching someone walk around and investigate trees wasn't exactly peak entertainment. Some guardians were probably already drifting off out of boredom. He gave them only the core of what mattered. This forest was a wide field area, and over the day he had seen 3 distinct sets of claw marks. All of them were carved into trees at different heights and sizes. That meant some kind of cat-like beast species existed here, each claiming their own territories. Since he hadn't found a single sign of conflict, they were clearly avoiding each other intentionally. That alone explained their boundaries. If he followed those borders, he should be able to reduce monster encounters. When night settled, nocturnal birds of prey circled overhead. That implied a strong prey species existed in the area, but he still hadn't found any trace of predator versus prey struggle. The pattern felt off, and he wondered what the hell it meant. Suddenly, several system notifications blasted through. The true master of Heavenly Demonic Mountain expressed keen interest in his breakdown. The Whispering Devil was having fun. The Courageous King was, as usual, bored out of his mind. The Lady of Scales admired his calmness. A nameless observer continued staring at him non-stop. Meanwhile, Senia just stood there, blank and silent, as if the overload of guardian reactions had stunned her. Hyukjin took a drink of water and steadied himself. It was only the first day, and he had chosen to come into this wild nowhere. He told himself to keep a clear head and not freak out. A grin crept across his face as he accepted the situation. He realized this was his first time seeing this place, and he had no damn strategy for it. All he could do was examine the traces left behind by animals. He should have been nervous, but he wasn't. Somewhere inside, the game had become even more interesting. In the dangerous passages scenario, he had been forced into a corner with no room to breathe, but here even the small details pulled something out of him. Gazing at the fire, he thought about how some people called that feeling talent, and yes, talent was exactly what he had. Still, a sad smile touched his face. He didn't want to be someone who shined only in the early game and then faded into mediocrity. He knew hitting level 40 was the only way to confirm he wasn't that type of player. Time passed quietly after that, and by the moment he looked up again, he was already on the 4th day of research. Hyukjin stepped into the raised village of the forest dwellers, a so-called safe zone that felt anything but, and it became the first useful place he had found in a while. The sight of the burned houses made him wonder if any clues even survived, yet his eyes locked onto the only building that looked the least damaged. Inside, he immediately started digging through the room, hoping something valuable remained buried under the ashes. He eventually uncovered a letter from the forest dwellers' chief, explaining that their entire village was doomed because the master of the forest had gone berserk and unleashed his wrath with no escape in sight. Hyukjin frowned at the charred paper since a portion was burned away, leaving the rest unreadable, and he tucked it into his inventory while thinking there had to be another settlement somewhere in the east. Using the information he just gathered, he felt like meeting the master of the forest might actually be possible. So he activated his eye of perception while slowly drawing his sword because a safe zone this suspicious always carried strings attached. His instincts sharpened when the skill warned him that someone was watching him from the shadows, and a faintly evil aura leaked from one corner of the room even though the place was supposedly safe. He reached out and felt an invisible barrier, refusing to let him proceed, and the system confirmed it with a notification that hinted at some specific condition he needed to fulfill. He moved toward the westernmost edge of the village and ran straight into a transparent wall, proving the map wanted something before letting him advance. While he browsed the system window in silence, a new offer popped up from the herdsman of Las Vegas, a guardian known for dangling tempting bait that usually came with hidden traps. This time, he demanded Hyukjin clear the forest of unknowns within 3 days, rewarding him with 100,000 coins if he succeeded. The amount sounded great, but the complete silence about failure felt shady, and Hyukjin knew exactly what that implied. His administrator explained that failing meant being forced to sign with the herdsman without conditions, and Hyukjin found it insane that this guardian was tossing that much money just to secure him. When she asked if he planned to accept the mission, Hyukjin kept his head low, because he already knew his answer. He refused the task since he hated pointless gambling and only bet when he had the upper hand, and clearing an entire forest map in 3 days was pure dumb luck. He walked away while thinking that relying on luck was no different from jumping straight into the mud, and the guardian watching him actually respected his choice. A few other guardians mocked him for rejecting such a mission at level 29, but Hyukjin honestly could not care less about their chatter. He shifted back to his original objective, reminding himself that he was in the western village called Dot and needed to follow the letter's hint toward the eastern village named Dante. With that decision set, he noted that he would need food for the long journey ahead. Hyukjin decided to hunt on the way and had already taken down a boar, stabbing his sword into its neck before it collapsed instantly. While pulling the blade free, he reflected on everything he had observed during the hunt, noting that the boar dropped way fewer coins than expected for its level, though it remained manageable to fight. He also recalled that boars usually stayed alert whenever predators lurked nearby. and the claw marks on the trees meant a red tiger had been here recently. Yet during the hunt, the boars acted weirdly fearless, which made him wonder if something had stopped predators from attacking them altogether. When he received a basket of fruit as a reward, he froze for a moment, because he had never heard of boars dropping something like that. He assumed it was a hidden fragment tied to survival gameplay, but even then, the entire situation felt off, especially with that constant creepy surveillance brushing against his perception skill. Someone or something inside the village kept watching him, and even with enhanced perception, he failed to track the observer, leaving him to assume the master of the forest was likely keeping an eye on him. The boy felt unsettled, convinced he was missing something important, so he pushed himself to hurry toward the eastern village without wasting time. A magic rope trap suddenly appeared on the path, surprising him since such an expensive artifact had no business lying around, but he grabbed it anyway. After some time, he reached the second raised village of the forest dwellers, another safe zone filled with burned remains. Searching one of the structures, he discovered a letter from the village chief, explaining that they were supposed to prepare a sacrifice for the master of the forest, and mentioning some kind of forest restrictions. Hyukjin could not understand what restrictions the letter referred to, or what sacrifice was being demanded. A cold thought crossed his mind that if he failed to act, he might end up like this village too. Walking out of the ruined building, he scanned the burned landscape and caught sight of a stone well that seemed suspiciously intact. Peering inside, he stared into the darkness for several long moments, until he finally saw an NPC lying near death at the bottom. He immediately decided to use the magic rope from earlier, realizing it had appeared for this moment, and he dropped one end into the well until the rope latched onto the body. Once the figure was pulled high enough, Hyukjin finally recognized the face of an elf girl, and he dragged her out before laying her on the ground. While preparing a potion, he remembered that elves carried healing powers, cherished nature, and were known for striking beauty, yet their peaceful lifestyle also made them popular among streamers and tragically valuable to the slave trade. After finishing the potion, he brought it to her lips and watched her yellow eyes snap open, the recovery so fast it felt like watching a plant bounce back after a single drop of water. She struggled weakly as her body trembled, managing to rise before offering gratitude. Yet Hyukjin only studied her with stern focus because something felt out of place. The girl claimed she belonged to this village and admitted they failed to offer the sacrifice, though she clearly did not understand what offering was required in the first place. She explained that they would have done it if they knew, and then mentioned she would soon return to nature because the potion could only revive her for a brief moment. With her hands clasped, she spoke about becoming dust that would feed the oak, and Hyukjin simply acknowledged it with a dry acceptance. He questioned whether elves lived in houses carved from trees, then grew serious when he realized she lied about being a resident, although she avoided acknowledging anything. The forest felt increasingly suspicious since boars were not defending territory, predators were missing, and nothing indicated real ecological behavior. The elf clearly belonged to a hut-dwelling race that did not cut trees, meaning she was nothing more than an NPC created to deliver information. As she began dissolving into thin air with a faint blush, she asked him to make an offering to the forest master, and Hyukjin watched without surprise as she vanished completely. When he looked ahead, a green wind drifted across the field, but everything seemed unreal, almost like the entire zone had sloppy programming that made the world feel artificial. His perception eyes detected someone watching him again, provoking anger as the skill fought against the illusion and strained to reveal truth, throwing up notifications that even startled him. A few seconds later, he dropped to his knees, coughing blood into his hand, yet he forced his eyes open and pushed through the pain with stubborn willpower. He realized that if he failed to break the illusion, he would die here and end up like the elf, trapped as an NPC for some future player stumbling in. Hyukjin refused to let that happen because he wanted reality, not a fake simulation, and his perception responded to his determination as the false world finally began to crack apart. Hyukjin understood that the fake zone had hard limits, and whoever created it clearly never wanted anyone figuring that out. The letters pointed toward the forest's extreme east and west, and crossing those borders triggered notices warning that movement beyond was impossible. Under his stubborn willpower, the eyes of perception kept tearing at the illusion's edges until the boundaries finally cracked apart. When the false reality collapsed, he let out a relieved breath while scanning the surroundings that looked like the same forest yet noticeably smaller than before. Realizing he could now see the entire forest with his perception, he turned sharply as he sensed the master of the forest nearby. Wiping the blood from his face, he assumed that this creature must have relied on some kind of special tool to create such a massive fake zone, despite possessing only small-scale forest manipulation skills. A figure appeared behind a bush, and Hyukjin guessed that an artifact had definitely been involved. With a mocking grin, he questioned why the so-called forest master refused to come out, confidently claiming that his eyes could still see everything clearly. The blue creature peeked from the bush in anger, insisting Hyukjin was lying before rushing at him while shouting that an ordinary person could never locate its treasure. As it landed, the system revealed its identity as a Dakibi of unknown level, showing mental states like confusion, doubt, and despair. This monster was notorious for illusion magic, spatial distortion, and causing chaos for players, and in its third evolution, it became a man-eating dokibi, responsible for killing hundreds when it first appeared in Italy. Thankfully, the one before him was only a first-stage version that posed no real threat. Hyukjin continued calmly, asking if the creature genuinely believed he was pretending, and he noticed its shock when he mentioned stealing its treasure. Standing firm, he told the monster that his perception had seen everything, which only infuriated the dokibi further as it denied the claim. Pointing his sword toward the ground, Hyukjin stated that he already knew the treasure was buried underground, identifying it as an amplification monocrystal. The dokibi's intelligence crashed to childlike levels in panic, and it screamed that Hyukjin was a lying scammer. But Hyukjin instantly dashed forward and struck its head with a critical blow. The dokibi stumbled back, clutching its bleeding head, wailing about its missing horn while its rage spiraled into childish insults directed at Hyukjin. Seeing the creature's fury, Hyukjin steadied his posture as the dokibi activated its club skill and slammed the ground hard enough to crack the earth. Hyukjin absorbed the attack without injury, thanks to his great orc warrior effect, leaving the monster stunned. Taking advantage of the confusion, he closed the distance and drove his sword straight into the dokibi's chest before leaping back as the system confirmed the kill and granted coins, EXP, and quest completion. Rewards for clearing the unknown forest appeared immediately, giving him 500 coins, 1 bonus stat, an upgraded perception level, and the dokibi perfume. He decided to leave quickly, but he still needed to retrieve the monocrystal the monster had hidden earlier. Knowing the artifact would be worth 10 million won in 3 years, he searched the ground but found no trace and wondered if the dokibi had buried it deeper than expected. Dusting his hands, he muttered to himself that something felt off until he suddenly noticed a squirrel staring directly at him from ahead. The squirrel approached slowly with its paws extended as if asking for something, and Hyukjin glanced around to confirm Senya had not appeared yet, proving the animal wasn't a bug. Realizing he still wasn't transported out and the forest had no exit path, he returned his focus to the squirrel and recognized that it was likely the final piece of the puzzle. His perception skill failed to scan the creature, which meant the squirrel wasn't normal at all. When he mentioned a deal, the system suddenly notified him that the guardian called the Merchant of Venice was watching, a figure known from the Italian server who valued trades but rarely appeared in such bizarre scenarios. Hyukjin doubted the guardian would join negotiations through a squirrel, so he teased the creature by offering black yak meat, which immediately irritated it. Showing the dokibi perfume annoyed the squirrel too, yet the creature conjured a glowing number 1 in the air like it was using magic. Taking out his last item, Hyukjin admitted he had no idea what the little guy wanted from him. When he finally offered something valuable, the squirrel brightened instantly, and he sarcastically complained that giving up the fruit basket felt like a huge loss. The squirrel wagged its tail happily as a trade window appeared, surprising Hyukjin since the animal could use the system interface flawlessly. The offered reward was an amplification monocrystal, with 2 remaining uses, which caught the guardian's interest and prompted Hyukjin to accept the trade with a smirk. A dungeon-clearing crystal materialized before him, and the moment he shattered it, he was transported directly to Seoul Station. People nearby were shocked, thinking he had appeared out of thin air, while others assumed he had just been obscured by the crowd. Hyukjin sensed something was different, and quickly confirmed there were no staff NPCs monitoring players anymore. Sweat formed on his face as he noticed the weather was much hotter, pushing him to check his phone in confusion. When he saw the date displayed as September, he froze in disbelief because 3 entire months had passed. Grabbing his head in frustration, he realized he had missed far too much, and immediately reached for his phone to call his own. The first thing Hyukjin did was try calling his Nuna, and she picked up almost instantly, but the moment she heard his voice, she just hung up like her emotions exploded all at once, and he immediately knew she must have broken into tears. After that, he went on to call the others and dialed Yoo-hyun, who got so shocked hearing Hyukjin after so long that the noise on the other side blasted so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. After more than 3 months, Eugene was finally back with his family after being completely gone, and while his Nuna looked furious enough to breathe fire, he could tell it was all worry wrapped in anger. Their mother, on the other hand, was just relieved he had returned safely and stared at him with nothing but love instead of scolding him. But everything shifted when Hyukjin suddenly noticed there was a random guy in their house, and his expression changed instantly. Then Sunhwa showed him the squirrel and asked if he thought it looked cute, while the system threw a massive info dump, explaining that this little creature was basically a gluttonous, genius thief rolled into one. Hyukjin leaned closer, inspecting the squirrel with interest. As Sunhwa mentioned, she named him Darong. And when he checked the official system information, it stated that the phantom thief squirrel personally chooses its master, and the minimum requirement was having the title Ruler of Seoul Station. The system asked Hyukjin if he wanted to become the squirrel's master, and the little guy just stared at him with this smug grin like he already knew the answer. Realizing the squirrel had given permission to read his info, Hyukjin greeted his new companion. The moment he acknowledged Dorongi's name, the ownership transferred instantly, and his title shifted from Ruler of Seoul Station to Master of the Phantom Thief Squirrel. Sunhwa kept playing around with Dorongi, and the squirrel's cheerful attitude made the whole reunion feel lighter, even though Hyukjin had been gone for 3 long months. He still felt he could have achieved so much in that time, but he brushed the regret away since thinking about it wouldn't change anything. Even then, he had managed to make over 1,000,000,000 won during that period, and he was curious about how much the world had changed while he was gone. But for now, he was about to make a major choice. That's when Senia appeared beside him again, thanking the Guardian who had activated the pause. And since Hyukjin had officially reached level 30, she informed him that his Guardian selection was going to begin now.